Stop. Hey guys, what's up? It's me, your girl Alex, and I live. I'm gonna just be playing some Supermarket Simulator for a while. I'm not really sleepy, and I had a busy day, and I kind of want to relax a little bit before going to sleep. My insomnia kicked my ass right now, and I'm not tired at fucking all. Hopefully, while playing a few games, I'll be able to relax. I already have the game up and running. I'm just gonna set up the fanfic. So I can that's not it. There we go.
This bites. Zomiac. Chapter 42, Chapter 39. Straw Hats vs. Cypher Paul. The war of the rookie starts here. Are you insane, Cross? Bartolomeo yelped. Abez opened her mouth. Rhetorical question, damn it. Bartolomeo snapped, prompting the Dragon Keeper to close her mouth and look away with an innocent smile. All right, Cross has to know he's bringing the wrath of the Marines on his head for this. He turned around, looking to the two lower-grade ex-Baroque Works agents on board. How much of a response are we looking at here? 5 battleships.
Cereal.
10. Miss Valentine, deathly pale, took a moment to compose herself before answering. For this sort of situation, when the Marines and the world government as a whole are taking a shot straight to the dead center of their reputations. She gulped audibly, sweat dotting her brow. Try all of them. Bartolomeo clicked his tongue and began pacing back and forth on the deck. And with all the admirals too. Damn it. I don't think Cross is going to bullshit his way out of this one. Not on his own. His pacing continued for a few more minutes as he stewed in thought, before abruptly turning his gaze on Abez again. Abez, you can talk to animals, right? Abez's expression fell flat as jabbed a finger at the dragon she was riding, with Lindy adopting a flat look of his own in turn. Right, stupid question. What I meant to ask was if you can talk to a transponder snail from a distance without seeing it. Tell it to keep its trap shut for what, a few minutes? Abez hesitated as she glanced at the cruise snail with a searching expression before looking back at her captain. Her mouth drawn in a thin line. Maybe. I could give it a shot with Killis' help, I think, but as for the orders bit, I can give orders, sure. But whether they listen or not isn't really up to me. She ran her fingers through her companion's hair in a manner that was more meant to calm herself than the dragon. I've gotten lucky with Lindy because we have a past. It'll have to do, Bartolomeo sighed. Call Capricorn, I need one last piece of information. What are you planning, Captain? Jin said out of the corner of his mouth, eyeing his superior as Abez got their snail's attention and started talking to it. Something insane, guaranteed to triple all of our bounties if it works and kill us if it doesn't, Bartolomeo muttered as he gnawed on his thumb. And I'm not sure it's even going to work. You'll probably figure it out once I call Capricorn anyway. He then shot his first mate a savage grin. Easiest way of putting it, though. Straw Hats are taking a page from the Emperors, then we're taking a page from them. Jin opened his mouth to respond. Ka-lick. Capricorn. Rooster, Bartolomeo replied. I'm 20 kilometers south-southeast of the tub current between Marineford and Anai's lobby.
I kinda want to organize this better.
For a moment there was silence.
But
Then he answered, Jin hastily shushing the rest of the poleaxe crew around him. A celestial dragon vessel. Rooster, what in the world are you? You're listening to this BS, you know exactly what I'm planning to do, Bartolomeo practically snarled. This is the only way I can think of to draw off a large enough force to matter. A shaky grin spread across his face. Besides, I'm not just charging blindly into this. I have a plan. Forgive me if that doesn't fill me with much confidence. There was an explosive sigh on the line, followed by rustling cloth. Annoyed, Hina's very annoyed because she definitely has a migraine, and it's only a little after midnight, but fine. As it so happens, there's a celestial dragon pleasure yacht near your location. Just park yourself outside the edge of the current and you'll have them. Thanks. Rooster out. And with that, Bartolomeo put the phone back in its cradle, then turned around and waited for the inevitable explosion. He was not disappointed. Captain, are you insane?
Yeah,
I hate the celestial dragons as much as the next guy, but
eggs
there's a point at which you can imitate the Straw Hats too much, and this is clearly past it. That'll bring an admiral down on our... Quiet. Jin roared. The crew shut up, looking expectantly at Jin. Why don't we let the captain explain before we all decide to mutiny out of self-preservation? He suggested. Well, suggested in as much as any man tapping a ball of metal the size of a bowling ball in his palm can suggest anyways. Thanks, Bartolomeo muttered to his first mate as the grumbling died down. Don't thank me yet, Jin snapped as he swung his tonfa around to point at his captain. I already served under a suicidally insane captain once in my life, and I nearly paid for it with my life. I won't make that same mistake again. If you don't have a damn good plan, I'll be first in line to kick your ass. Duly noted. Bartolomeo took a deep breath.
You have everything. I have a bit of stock.
Yes, I'm planning exactly what you all think I am. Yes, that will bring an admiral down on our heads. But a finger snapped up, preempting any sort of protest.
It's open.
Right now, the
Come
Straw
in,
Hats
people.
are minutes away
Give
from
me
having
money.
probably the greatest force the Marines have
I
ever
need to
assembled
make a
dropping on
fucking
theirs.
living.
If we can draw off 5 battleships and an admiral on a wild goose chase, then maybe we can even the odds just enough for the Straw Hats to use their patented brand of bullshit to escape. And how do you plan to turn it into a wild goose chase, huh? Mister, Five shouted. Bartolomeo grinned a grin that had way too many teeth for comfort. Well, let me tell you. Oh, so let me see if I've got this straight, Polly reflected as he bashed an arrangement of Marines and agents with his figure of 8 knot. 2 days ago, I thought that Koku and Lucci being government agents was nonsense. See, P9 was a myth. And charging an Eye's lobby on a rescue revenge mission was something that nobody in the world was crazy enough to do. He sighed as he absolutely flung a string of pipe-hitch knives through the assembled army. tripping up a full contingent of the soldiers even as he nonchalantly ducked under a swing from an agent and rammed his forearm into the man's throat. Then, along came the Straw Hat Pirates. I don't think I need to say any more than that. Yeah,
My
that just
guy.
about covers it, doesn't it?
My guy,
Kashi
are
laughed as he
you
swung his axe down
okay?
into the side of a building.
Look at those
The ensuing
bags
collapse
under your
simultaneously
eyes.
robbing
You
our
should
enemies
get
of yet another
some
potential assault
strips
platform
for that,
and blocking
bro.
off an alleyway that they could
You
try
need
and
to
flank us
hydrate.
from. I see why our captains like them so much. I agree. Oimo cackled as he wound his club back and batted a mortar shell out of the air, utterly ignoring the explosion that erupted as a result. Makes sense too. They've been on Little Garden for the past 100 years. They missed the start of this new age. Heck, the giant paused in shock. Wow, they even missed Roger. He scratched the side of his head thoughtfully, even as marine bullets washed over him like a summer's rain. Actually kinda sad. Don't worry about it. I chuckled as I dodged a swing from an agent coming at me with a pair of brass knuckles before lunging forward to jab my baton into his throat. I then flipped it in my grip and electrified it as I jabbed it into the small of his back once he doubled over. At least they managed to meet his successor. I hefted lasso and aimed him into the crowd, blasting out a half-dozen bombs over the front lines and sowing a nice amount of chaos as a result. That's gotta count for something, right? I know that meeting Luffy sure changed my life for the weird, that's for sure. Usopp chuckled, taking a knee in order to get a better angle with his kabuto and no doubt take down yet another wannabe with a rifle who had the audacity to call themselves a sniper in his presence. Damn straight. I nodded as I blocked a marine sword with Lasso's bulk, before pocketing my baton and jabbing a gauntlet full of impact into the soldier's gut. I then glanced over at Soundbite. By the way, apropos of nothing, mind providing a sitrep. I gaped at him in awe. They did not say that. Oh yes they did. Sounds like you're actually managing to get through to some people. Zambai called over to me as he took down a squad that had been going for Sodom and Gomorrah, who were giving the marines and agents an appropriate level of hell. But anyways, as for our vanguard, his smile dropped into a scowl. I can follow Luffy's trail, and he downed a couple thousand on his own, but right now, he's out of my range. I considered that for a moment before shrugging indifferently. Man, that's fight, I yelped as I ducked under some jackass who just tried to fucking shoot me. Hey, watch out, I'm
I
fighting
love
over
that
here. I roared
the
at the bastard
sounds of
before
like
scowling and returning
choking
fire with a
actually
trio of
translate
baseball
pretty
balls.
well.
Ass. Anyway, where? Oh, right. I bounced the heel of my palm off my head. It's Luffy. He'll be fine. Oh. Whoa, what the heck? How did they get across? Luffy wondered as he stared down into the gap over the abyss below an ice proper. He then pounded a fist into his palm. Oh right, Cross said there's a drawbridge. I think that I could probably rock it over. Then he grimaced as he crossed his arms and tilted his head to the side. But I bet they have tons of other cheap tricks and stuff that Cross knows about, but I don't, that would make me get lost. So now I have to wait for everyone else to catch up. Aw man, he hung his head with a groan. That sucks. He maintained his position for a few minutes before looking up and glancing around curiously as some of his rubbery neurons chose to fire. Hey wait, why do I feel like I'm forgetting something? Air door. The rubber man scowled darkly and angled his hat down over his eyes before glancing back at the interloper who was suddenly standing behind him. Oh yeah, I need to kick your ass first. There seemed to be some discrepancies between the report and the actual situation, Bluno intoned, ignoring the death glare Luffy was pinning him with. To be honest, it did seem more than a little suspicious. For anyone to believe that someone like you could ever only take down just 5 soldiers, he shook his head with a sigh. Well, I suppose that fear is as good a motivation for denial as any. The rubber man snorted darkly as he turned to face Bluno. So, bullhead guy, are you here to stop me? Luffy asked, momentarily glancing back at his pipe before putting his fists up. Bluno scoffed in a somewhat insulted manner. Please. You're the fool here, Monkey D. Luffy, not me. Your reputation through the SBS precedes you, and though I never expected to say this to any criminal, I admit that neither I nor many of my comrades are strong enough to defeat you. Basically, I
Why
can't do
you
anything
give me a
against you.
hundy for
Luffy blinked in
33
surprise
bucks?
as he marginally relaxed from his
You
stance.
could have given me a 50, you fucking
really?
weirdo.
So, are you just going to let us go? The bull-headed Paul agent's gaze somehow became even flatter. No. Old Luffy blinked in confusion. So then, what I can do, he said as he slowly cracked his neck back and forth, is give my chief a more complete status report than what he received earlier. After all, unlike you, we don't need to fight you to accomplish our goals. All we need to do is get Nico Robin past the gates of justice. Luffy felt a twinge of panic rise within himself as he remembered Cross words. However, rather than reacting with panic like most people, Luffy reacted how he'd almost always reacted to fear, with more anger. Do you really think I'm going to let you get away and steal Robin? He growled as he slowly reached over his back and clutched his pipe. Bluno allowed a mocking smirk to quirk his lips. What I think, he drawled as he reached his arm out and cracked a portion of the air open, is that you can't stop me. You want to bet? Luffy demanded, spreading his legs apart and crouching down, preparing to pump his calves. Slam! Only for a metric ton of something to slam onto the roof and obscure Luffy's line. Luffy winced in confusion as he snapped his arm up to guard himself from the dust cloud that the mass's meteoric entrance had kicked up. A tusking sound caught his attention, and he lowered his arm enough to catch sight of a large gray wolf with a large scar over its left eye. A black Fu Manchu mustache, long hair and a queue, and a black jacket and tie that covered very little of its chest, standing where Bluno had been. Or more specifically, standing on where Bluno had been.
Oh, thank you
And
for
on
the
Bluno,
exact
too, for that
change,
matter.
girly.
Tisk tisk tisk.
You
The
are
wolf
a
tutted in a condescending tone of
queen.
voice as he shook his claw into
Really?
Bluno's face.
A fucking
Sorry,
hundy
Bluno.
for
I know
5
that we've only just met
bucks?
again after 5 years,
You
Boo.
piece
The fact
of
is that there's
crap.
no chance that I'm going to let you do that. Bluno coughed up a mouthful of blood as he struggled to try and work himself out from under the wolf's own's foot. Deborah, you What the hell do you think you're doing? In an instant, a wave of sadness and regret swept over the wolf's muzzle. It was many years ago when I was young on an island far away. Will you cut your damn bullshit already, you flea-bitten gah? Blueno's furious roar was cut off by a massive furry palm slamming his head into the rooftop. Said palm then closed into a fist around Blueno's head and lifted him into the air, in spite of how much he tried to struggle.
Thank you for the
and fail.
cards, my guy.
You want the truth, you two get one trick pony. Jabber snarled as he held his comrade close to his muzzle. Fine, here it is. If you
Pichis
choke down about what's
cabrones,
going on, odds are
$100
that that
por
coward will
cinco,
order us to
por,
fall back in
para
the
algo
roof.
de
He'll
cinco.
take Nico Robin to the gates, and he'll take Lucci with him so
You
that
are
when Straw Hat
a
inevitably charges
sweet
after him.
cop,
He's who he
baby.
fights. While we are left mopping up the scraps, Jibber marginally loosened his grip on Blueno's head, before strengthening it, causing his fellow agent to jerk in pain. Fuck. That. Fuck Nico Robin, fuck the world government, fuck that spineless piece of subhuman slime we call a chief, fuck the mission, you all fucked up. Fuck the power rankings, and above all else. Jibber drew his hackles back into a blood-hungry snarl. Fuck Lucci. This brat is mine. I've wanted my 10 rounds with him since that back fight, and I'll be damned if I let Lucci have them instead. I want a hut that can fucking fight back, and I'm fucking getting it. So, stay the hell. The massive zone wound his arm back and uncoiled in a single smooth motion, sending Blueno crashing into the parapet lining the roof. Out of my way. The doorman coughed up a mouthful of blood as he tried to pull himself up, only to collapse as his body gave up the ghost and plunged him into sweet oblivion. The wolfman snorted in satisfaction before cracking his head back and forth and shooting a cocky grin at the other conscious person on the roof. So, Straw Hat Luffy. Nice to meet you. The name's Jebro CP9, and what you see here is the result of the Mutt Fruit model, Wolf. His cocky grin grew to savage proportions as he spread his arms and flexed his muscles in anticipation. You have no idea how long I've been waiting for a chance to fight you. Luffy didn't move from where he'd been standing throughout the entire conversation, his hat tilted down to mask his expression. Jibber twitched irritably, his smirk fading back to a more casual, habitual scowl. Hey, are you paying attention? He was your friend. Jibber's ear flicked in confusion as he heard a faint growl. What the? His ears then folded against his scalp when Luffy suddenly looked up at him and glared. A decade back, Vice Admiral Garp Ak, Garp the hero, had personally come by the Tower of Justice to tear CP9 a new one for a particularly civilian casualty-heavy mission. That had been the last time Lucci had ever willingly disobeyed orders in any way, shape, or form. Jibber had known that Straw Hat could drop the idiotic smile in favor of rage with the right incentive. He'd been counting on it. But he sure as hell hadn't counted on the glare he was seeing now mirroring the same intensity he'd seen in that monster that the Marines had labeled a Vice Admiral. Luffy ground his teeth as he only just managed to restrain himself. That guy, he reiterated with a voice full of unholy wrath, was your friend. He was your friend. And you hurt him. Pure hellfire flared in Straw Hat's eyes. Just so that you could have a chance to fight me. Jabber swallowed heavily and prepared to open his mouth. He prepared to rebut the pirate's assumption with an explanation about how this sort of thing was par for the course for Paul agents. How Blueno's injuries were comparatively minor, and that he'd be fine in a couple of hours. How there would be no lasting hard feelings in the end. And then he reconsidered. He remembered the back fight. He remembered the psyche profile the agents had been given on Straw Hat, and with more adrenaline than blood in his veins. He donned his smirk yet again. And so what if I did? He rumbled in a pompous tone. That pathetic weakling. He spent the last 5 years as a bartender, and all for what? To fail at the 11th hour. Ha ha. He threw his head back and roared with mocking laughter. Hell, I bet he doesn't even remember how to fight anymore. He's pathetic. Useless. A disgrace to Cypher Pole, no. 9. He kept laughing uproariously for a minute before trailing off into wheezes and chuckles. He wiped some tears out of his eyes before casting a mocking smirk at the pirate. What the hell does it matter to you? His amusement then proceeded to die a painful death as he became acutely aware of the horrendous mistake he'd just made. Before, the most infamous rookie of this generation had mirrored Garp. Now, the old man paled in comparison to the glare he was faced with now, and this feeling only redoubled when the pirate dropped into a crouch, knees bent, his right fist cracking the roof beneath him, and his left out to his side, holding a somehow menacing pipe out and at the ready. Here, Straw Hat Luffy rumbled savagely. Second, I just fucked up. Those were the last thoughts to run through Jibber's head before his field of vision was filled with fist, and he was forced to start fighting for his life. Oh, and even if he isn't, then he will be after he gets his teeth on some meat. I shrugged casually as I held a Marine in a nice and tight chokehold. Also, remind me, how long am I supposed to hold him for after he stops moving? 3 seconds or 5? That comment got the guy flailing even harder. 3, I think. We called as she retreated from a Marine who was going a little nutso with his sword. And for the record, Mazu continued as she got behind the Marine in question and cut him down to size. I'll never understand how Straw Hat's body treats meat like a miracle cure-all. That's one of. Oh, for the love of God, how long can you hold your damn breath?
Okay,
Screw
I need
it. I slammed my fist into the back of the bastard's head, thankfully knocking him out and allowing me to drop him. Anyway, where was I?
Flour,
how Luffy's
bread,
carnivore metabolism is one of the 7
pasta,
wonders of the world. Though I'm confused as to how it counts as
cereal
man-made or
and
nader
sugar.
incoming mortar. Holy! I yelped in a panic as I dove into the dirt and narrowly avoided being blasted to fucking smithereens. I spent a second staring into the ground with my hands clasped over the back of my head before looking up with a dark scowl. Right, that's enough of this bullshit. Soundbite, connect me to the cavalry, so that we can shove a horseshoe up these bastards' asses. Give me a second. I shoved myself to my feet and retreated back from the front lines of the fight, allowing the Frankie family to fill my space as I got myself some breathing room and pressed one of my headphone speakers to my ear. This is Snail Mail calling Rocketman. Snail Mail calling Rocketman. Come in, Rocketman. Rocketman is requesting you stop acting like the assless dumbass you are. Soundbite, Nami growled irritably. Come on, baby, show me some love. I'm burning out a fuse up here alone. Oi, I barked, shooting a glare at the snail out of the corner of my eye. Aye, mostly alone anyways. Sound, Bite chuckled sheepishly. Are you just calling to screw around or? We've managed to clear out a section for the rocketman, I cut in. Coro, the landing zone is free and clear. Let him loose and bring it in. Wait, Cross, you never told us what you mean by landing zone. Vivi cut in, a rather large hint of desperate panic in her voice. You do recall that there are no brakes on that train you're riding, right? I grinned sadistically.
I forgot what I was
and
gonna
those
put
fences
there.
around the entrance are part sea stone, so they're gonna bend before Zoro, not break. Buckle up, this is gonna hurt. Not a chance in. Nami screamed desperately. Nagagaga. Kokoro cackled over Nami's enraged shout. I suppose it's only fate, isn't it? This Bronco was made for you guys. Everyone hold on tight, Nagagaga. Don't even think about it, you old E. Vivi's own protests were cut off by what I could only presume was a sudden burst of acceleration.
Kokoro's laugh
I spared
is
a moment to laugh
hilarious.
about Nami's apparent panic before throwing out a sound, but enhanced whistle, garnering the attention of the Frankie family fighting around me. Everyone clear some space, we got incoming reinforcements. While the humans of our crew had the good sense to comply and clear a space, Kashi made the most unwise choice of pausing in the middle of the island's main
What's
street
the
and glancing
pasta?
back at me in confusion. Reinforcements. Really? Where teach? Woot. What the? Kashi had just enough time to look up in shock. Crunch. Before Rocketman plowed straight into the middle of his face, bounced off, and skidded down the street.
That's
I had the
fine.
upended train wreck for a second before looking over Kashi's insensate and groaning form. We didn't just lose one of our major big hitters, did we? I called up to Oimo. The club-wielding giant waved his hand with a scoff. Are you kiddin'? Kashi's taken more headshots than most of our old crew combined. He'll be fine. He then proceeded to cover his mouth as he snickered in amusement. Though, I don't think a lot of giants are gonna think that being the first giant to be hit in the face by a sea train is all that honorable. For you, Oimo, Kashi blearily groaned. Told you so. Moving past the stupidly high resiliency of giants. Lulu piped up as he shoved the spike of hair protruding from his chest flat and caused a new one to pop from the top of his skull. Are you sure that your friends are all right? After all, that was a pretty hard landing, and the Marines are starting to swarm the train. I leveled a flat look at the shipwright. Have you been paying any attention to the SBS? I give it all of 5 seconds before that swarm gets swatted. 4, 3, 2. Soundbite crowed. Kaboom! My grin went from ear to ear as the side of Rocketman's car blew itself out, blasting away all of the Marines nearby and allowing a full host of utter demons to storm out and start laying waste to the ranks of our enemies. Ah, I love my crewmates. Polly swallowed heavily and wiped away the sudden layer of cold sweat he'd acquired as he watched my crewmates inflict more damage on the army of Marines in the course of 3 minutes than we all had in the past 10. In case it hasn't been said enough, so glad that we're fighting with you monsters instead of against. I don't think Water 7 or Galileo would have survived if we were on opposite sides. Damn straight.
I need
Soundbite cackled in
bread
agreement. I started to snicker and knew at the irony, before freezing in abject
and
terror
cereal.
as I felt a wave of what could only be described as pure existential dread sweep over me. I promptly adopted a deer in the headlights maneuver as I caught sight of Karu stalking towards me, Nami and Vivi both on his back, and an aura of rage and murder around them. I honestly wasn't sure if I was hallucinating, if it was actually visible, or if Nami was just generating thunderclouds for effect. And now guys, look, I backed up desperately as the two dismounted and started approaching me. Cross, Vivi began before shrugging with a sheepish smile. I admit my fault, that was actually kind of fun. I blinked in surprise and more than a little confusion before freezing in horrified realization. Horror that became nothing short of utter terror when a fist suddenly grabbed my throat and brought me face to face with the visage of the Angel of Death. See, that aura of rage I'd seen earlier. It wasn't the aura of 2 women who wanted my head. It was all from one Nami who really wanted my head on a spike. And then Nami, don't you think you're overreacting?
Can I buy
LL Luffy
something
does stuff like this all the
else?
time, and you're never this mad at High ERK. I was cut off by her squeezing my throat shut. You let me ride on that death trap for your own amusement, Cross. Nami cut me off in a voice of icy calm. Luffy is an idiot. A lovable idiot that I trust with my life. He doesn't think things through, and we have to put up with the consequences, and I accepted that when I joined this crew
Level
for good.
8. I need
struggled
to
to
level
keep
up
conscious as her grip
one
tightened.
more time so I
Mired.
can get these
You, on the other
two.
hand, are not only one of the smarter members of the crew, but know enough to let us steer the hell clear of catastrophes like this.
Because
Our
these are
navigator held
level
up a segment of her climb
9.
attack and slammed her thumb into a hidden button, prompting
I
it to
can
light up
get
with a crackle
orange
of lightning.
juice, soda,
I'm going to give you 10 seconds to give me 3 good
soda,
reasons why I should
apple
obliterate all the
juice,
progress Chopper made on
milk,
getting rid of your trauma.
milk six
and
pack
make
like
Henry look like a
yogurts, I
case of
think,
static discharge.
and
Her grip
soda.
slackened enough that I could begin gasping out
Cola
answers.
Zap and
First,
Turk.
I knew you wouldn't die from something like that. Second, your alternative choices were coming to the front lines when I left or going with Luffy when he left. And third, I
You
pointed
can
to the
get
side,
like a few more
where a
things.
growing crowd
Okay.
of Marines were approaching and actually positioning themselves into a firing line wall that was a lot of guns. You have plenty of other targets to take out your anger on. I punctuated the
go!
statement with a panicky grin.
A ver
Nami
si
processed my
así
words with a still
pueden
enraged
entrar.
expression for several moments,
Pero es
her
que
gaze
se hacen
thankfully
entrar.
directed at the
Nah,
Marines.
si
Before
entran.
the aura changed
They
direction,
face
she let me
through
drop
them like
onto my ass.
fucking ghosts.
I'll deal with you once
The
we're back on
fucking
Water 7.
weirdos.
She bit out as she marched towards the Marines, assembling her climb attack piece by piece as she went. But for now, she finished assembling the staff and started spinning it at her side, a milky white outline appearing on the outside of the blue blur. These boys are mine. The Marines chose the moment to open fire, blasting
Oh,
out a
shit.
barrage of musket fire at us that would have no
Scared
doubt
me, lady.
incapacitated or
You
killed
just
at least
came
a
here
dozen
for
of our number.
cheese?
At least, were it not for Nami snarling and swinging her
I get
climb
that.
attack forward with
Oh,
a furious
wait,
bellow.
fuck. Wait,
Eyes in
fuck.
tempo,
I forgot
a
something.
barrage of foamy white surged from her staff as a result of the motion. writhing and flowing for a second before coalescing into an earth-bound cloud-like barrier between us and the Marines. However, as cloud-like as the barrier appeared, the fact that we weren't reduced to Swiss cheese by a hail of gunfire indicated that they'd failed to break through it. Nami held her position for a scant second before allowing herself a grin. She then swung her arm out, causing the cloud barrier to surge out in turn and shove over 24 Marines off their feet. A sweep to the side, and the fallen Marines were sent tumbling into a massive pile, clearing the way for the clouds to surge forward again and start lashing out at the Marines behind them. The clouds in question attacked like a poor man's smoker, growing and lashing out at who or whatsoever it chose that came near it, and then flailing about in a thoroughly ruthless manner.
I said the
But that wasn't the most disturbing part of the display.
Was
The disturbing part was the wielder of the cloud herself. Nama's growing grin and the way she was swooping and twirling her staff around her body with increasing style and complexity was reminiscent of a demonic orchestra conductor or witch. Of course, Soundbite was helping to reinforce the latter image with a stupidly familiar
it went
song.
down. It went
double,
down.
Double, toil and trouble, fire, burn, and cauldron bubble tilde. Yeah, I nodded in equal parts wariness and awe, and by the pricking of my thumbs, something wicked this way coasted. Hey. Nami remained gleeful a full minute into her performance before pausing and allowing her expression to darken as she caught sight of what few Marines were still standing begin to turn tail and run. Oh no, nuo, Nami crooned sadistically, a roaring fury igniting behind her eyes as she swung her staff around her body and caused a new aura of clouds to coalesce around her. You think that after all that you've done to our crew, after all you've done to my friends, she chuckled mirthlessly for a second, and then the clouds darkened and started to rumble as she scowled. No, you bastards don't get to run away. With that, she swung her climate tack behind her and conjured a pillar of thunderclouds. The pillar angled itself like a scorpion's tail as it faced the Marines, and with a jerk of the staff, the pillar split itself in half lengthwise, opening up an empty space within which lightning crackled and danced. Nami slowly cracked her neck back and forth in preparation. Then, in one deft move, she jabbed her staff forward to point at the retreating Marines. Lightning bolt tempo. And just like that, the clouds snapped forwards, and the wrath of the heavens themselves was unleashed upon those poor, unfortunate souls. I swear that I actually managed to see outlines of their skeletons once or twice, but for obvious reasons. I wasn't able to appreciate the sight quite as much as I would have liked, to which Nami remained perfectly oblivious. She took in the sight of the charbroiled Marines for a few seconds before squealing and jumping in a clear display of joy as she hugged her staff like it was the Hope Diamond or her newborn. Either or, really. Oh, yes. This thing is so utterly, totally, and completely awesome, and it's all mine, and I'm never ever letting it go ever because I love it like I've never loved anything since Bellamere and Najiko and the crew, and I love you for giving it to me. Cross, thank you so much. She squealed and sang euphorically. She then spun around and snapped a finger to point at me. But don't think that means I've forgiven you yet either, you inconsiderate bastard.
Mr. Jericho.
No effing kidding, woman. I choked as I grappled with the fucking eisen hand that was holding me a foot off the ground as it ruined my fucking neck. Nami, Vivi demanded as she yanked on the white hand's fingers. An effort that was completely and utterly ineffectual on account of how the damn thing was as solid as iron. I've been mad at Cross plenty of times, but this is going too far. Let him go. Wah. Nami snapped her gaze to her staff in shock before shaking her head desperately. Bibi, but I'm not doing this. Or, well, I don't think I am. It was at that point that a portion of the arm strangling me split off and started punching me in my freaking face. I sorely beg to differ, ow. I don't. Nami shook her head desperately. My bikosh of you. Wedit psycho-wajika connection with meteorology, yo subconscious mind, yo ID. Ishushin the Ishan see. Wow doesn't out wet to intuact with the physical wild and enact yo wep west efo stations with see. Was. We all paused and snapped an incredulous look at the speaker. Wad. Karu gave us all a flat look. I read some of Choppa's books when I've got nothing else to do, Shimi. Re-8, Nami drawled before glancing at her climate tact. So, how do I? When will the wet I gash, the duck shrugged helplessly. Drop the damn staff. Vivi, Soundbite, and I roared, though I more squawked than anything. Alright. Nami yelped as she forced her fingers open and dropped her climate tact. She then slapped her palms together in front of her face in apology. I'm so sorry about that, Cross. I'd never go this far, I swear. Then why the heck are you still doing it? What gah? Nami yelped in shock when she noticed that her palms weren't together, due to the fact that her other hand was still holding the staff. Or so it seemed through my rapidly blurring vision. Our navigator promptly snapped her grip open and dropped the climate tact again, and then reeled back again as she noticed that her other hand had snatched up the staff. The process repeated itself almost half a dozen times as Nami tried to rid herself of her weapon in vain. Ultimately, Nami drew her arm back and desperately flung the climate tact away, going so far as to watch as the metal rod clattered down the street. She turned around and pumped her fist in victory before staring at the staff clutched in her fist with equal parts exasperation and terror. I think that I might have a serious problem, she whispered numbly. No shit, Vivi and Karu screeched. I would have joined them, were it not for the fact that I wasn't taking enough breath to do more than gasp at this point. Oh, for the love of that sit. Soundbite barked indignantly, sliding his way onto the massive clouds crushing my throat. I'm taking matters into my own teeth. Gastroblast. The clouds promptly blasted apart and dropped me on my ass, allowing me to suck air down my abused throat. Holy shit, that was way too close. I gasped. Nami promptly snapped out of it and grabbed her own wrist, visibly concentrating on her fingers as she brought her eyes and cloud to heel so that it was merely hovering around her body like some kind of meteorological halo. Sorry about that, Cross, she apologized with a sheepish grin. Good thing I didn't activate the lightning, right? I showed her just how little I appreciated my good fortune with a rogual flat glare. You're getting therapy from Chopper, I ground out. She promptly hung her head with a sob. Aye, aye, sir. Nodding firmly, I turned my attention back towards the rest of the crew, who had taken the liberty of subduing anyone who still fought back. Interestingly, there were at least a dozen of them who were kneeling on the ground, weapons gone, hands raised in surrender, who looked unharmed. I got to my feet and made a beeline for those soldiers. Let me guess, I piped up with a cocked eyebrow. You guys all got wise to the fact that there's no chance in hell that you're going to stop us, and you decided to take the easy route. Most of them nodded, some in shame, some in fear. One, however, looked up with a defiant expression. I have no illusions about us being able to defeat your crew. But Cypher Paul, no. 9 is a different story, and they're waiting for you in the Tower of Justice. We'll see if you're still confident when you start fighting against them. His tone was firm, but not condescending. It was clear that he was speaking from his faith in the organization he followed. So, I almost felt bad about
I'm
what I was about
happy
to
with
do
the
next.
card
Bought the keyword in that
purchases,
sentence.
because
Really
some
now,
people be
I
giving me
crouched down so that I
candies
could
for
look
no
the soldier in
fucking
the eye.
reason.
Well then, Marine, here's a question for you. Did you happen to CCP-9 when they returned to base? No, but if you're going to spew some nonsense about defeating them before they even got here. Oh no, nothing like that, though not for lack of trying, I assure you. They just managed to run away like the cowardly bitches they are before we could stop them. But, I snapped a finger up when the soldier started to open his mouth. That's off topic. Tell me, Marine, do you know how many CP-9 agents were meant to be on the Puffing Tom upon its return to base? The Marine jutted his chin out proudly. 5. Add the 3 already here, and that makes 8 agents ready and willing to put you pirate scum to death. My grin widened at the words, and only got wider as I slowly turned my head to regard the soldier's neighbor, who'd suddenly gone pale. I think your friend might have something to say about that, Marine. The defiant soldier glanced at his neighbor and jerked in shock. What the? Jenkins, what's... F4. Huh. The panicked soldier slowly turned his head to give the other Marine a terrified look. I saw the Cypher Pole return, and there were only 4 agents with them. And Nero was missing. And just like that, the defiance bled out of the soldier and he too paled in horror. Why you mean? I pressed my advantage by grabbing his collar and bringing him face to face with me. My Paramecia captain has made a habit of eating Logias for breakfast, Marine, I whispered malevolently. What the hell do you think he's going to do to his Owen? The Marine stammered and shivered
Ooh,
where
I
he was
got
sitting.
milk!
I opened my
Let's
mouth to say
fucking
something further.
go.
Leave him alone, Cross. Promptly snapped a look over my shoulder as someone slapped me on it. Do I have to?
I need to
whined.
buy more
But of
milk.
course. Soundbite snickered before switching to using my voice. After all, it's cruel and unusual to torture poor, defenseless pests like them. Save it for the poor, defenseless assassins. Oh, well, that's too bad. I grabbed the defiant Marine's cheek and tugged on it. After all, they're so cute when they're terrify. Oh well. I yelped in agony when a vice grabbed my ear and started yanking me along. Save your unholy skills at mental torture for the ones who deserve it, Cross. Vivi rolled her eyes with a sigh as she dragged me behind her. Oh, yes, fine, all right, I will. Just let me go, damn it. I hollered as I staggered after her. ... Huh? A call at a time like this. Soundbite said, unperturbed by my current predicament. He shrugged as Vivi finally released me, allowing me to stand up and rub my ear in an effort to assuage the pain. Ah well. Go for the SBS. Cack, 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 chuckled a very familiar, very old, and at the moment, very annoying voice. Seems like they haven't been easing up on you at all. Thanks a lot for the constant proof of how effective my medicine is, Cross. I've been able to triple my prices thanks to you. My eye
No
twitched viciously
products
as I
not
fought to keep
found.
myself under control.
Fuck yeah.
Shouldn't you be off extorting someone half your age, you old bat? Like, oh, I don't know, Whitebeard. I snarled. Cack, 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 cack. Please, as if that young shit is anywhere close to. Oh, I'm sorry, you're breaking up, bye-bye. I yelped as I hastily chopped a hand across my throat, prompting Soundbite to drop the connection with no small amount of cackling of his own. Oh, was that doctoring? Chopper asked eagerly as Vivi, and I walked up to where the rest of the crew was assembling.
11.
Yeah, it was, I grumbled as I adjusted my slightly askew cap. Sorry I didn't let you two chat, but I've already ticked off the Whitebeard pirates once in my life. I won't risk repeating the feat even by proxy. In unison, every single one of our allies outside of the crew sagged in relief, prompting me to glare at them in irritation. Do you really think I'm that stupid? Considering the fact that we're in the middle of an invasion of a nice lobby that you're broadcasting to the entire world. Kashi groused as he rubbed his slightly crumpled nose.
I can't
Yes, it's good to see that you're not completely insane.
I'm gonna
I rolled my eyes before returning my attention to our
pay my
current
bills
situation
first.
and scanning around the area. The only Marines and agents conscious were the ones that had surrendered, and there were unconscious ones by the hundreds almost as far as I could see. Considering how long we had been
And
talking
the
without being
bang.
interrupted, I had figured as much. But it was nonetheless surprising that the elites hadn't been called out yet. Sure, some of these guys may have had enough sense to know that they couldn't beat us, but I didn't expect everyone to just take this line down and rely on CP9 to handle us. Soundbite, can you hear anyone
one
nearby?
license?
The snail concentrated, and then grimaced. Damn, they're running out of my range fast. But it sounds like they're
No,
planning
wait,
on setting
I
up
am-
defensive lines en route to the courthouse.
No, I still need to go
They're
up one
trying
of them.
something
Still
that
level
almost
8.
has half a
Okay,
chance
so
of
I'm good.
working instead of charging us
So
directly.
I
I asked incredulously.
need...
Hey, the government may be arrogant, but they're not stupid, Oimo
I'm
shrugged.
gonna write it down
Back
because
before we
I'll
started working
forget.
here, the protocol was that if there was an overwhelming attack from pirates, the plan would be to fall back, set up defensive lines, and wait for reinforcements from HQ. I guess it was just a contingency plan in case one of the emperors decided to attack. I sighed.
Okay,
Of course they'd have something planned for this. Why wouldn't they when they knew that there were pirates who could
Okay,
conceivably
I'm
charge a
gonna
nice lobby and have a
get-
non-zero chance of winning? Alright, let me think, I muttered as I rubbed my chin thoughtfully. They're expecting us to charge the courthouse, so we are, there's no way around that. We'll need to catch them off guard somehow. I glanced back at the King Bulls for a second before nodding firmly. Alright, if we try smashing through full force, all we'll do is run straight into a wall of steel and bodies. Would that stop us? Probably not, but it would be more than a bit painful for those involved, and while I appreciate the
need the
dedication of our allies, I'd rather do this as painlessly as possible. So, I clapped my hands together firmly. We're going to do something somewhat inadvisable and split up.
Red.
Have you never split the party? Soundbite yelped in an affronted tone. I don't see anything wrong with it, Zora shrugged. You would get so lost that you'd end up back in Alabasta. Raffi snapped as she jabbed the flipper at him before grinning. Sorry, been waiting to use that one. Cross, I'm sure that most of us are capable of taking care of ourselves on the way there, Lulu said. But what do you have in mind for an end of this? Yeah, Tailstone added loudly. We'll still be fighting that ambush anyway no matter what we do, so why is splitting up better? Simple, I nodded as I addressed the bulky shipwright. The purpose of this endeavor is to make dealing with that ambush a little more manageable.
Alright, I'm
men,
gonna
the
get
Frankie family, and the
two of the
Giants will
red
go down Main
pasta
Street and at the forefront of the Marine
it-
sight. Meanwhile, I spun my fingers around at my crewmates. We'll split up into teams and go down
It
this
sells
place's
out
back
pretty
streets,
fast,
raising as much of a ruckus as
and
we
the
possibly
sugar
can.
too.
While you
The
guys will certainly
cereal,
draw a lot of
alright,
attention on
with-
account of the size factor. I jerked
See
my
the
head at the Giants and the
oil
King
and the
Bulls.
olive
We are the main
oil,
actors of this show, and so they'll be forced to split both their attention and
the
manpower in order to cover us both. And that's crucial to our
flour,
success right now. I gestured around at the piles of unconscious soldiers.
blue,
Quantity is the only advantage that these mucks have against us. We may have quality on our side, but we're still facing down a
flour,
genuine army.
red,
Despite Luffy taking a him-sized bite out of them, and if we let them mind that
Spaghetti.
advantage too much, well, remember that this is a time-based mission. Second that Spandam realizes he's in over his head, he'll start moving Robin towards the gates of justice, and if she gets there, we've lost.
rice.
This is the best option we have where we both save time and come out of things relatively unscathed. I scanned over all the participants. So any complaints? None were forthcoming. Some of them looked nervous, but all nodded in acceptance nonetheless. All right then, Zambai and Polly said in unison. They glanced at each other before Polly continued.
Milk
It's the reason you need us here anyway. We'll meet up with you at the courthouse.
and
Right.
water.
And again, watch out for
Basically
mortar cans, the
everything.
jurymen, and the incoming.
But
Soundbite suddenly barked up.
sometimes just need
Ton of them coming in hot, heavy, and fast.
Yeah.
I glanced at Soundbite with a scowl. Dogs. Looks like Baskerville managed to get back on the ball and send them out. Give me 5 seconds with them, Zoro grunted as he turned towards the street,
Any
rolling his shoulders.
cereal,
He essaged,
I'll
Sunny
get
scoffed indignantly as he lit
an
up a new
extra
cigarette.
bread,
Give me one. Hold it. The 2/3 of the monster
the
trio weren't the
blue
only ones to look at me in
flour, I need
surprise.
to-
Ah, cross. Connis started in confusion.
oil,
I was actually hoping for this to happen, I said, forestalling any protests with a raised hand before glancing at my shoulder. Soundbite, I have a request. My snail leered malevolently. If you can hum it, then I can fake it. I cracked my neck back and forth as I stared down the street, where blurs of movement were fast approaching. Cry havoc and coerce the dogs of war. Soundbite nodded in agreement. Yes, sir.
sugar,
Ah, and Lasso Sue, the dog gun, who I'd let down a minute back,
and
and the
water.
Cloud Fox looked at him warily. Yeah. Soundbite's
Perching.
smile became downright evil. Cover your ears. The canines hastily slammed their paws over their ears. Wait. Right before Soundbite let out an ear-shattering whistle. The sheer volume of the whistle was enough to cause those humans with unprotected ears to flinch. Ow. But the reaction was far more prominent in the small army of dogs that collapsed into a pile-up of writhing and agonized bodies, too distracted by their pain to even react to their riders trying to rouse them. Vivi gaped in awe at the display
sugar
before
sells
her.
out pretty
Holy,
fast.
she breathed numbly. But wait, there's more.
Hola,
I
mi
grinned
Cami,
menacingly before
¿cómo
cocking my head at
estás?
Soundbite. Lay down the law, little buddy. Gladly, Soundbite smirked before belting out a massive, attention-drawing whistle and adopting the voice of God. Listen up, mongrels. As of 10 seconds ago, you all work for me. I am the Alpha, you are the Omega. Any protests, any rebellions, any shit whatsoever, anything less than complete and utter submission, will be met with immediate agony. Got it?
Estoy muy
There was a
bien,
moment of
estoy muy
stunned
bien,
confusion as the
aquí
wolves muttered amongst
relajándome un
themselves, and
poquito,
some of the
jugando
savvier riders tried to unlatch themselves from their
tiendita.
mounts. All of a sudden, one of the foremost wolves managed to work itself to its feet and snarl at us. Listen here, you slimy little F-we-it. Yerg! The wolf collapsed into a flailing mess, clawing at his ears in agony as the rest of the wolves shrank away in terror. Any other takers? Soundbite drawled with a flat tone and look. He then redonned his usual smirk when the rest of the hounds shrank back and bowed their heads fearfully. That's what I thought. Now then your marching orders are simple, and evil glint entered Soundbite's gaze. Regarding every last Marine and world government soldier on this island, rip and tear until it is done. For a moment, a brief moment, the hounds merely looked blankly at Soundbite. And then, one and all, the same bloodthirsty grin played over their faces. I heard more than a few mutters of sorry boss Jabra, but soon enough, the wolves turned tail and darted down the street and into sidelong alleyways, dragging their helpless riders along with them. I grinned confidently as I turned around and dusted my hands off. And that's that. While most of our allies were staring after the wolves and at me in horrified shock, a lot of my crewmates were just straight up jaded. You do realize that you are a legitimate monster, right, Cross? Sue asked with a cocked eyebrow. And damn proud of it, considering where I started from and who I'm directing it all towards, I smirked back. Now then, would say we divvy things up, him? I call dibs on going with Ono and Kashi. Usopp spoke up hastily in a tone that contained, admirably enough, marginally more eagerness than fear. I'll second that notion, though we'll be fighting street level. Boss thumped a fist to his chest. Your strategy's as good as any, but someone's gotta hold the line and damn if we're not gonna be a part of it. Right, boys? Hell yeah. Teenage Dugon warrior squad pumped their fists in agreement. Who else? I tapped my chin thoughtfully before adopting an impish grin as I started to glance towards our resident monsters. Man, I don't care, Zoro grumbled. Wherever we are, it's going to be boring as shit until we get to the tower. I think I'll just walk straight there. For once, I agree with the mosshead, Sanji added with an indifferent shrug. Then in that case, maybe you two can take the time to team GRK. I froze in terror and stared at the blade and lake hovering within inches of my face. Oh, okay, I won't speak madder. That kind of madness, just no more physical therapy. Ah, Sanji, Vivi hastily piped up. Considering just how treacherous this endeavor will be, would you mind acting as my escort alongside Karu? At once, my dearest princess, Sanji called out as he spun over to her. Yo, mosshead, Sue had the courtesy to yap up. Your swords versus my girl's guns. Want to see who can get the higher head count. What? Kanis yelped in shock. Zoro, for his part, leered eagerly as he rested his arm on his sword's hilts. Sounds like fun to me. Now wait just a second. Loser swabs Mary's deck for a month. Fine by me, pubball. Stop making bets without my say-so. The gunner wailed, flailing her arms frantically. Sue's very mature response was to stick her tongue out. I blinked at the sudden turn of events, but then shrugged and turned towards the remaining crew. So, Nami Chopper, you two with me. No complaints here, Chopper piped up, while Nami simply nodded. Right then, let's get going. Godspeed, everyone. And with that, we all split up and headed off. Chopper and Nami followed me down an alleyway and into a nearby side street. So, Cross Chopper spoke up hesitantly. Coming with you is all well and good, but are you sure that we can handle ourselves against that many Marines? I mean, he fingered the bandoliers of vials he had strapped across his chest. I only have so much ammunition, even if I can make more on the fly. And in case you hadn't noticed, Nami held up the hand holding her climb attacked, prompting the clouds flowing around her to form into a hand and wave for all of a second before lunging at me, at which point she grabbed her own wrist and hastily brought them back under control. I'm still trying to keep this little doodad under control here. Is this really the best of ideas? Absolutely, I confidently assured them. In fact, I even have a plan. But first, I hastily snapped a finger up. Apropos of nothing, sound bigger than any mortar emplacements within your range at the moment. Nami and Chopper paled for every bit that soundbite and Lasso grinned. Oh, Puru K Lake. Hello. See Commodore Smoker, Captain Hina. This is Master Chief Petty Officer Kobe calling in from Marineford HQ. I apologize for calling at such a late hour, but I have new orders for you from Fleet Admiral Sengoku himself. As of this moment, you have been reassigned from running patrols in mid-paradise. You are to gather your crew and present yourselves at Anai's lobby ASAP. The two Marines exchanged carefully sculpted looks for a moment, the name of the officer ringing familiar to them as one of Cross' recommendations, before Smoker regarded the snail with a sigh. Apologies, Master Chief Petty Officer, but you've caught us at a bad time. W.A. Kobe started to squawk in a panic. Excuse me. Before the snail suddenly roared indignantly, its apoplectic expression taking on a golden sheen in the process. For a moment, the two Marines flinched back. Upsetting Sengoku was on the brink of suicidal, but then with what they were doing, so were they. You had better have the best excuse of your careers for not being able to report in here. Or else I'll have you assigned to scrubbing the outside of Impel Down for the rest of your miserable careers. The hellish Buddha roared. Hina shivered in horror as she tried to get her nerve back. Terrified, Hina's very, very terrified, she whispered to herself before steeling her back. Our sincerest apologies, Fleet Admiral, but we beached Smoker's ship and my fleet for a routine cleaning of their hulls. We began the cleaning process an hour ago, Smoker picked up as he procedurally ashed his cigar. And the unbeaching process will take too long. By the time we reach the Judicial Island, I'm sure that the action will be over and we'll be left with half-clean ships that we'll have to rebeach. The smoke man cocked his eyebrow. What sounds like a better use of our time to you, Fleet Admiral. There was a pause as the snail ground its teeth to dust before the glow died away, and the Fleet Admiral managed to speak in a slightly calmer voice. Or at least, rather than speaking with unconcealed murderous rage, his voice held badly concealed murderous rage. Move up your plans, finish cleaning your ships as fast as your hands can manage, and set sail to receive further orders. Understood. Yes, sir, the officer saluted swiftly. The connection cut out a second later, and Hina allowed a smirk to grow on her face as she sank back into the lawn chair she was seated in, stretching her arms above her head with a few grateful skeletal pops as she allowed the rays of Tenedora's Island's eternal sunset to wash over her. You know, it took more control than I care to admit, not to say how could we have known that the Straw Hats were going to try assaulting Anai's lobby. Smoker sighed as he sank back into his own chair, but the corners of his mouth twitched upwards nonetheless as he held up a glass of vividly colored alcohol to his old friend. Here's to the Straw Hats kicking the world government's teeth in, and Rooster potentially kicking a world noble's teeth in if I understood him properly. Here's hoping that they survive. Can. Pie, he enunciated calmly, clinking her own glass against Smoker's and taking a drink before glancing over her shoulder. Well, you heard the man. We need to have enough progress done on our ships to fit our timelines. Hop to it, and make sure not to miss so much as a spot. Aye, Captain. The Marine soldiers currently working on the undersides of 9 of the dozen battleships shouted back with no small amount of venom. Fengo growled beneath his breath as furiously scrubbed the brush he was wielding against a particularly resilient patch of barnacles. Would someone mind explaining to me why we're working ourselves to the bone when the whole point of this little ruse is for us to drag our damn heels? According to Commodore Smoker. Tashi bit out as she maneuvered Shigure around the snapping jaws of several still living meter-large barnacles in order to stab them through their shells. Her tone clearly saying that she wanted to replace the word Commodore with something far less endearing. Just because we're putting up a false pretense is no reason for our work ethic to suffer. Of course, seeing as both he and Hina are Captain Grade and higher, apparently their work ethic has already been proven. The last word was emphasized with the decapitation of yet another bottom-feeding pest. That, and the fact that we have every reason to avoid any more suspicious behavior than we have to. Fullbody grumbled as he shook his achy knuckles out. Though personally, I think that those two can take their precious work ethic and shove it up there. Problems, you three. Sir, no sir. The Marine officers barked in barely concealed terror. Good smoker huffed as he relaxed in his lawn chair before directing a look at the transponder snail.
You're buying
Now
cheese?
try and keep it down. We're about to return to some primetime entertainment. As he turned back to the SBS, he reflected on the fact that he was actually considering a pirate radio to be primetime entertainment. A year ago, he would have hung up without a second thought, deeming any pirate a criminal not worth listening to.
Some?
Now, however,
That sounds
Smoker
bomb
grinned
right
viciously
now.
as the sounds of all-out warfare erupted from the mouth of the snail. Now he could think of no better pastime than to hear the world government get its teeth kicked in. Give 'em hell, straw hats, he muttered beneath his breath. Oh, shit-sighted, Captain. All right, good. Bartolomeo called up to the lookout. Ibis, are you ready for this? The young girl glanced down at the snoozing transponder snail in her lap before taking a deep breath and nodding decisively. Her fingers still buried in her companion's mane. As ready as I'll ever be. Bartolomeo nodded back and waited, his eyes shut in concentration. The ship crept closer and closer, completely unaware of the nearby pirate ship. Finally, Ape's eyes opened, and Bartolomeo jerked his hand down. All right, fire. The cannons on board the cannibal fired towards the oncoming yacht. It was one of those newfangled steamships capable of moving without sail power. Of course, considering the expense and fragility of the steam engines, only a celestial dragon
Why
could
didn't
afford
you
one.
ding?
And even by their standards, it was a
Fucking
clear
weirdo.
vanity project. More importantly, it lacked sails so it could look pretty, and was propelled by a pair of large paddle boxes on the sides of the ships. All of which meant that when a half-dozen cannonballs smashed into the paddle box and reduced it to so many
Thank you
splinters,
for the exact
the
change,
ship was
sir.
completely dead in the water.
You a
Bad
beast.
design, that, but what else could one expect from a vanity project yacht designed by nobles for nobles? They're sending the distress signal, Captain, Apis reported, her eyes scrunched up in concentration as she clutched Kulla's shell. The snail in question half awake and blinking blearily. I'm trying to talk to their snail now. Pull us alongside. Bartolomeo barked. Valentine, you're up. The lemon-clad woman immediately jumped off of the mainmast, floating over to the yacht, at which point she went to her full 10.
Ooh, thank you for the large
000
purchase,
kilograms and
sir.
smashed into the ship, buckling the sides and throwing shattered planks into
Appreciate
the
you.
air. With a response by onboard security thoroughly fucked, the helmsman had no problem bringing the cannibal 100 yards off to the yacht's side. Stepping up to the railing, Bartolomeo crossed his arms in his usual pose, a shimmering barrier crossing the gap between the two ships in a nice, even platform. All right, go, 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 he barked. Wait. The ex-mafia boss glanced back at Epes. What? I've got the snail, she reported. He'll cut off the distress signal, but only if we bring him with us. She scowled darkly. Apparently, the celestial dragons treat transponder snails as well they do anyone else. On a very related note, I'll take 5 minutes with whoever's on that ship when you're done with them. Noted. And you heard that, Jin? Bartolomeo confirmed. The ex-Krieg pirate nodded, before joining the stream of pirates heading over towards the celestial dragon's ship. Bartolomeo himself waited a few more minutes before hopping onto the barrier and running across. He found a scene of complete and utter pandemonium. True, the celestial dragons had of course brought a security detail, and in spite of the fact that they rarely if ever saw any action due to no one in the world being stupid enough to attack the world nobles, they were relatively decent too. But against his pirates in the dead of night, they were outnumbered and outmatched. Whether they had been shot, stabbed, crushed, or blown up, the majority were scattered unmoving over the shattered deck. Bang! Bartolomeo sighed as a bullet pinged off of the barrier he'd reflexively thrown up. He turned around to look at a rotund, mustachioed man holding a smoking pistol and wearing a bubble helmet, way too tight briefs, and little else. A young, equally scantily clad slave girl was held in the celestial dragon's other arm, her gaze tight with fear. Aw, geez, man, Bartolomeo groaned, snapping a hand up to cover his eyes. Do you have any idea how hard it is to get rid of memories like this? This barrier can block a lot of shit, but Psycho who sits torture isn't a part of it. Psychological, mister. 5, provided as he dug out more ammunition from his nostril. Yeah, that. How dare you assault my ship like this? The celestial dragon roared back. I'll give you one chance. Submit to being my slaves, or be tossed into the deepest, darkest depths of impelled down. Jin answered for them all by punching him in the face, shattering his helmet and dropping him like a sack of potatoes. Aw, come on, Jin, I wanted to do that. Bartolomeo whined. Plus, I'm the captain, I got first dibs. I stopped putting my captains on pedestals after my last crew, the tired-eyed man scoffed as he rolled his shoulder. Anyway, you can kick him in the ribs for all I care. I've got my pound of flesh. Still, though, it's the principle of the damn matter. Mister. 5 sighed as Bartolomeo and Jin got into another squabble, and carefully took the slave girl, standing petrified next to the downworld noble, by the shoulders. Did he really think he could take us? Former agent drawled, more to himself than her. I suppose it doesn't matter. Now let's see if I remember how to pick this kind of lock. Kya. All eyes turned to the hole in the deck as a screaming and flailing Miss Valentine was launched out of it by a mountain of a man dressed in a black suit and sunglasses, a marine overcoat with captain's insignia on top, and a massive silver halberd in his hands. Pirate scum, he rumbled, winding up a swing at Bartolomeo. The halberd promptly shattered upon the barrier, and the captain only had time to widen his eyes before Jin and Bartolomeo negligently lashed their respective tonfa and force fields at him, slamming him into the water, and not missing a beat in their argument. And do you know how much fun it is to feel the cartilage breaking under your bare hands? Their captain demanded.
I need
I
a
think you do,
restock,
and that just makes it worse.
but I'm busy.
Andijan. Shut up, you. Bartolomeo barked, stamping down on the groaning world noble's face. You don't get an opinion. Those two are monsters, mister. 5 muttered as the lock finally clicked under his hands. There we go, you're free to. Look out below. What the? Crash. Oh, well, that never gets any better. Miss Valentine grinned as she rubbed her ass before holding up the torn, battered skeleton of her parasol before her eyes. But also totally not my fault. Will you look at this? The damn bastard shredded my umbrella. She reached up and then growled as she found something missing. And I lost my hat too. Someone tell me where that bastard is so I can get Mr. 5 to kick his ass. I'll get right on that. The female assassin blinked and looked around in confusion for a second before turning her gaze downwards to observe the thoroughly stunned Mr. 5 she was sitting on. Oh, oops. Captain Engine knocked him into the drink anyway, Hippie said as she floated over on Lindy's back. Please tell me one of you idiots got the transponder snail. Right here, Miss Apes, one of the crew members reported, holding out the snail in question. Good job, she said, taking the snail and stroking its neck. Now where's that world noble Herc? She cut herself off when her eyes fell on the rotund, near-nude form of the man in question. Okay, never mind. I wouldn't make Lindy touch the bastard with a 10-foot pole. The juvenile millennial dragon in question warbled out a sickened groan of agreement. And that's why you're the biggest jackass I've ever met, and that's saying. Hold that thought. Bartolomeo cut his first mate off with a pair of crossed fingers and a barrier, ignoring him as he pounded on the invulnerable wall in favor of addressing Apis' presence. You ready for the next step, Pince Eyes? Anything besides looking at that man again, the young girl muttered before glancing up into the sky. Now, where are? There you are. The devil fruit user waved her hand up at the sky, in response to which a seagull floated down from where it had been circling the ocean, letting out a caw of annoyance. Yes, I know, the girl sighed, rolling her eyes and pulling out a slice of bread that she tossed to the
why
seagull.
you give me a 50
Feel any better?
for
The girl's
$2?
tone suddenly took on a much more pleasant-sounding tone.
You weird.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Apis rolled her eyes with a scoff.
decrepit
Okay,
piece
Captain,
of crap.
you just need to follow the gull. You heard her, boys. Bartolomeo barked. Let's get out of here before a Marine Admiral shows up. Oh, on any other day. The streets of the Nye's lobby would have been a perfect example of the clockwork perfection of the inner workings of the Marines and the world government. Paperwork filed neatly and precisely. Drills practiced to perfection. And an ever-present garrison of soldiers just waiting for an opportunity to fight to uphold the justice of the world government. However, in truth, this was merely the surface of the Nyes that was presented to the world. In truth, the state of the Nyes was far less impressive. After 50 years of pirates never managing to so much as scratch the gates that Oimo and Kashi guarded, the soldiers of the Navy and the world government had started to view a Nye's lobby as little more than a vacation posting. Protocols were relaxed, drill schedules dwindled away into non-existence, and ultimately the island fell lax. This laxness bit the Marines in the ass on the day that the Straw Hats attacked, and it bit them hard. This was evidence in the panic that was sown amongst the Marines as they desperately scrambled to prepare some form of defensive line in order to face the onslaught of pirates that they just knew was coming their way. Credit where it was due, it was impressive enough that they'd managed to muster enough coordination to form any kind of line at all. But the endeavor fell apart in the most vital step of all. What do you mean you haven't done bayonet drills in 10 years? Mortars? Where are those damn mortars? You call that a line? My 5-year-old could make a better line than that. And does on the wall every single day. Oh no, oh no, oh no. That is to say, the execution. Still, lack of practice aside, the men of the Nyes were still soldiers, so even if their coordination was lacking, it wasn't as if it was entirely non-existent. As such, the soldiers were just starting to make some actual headway. Hey, pirates. I see pirates coming. When a lookout stationed on a rooftop just had to go ahead and kick the hornet's nest again. However, before the soldiers could start to panic, one of the officers present in the mob cut through the chatter with a sharp whistle. Belay that, soldiers. He roared as soon as he had the majority's attention. Every Marine present froze, and the officer nodded in satisfaction. Well, looks like you lumps of lard do have a few scraps of discipline left in you. And as for you, he barked up to the lookout. Marine, how many pirates and what weapons do they have? All. The lookout peered down the street hesitantly. I see 3. You heard the man. Now, we might be outnumbered 3 to 1, but... Sir. That's not quite right. We actually outnumber them. Huh. But you said that you saw 300 of them. It was at that point that the pirates in question rounded a corner and came into full view. I said that there were 3, period. And indeed, much to the surprise and bemusement of the Marines. That's all that there were. One orange-haired woman with a metal staff and a nimbus of clouds floating around her, one short, fur-covered Zoan wearing a top hat with vials strapped across his chest, and one man wearing a baseball cap gripping a large cannon with one hand, a baton with another, and carrying a grinning snail on his shoulder. Just 3 pirates, no more, no less. And yet they managed to terrify all 100 of the soldiers with the smiles they were sporting. To be fair, however, the smiles the pirates were sporting were far from normal. Well, no, that wasn't quite true. They seemed normal at first glance. But a longer look revealed lips drawn just a little too wide, cheek muscles just a little too tense, and far, far too many teeth for comfort. And the eyes, oh the eyes. Those smiles reached the pirate's eyes, and many a Marine wished they didn't, for the eyes glinted with a mix of sadistic glee, mean-spirited mischief, and plain old-fashioned murderous hate. What their eyes said about those smiles was absolutely not something to contemplate. In short, the pirates made up for their numerical inferiority by sheer bowel-loosening terror. Whispers were swiftly born amongst the uneasy ranks of the Marines. T that snail. T that's Jeremiah Cross and Soundbite. Oh no, there's nowhere to hide anymore, oh no. Why yeah, and that woman. T that must be their navigator, Nami. That cloud, or Renault must be right, she really is a witch. Don't look her in the eye, lest she take your very soul and make you pay interest to get it back. T then that monster with them. It's the mad doctor, Chopper. Don't let him take me alive, shoot me if you have to, just don't let him take me alive. Wheat. The Marines were shocked into silence when a shrill whistle pierced the air from the direction of the pirates, drawing all of their attention back to them. "Hello, Marine dipshits." Jeremiah Cross's grin took on a taunting tone as he mockingly saluted them. "We're on our way to the Tower of Justice to go get our crewmate back. You poor saps all have the misfortune of happening to be in our way, but the fact is that you're not the ones we're here to utterly destroy. So you all have two options. Let us through." The man's grin widened as his baton suddenly started crackling with electricity. "Or get whipped. What'll it be?" "We're not afraid of you pirates," stuttered one of the Marines with what little courage he could muster up. "There are 100 of us here now, and our reinforcements will be here in a minute. There are thousands of us on this island. Your lives are forfeit." Pirates took a second to glance amongst themselves and exchange grins before starting to chuckle morbidly. "Reinforcements." Cross snickered as though he'd just heard a joke. "Why, yes," the Marine reiterated, his stutter belying just how confident he really was. "Oh, please," Nami scoffed as she shook her head in pity. "Let me share with you one of the things I've learned in my years of hunting treasure. Quality is better than quantity, though both is even better." She trailed off into silence as she stared off into nothing, a slight trail of drool escaping her slack smile. She was quick to recover when Cross whacked the back of her head, though, her smile shifting to sheepish. "I prefer quantity myself. After all, you need large sample sizes for true science." Topper grinned menacingly. "The point we're trying to make," Cross cut in, smirking as he spun his baton into his pocket, "is that it just really doesn't matter how many warm bodies you throw at us, because we're going to cut through them anyway to get to our comrade. The best way to put it, well," Cross shrugged helplessly. "Allow me to put my own spin on an oft-rehashed quote. Yea, though we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, we will fear no evil." Cross suddenly shot his hand up and snapped his fingers, prompting a flurry of introductory pipe organ notes to ring out as Nami swung her climb attack in front of her. The Marines recoiled in horror as a mass of impenetrable haze that had been hiding between the buildings of the street surged into the open to loom above the street like the shadow of. Several Marines actually did lose control of their bodily functions as they made a most unfortunate leap of logic. Beneath the shadow of the cloud, the light was angled in just such a manner that it illuminated Cross's smile, expanding it to face-consuming proportions and making him look not like a demon, but a walking, half-decomposed corpse. For we are as death itself. The Marines had all of 1 second to let the phrase run through their terror-addled minds before a medley of bone-rattlingly loud voices suddenly began roaring. "First you see us, then you don't." The Marines froze as one and started to pant in terror as the fog suddenly surged past the pirates and consumed them, reducing the world to what they could reach out and touch. "Now you hear, you ass. Now you won't." The company of Marines jumped in shock when an uproar of noise erupted from everywhere around them, so utterly chaotic and maddening that it was impossible to determine where one noise started and another ended. The Marines tried to regain some semblance of normality for 1 second, 2 seconds, 3. Then, all of a sudden, dozens of shadows appeared all around them, towering and glaring down at the Marines. The noise and their roars now taking on a hellish rendition of song. "It's our secret of survival in a very nasty world." One of the ranking officers opened their mouth in an attempt to bark orders over the pirates' din. "Guess you should have figured out some secrets of your own," and was promptly silenced by a metal-clad fist crushing into his mouth and laying him out flat. "Now you feel, you ass. Now you can't." Overwhelmed, the Marines began frantically firing and sitting at the shadows. Some faded, others turned out to be fellow Marines, and yet others began contorting in the most inhuman of manners. One in particular descended for a brief second before seeming to burst out of the broom, the very cloud snaking out to grab one of the soldiers before flailing him around like a rag doll, downing almost a dozen more Marines before flinging him into a wall with stone-shattering force. Are we real? Perhaps we aren't. One of the larger shadows suddenly surged forwards and rammed dead into the center of the soldiers, massive fist flailing and laying low Marine after Marine without fail. However, the moment the Marines tried to take aim at it, the figure vanished into nowhere. The next second, the Marines were flung into an almighty panic, half on account of the air being ripped apart by numerous explosions erupting from, well, everywhere. The other half on account of their comrades suddenly collapsing to the ground with syringes sticking out of varying parts of their anatomy. "It's our secret of survival in a very nasty world. It's our secret of survival in a very nasty world." One particularly skittish soldier gulped. Is it really such a nasty world?" He squeaked semi-hysterically. Unfortunately for him, he received an answer in the form of a fist grabbing his collar and jerking him forward so that he was face to face with a pair of viciously grinning faces. "Oh yes," the smiles crooned in a tone that was way too calm for the sadistic glee it contained. "A very nasty world." And with that, the larger of the two smiles surged forward and caved the soldier's nose in before dropping him and moving on. "Nastier than you could ever dream of." From up above, lightning lanced down from above onto the Marines, shattering what little cohesion they had left. And from beneath, a figure suddenly leapt out of the low-hanging fog, taking only a few seconds of grappling to jerk him down and out of sight, where in spite of all the madness being broadcast, everyone could hear the sounds of the poor man screaming as his bones shattered. Eyes and jaws, unseen by anyone, a diminutive figure measuring at a little under 3 feet dashed in amongst the legs of the Marines. An almost negligible pair of blades clutched in his hooves that he lashed out, slicing shallow but very precise cuts. The only sign the Marines ever received that he existed was when they suddenly collapsed without warning, their limbs refusing to comply with their desires no matter what they did. Claws and teeth! The fear factor ramped up another full degree when a dog of all things suddenly leapt out of the low-hanging fog obscuring the ground from sight, leaping onto one of the few officers left standing and dragging him down into the fog in a flailing ball of fear and fangs. "Ready to attack you. If you're a mook, you better run. Don't come fighting with a pirate if you haven't got a gun." Devilish cackling filled the air as one of the few remaining Marines attempted to crawl away from the madness, shakily removing a transponder snail from his jacket and doing his best to ignore the hellish hymn going on as he fumbled for the button hidden on the shell he knew would cause the snail to start bawling out an SOS. He then regretted the action when the snail started literally bawling in his hands. Every creature for survival has to look out for itself. Got no nannies here or grannies dear to look after your health. The next line faded out as a chorus of blood, curdling screams rang out, illusions of what looked like loving, motherly figures surrounding them contorting into nightmares straight out of Lovecraft. Picky, 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 pick up, the soldier muttered feverishly. And every child could tell you that you've got no brains to interfere, bellowed the voices. By now, the snail seemed to be getting nauseous from all of the sweat on the man holding it, who was currently in the process of running for the nearest building. As the voices let out a growing moan, he slammed the door behind him, and mercifully, the other end picked up. Lieutenant Sims here, what is your emergency? Drawled the bored voice over the line. First you see us, then you don't, came the voices from outside, just audible enough to still be terrifying. I and need our reinforcements. H help, as someone, anyone. Now you hear us, now you won't, came the whispers again. It's our secret of survival in a very nasty world. The Marine's shuddering redoubled as he stared around in terror. WW were completely outmatched, were BB being torn apart by the B boatload, oh no, oh god. Hey, pull yourself together, Marine. Lieutenant Sims barked hastily. Hurry up and talk some sense, damn it. Now you feel us, now you can't. Oh god, oh god, oh god, oh god. Damn it, Marine, who the hell is attacking you? Are we real? Perhaps we aren't. Demons. The Marine howled in terror. They're demons, they're fucking demons, eh? The Marine trailed off into a terrified gurgle as a metal-clad hand suddenly snagged the back of his skull and held it tight. Demons, Fef. Haha, you know, I actually really like that. Yeah, Tony, Chopper, Nami, and Jeremiah Cross and Soundbite, the demon trio. I really like it. It's, shall we say, appropriate. The soldier could only whimper as the metal fingers slowly increased their pressure upon his scalp. See, on the crew, we already have what we call the monster trio. Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji. They're our top 3 fighters, our monsters. You see them, you immediately know that you're fucked because they can destroy you in a second. They're monsters, they're immediate threats, it's just who they are. The Marine's whimper devolved into a squeal when a pair of toothy smiles filled his peripheral vision. Ah, but demons are normal, you see. They walk like normal people, talk like normal people, laugh, cry, and love like normal people, until you piss them off. Until you make them take off their masks and they show you what lies beneath. Because when that happens, Cross suddenly reared the Marine's head back. Crash! And slammed it straight through the nearest table he could find, crushing his head into the floorboards below. We give you nothing short of hell itself. Cross snarled at the yet active transponder snail. The snail's response was to roll its eyes up in their sockets and keel over with a whimper. Cross blinked in surprise before chuckling sheepishly as he scratched the side of his head. Damn, I think I scared myself a little there, he admitted. However, he then paused in his ministrations and allowed himself yet another grin. Still, though, the demon trio, ha, I'll have to run that by them. And with that, the pirate spun on his heel and started walking down the street. It's our secret of survival, secret of survival, secret of survival, he sang beneath his breath as he strolled back into the fog, spinning a crackling rod of metal in his fingers as he went. It's our secret of survival in a very, very, very nasty world. So nasty, the fog purred in agreement as it swallowed him whole. Oh. Apu's eye twitched furiously as he stared at the yet grinning transponder snail. Well, if I didn't think it was a dumb idea to try messing with Cross before. Ah, see, Captain, are you sure about this? Scratchman Apu blinked as he was brought back to there, and then before glancing over at the crew member next to him, who was practically quaking in his boots and scoffed. Bah, it's 3 ships, and the highest-ranking officer is a Commodore. Perfectly manageable. He sent a pointed glance at the transponder snail on a table next to him. Horse, that's if our intelligence is correct. Hey, don't underestimate our intelligence skills. The mask-sporting snail retorted indignantly. This is accurate as of yesterday. I'd bet Porch's makeup kit on it. Not if you want to remain a man, you won't. Apu rolled his eyes as Foxy and his first mate descended into their third argument of the conversation. Why did I have to scrape the bottom of the barrel? But anyway, did you at least dig up some information on what the officers are capable of? He asked in an attempt to get things back on track. The line was occupied by the sound of scuffling for a few more minutes before the snail redonned its mask and spoke up again. Right, where's that fight log? Got it. Task Force Cerberus. They're a rapid response force for this part of the Grand Line, supposed to be able to respond to any disturbance in a matter of hours. He snorted with a grim scowl. Not surprised Sandoku is recalling them, if he has more than 15 battleships able to sortie in a few hours' notice at Marineford. I'll eat my own boxing gloves. Anyway, they're led by Commodore Blakely. She's an expert with wires, and recently upgraded from steel to that newfangled Wapombo for more versatility. Very, very dangerous on the fast track for promotion to Vice Admiral. The roar of the sea's exasperation promptly morphed into wariness. Pan, you know this how exactly. The long arms got dropped when the grin on the other end suddenly became one that he had grown to associate with Cross. A few ways. One is that I have quite the extensive crew who don't all wear their masks 24/7, and who write reports upon returning from bar hopping during shore leave. Fox's grin redoubled. Another is that Blakely has a tendency to be sloppy with her paperwork.
Why'd you give me a 50?
A new friend of mine was kind enough to share his contacts with me recently. Very well-placed contacts, shall we say. Apu's wariness snapped straight to full-on dread.
Weirdo.
Remind me, what the hell is your bounty again? Tilda. Captain. The other 2 officers. Fee. The laughter abruptly cut off in favor of a sharp cough. Alright, moving on to the two captains. One of them is Narwhal. Big guy, very strong, wields a supersized bazooka with special ammunition. Oh, and it's also a hammer. Needless to say, he's their primary long-range firepower. Then there's Lazar. He wields a pair of bladed tonfa, and he's quite good with them. Those two are strong for captains, but well, they're still captains. No match for a pair of powerful crews like yourselves. You got that damn straight. Apu glanced to the other captain he was sailing with and nodded in acknowledgement. Captain Dugong agrees with you, Foxy. Of course he does. I know what I'm talking about. Captain Dugong turned away from the masked transponder snail to shoot a flat look at Apu. Remind me how you got involved with working with us again. Apu grimaced and glanced at the cackling snail. Because I slipped up when I talked to the damn bastard on my way here and he figured out that I'm really friends with Cross. Paused for a second before shrugging and tilting his head side to side. And I figured out that he's actually a subordinate of the Straw Hats. So for all that he's arrogant, and I'm a bit ticked off that he's not here with us so as to maintain his anonymity. It's not like he's actually that bad of a guy. Fey. Both Apu and Captain Dugong glanced at one another with twitching eyebrows as Foxy continued to cackle at his self-proclaimed genius. Before they could do more than that, though, another Kung Fu Dugong soared out of the water and landed on the deck, before lowering himself into a low bow to Captain Dugong. Captain, sir. The Dugong barked. We've located Task Force Cerberus, and the great Kung Fu Galleon and its consorts are in position. Good work. Captain Dugong replied. Prep the ships for action and wait for the signal. Aye aye. And with that, the Dugong bowed again and dove back into the water. We're good to go, Captain Dugong signed to Apu, followed by a series of numbers. That's sufficient for navigation. Should be, was Apu's reply. Alright, we have our course. Bearing 3, 108 degrees, maximum sail. Gun crews are to man the cannons. Aye aye, Captain. Came the decidedly unenthusiastic reply. Captain Dugong quirked an eyebrow at that. Are you sure they'll fight? They'll fight much as they grumble about me being utterly nutso, Apu replied with an enthusiastic grin. Gotta get them used to my stunts somehow, right? Fey, oh wait, is that? Fey, what a coincidence, we just spotted our target too. I'll call you guys back once we're done so that we can meet up and have some drinks. On me, of course, because we're gonna be swimming in marine alcohol once we finish with this raid. Good luck to you, my friends.
Oh,
Fey, Kalik. Captain Dugong and Apu rolled their eyes as the transponder snail clicked off, and the two settled back to keeping an eye on the horizon as the stay tuned tacked on the corset. It wasn't long before the sterns of the marine battleships came into view under full sail. Sadly, whatever the virtues of the marine battleships, with their broad, deep, and very heavy hulls, speed was not one of them, and the stay tuned was rapidly gaining. The Marines, naturally, noticed this and began to turn around to face them. Captain, one crew member whined nervously. Wait for it, Apu muttered. Captain, wait for it. By now, all three battleships were broadside to the stay tuned, their gun turrets lumbering around to point some very large caliber cannons at them. Captain, the crew shouted as one. Alright. Bunch of wimps sighing, Apu put his fingers to his lips and blew, producing a deep, reverberating sound that seemed to vibrate the whole ocean. Then it passed, and for a moment nothing happened. Then, out of nowhere, three ships, one old battered and wearing its barnacles proudly, and two that would have passed for marine ships were it not for their new turtle shell pattern paint job, surfaced right underneath the Marine Task Force's keels, lifting the battleships under the combined force of their surfacing and the muscle power of the Dugongs manning them. Of course, as physics dictated, what goes up must come down, and the battleships promptly fell off and onto their sides. Papa! Apu cackled as Marines began to swarm over the battleship's exposed side, snapping into the first stance of the double joints martial arts style. Ready for a fight, Cappy. Captain Dugong smirked eagerly as he held his flipper out to his side. His first mate was swift to fill the waiting palm with a rod of green steel, a shimmering curved blade coming out of one side. Captain flexed his flipper around the Naginata, spinning it around his form enough times that, were he even marginally less skilled, he'd be sliced to ribbons. Not to mention the railing suddenly acquiring a wood carving of Captain Dugong himself popping a thumbs up. Papa. Great answer. Apu cackled, putting his boot up on the railing. Now, let's do this. And with that, the two captains leapt over the edge of the ship and straight into battle. Oh, okay, Cross, be honest with me. How long were you planning that horror show back there? Nami asked at last, jabbing her thumb over her shoulder as we strolled down the street and away from the scene of utmost carnage we created not a minute earlier. I chuckled grimly as I folded my arms behind my head. Come now, guys, you really think that with literally all of the thousands of inside jokes from my home at my disposal, soundbite, and I haven't planned at least a few dozen instances just like this for scenarios just like these. I thought we'd take advantage of a bad situation and, have a little fun. I tilted my head to grin at them. You saying you guys didn't have fun, or that you don't like the little bodice moniker I came up with for us all? Nami glanced away with a slight blush as she scratched her cheek. More than my sanity is willing to admit, she muttered sheepishly. For the sake of my Hippocratic oath, I think I'll refrain from answering, Chopper deadpanned as he stared straight ahead. Still say that we should be a quartet, soundbite sniffed in faux indignation. Not a chance, our crew is composed of trios and that is an immutable fact, I scoffed as I waved my hand casually. To change that would be to irrevocably warp the fabric of reality itself. What about the TWS? Chopper pointed out. Prepackaged doesn't count. Still, before we can start arguing over semantics, Nami cut in. Does anyone know how far we are from a courthouse? Her expression and clouds both darkened as she shot sidelong glares at us. And any commentary on my position or my abilities will be met with pain. Got it. Just tell me when we'll hit the... She cut herself off as we turned a corner. revealing the
Ooh,
courthouse
the
looming
cheese
larger
and
than
the
life over
sugar
a
went
rather impressive
up.
courtyard that was currently a scene of one-sided carnage as the
Yeah,
rest
it
of our
did.
small force demolished the last remnants of the Marine Defense Force. Courthouse. Well, that answers that. Should we join in? Hey, I don't know, I snickered, thrusting my gauntlets behind my head. Personally, I've already had my fill of petty fights
What
for
was
the
it?
moment.
Was it?
I'm fine with enjoying what's left of the show.
It was cheese
Speak for
and
yourself.
the sugar.
Lasso howled as he leapt off my shoulder and charged into the fray with bloodthirsty eagerness. Chopper watched the hound go with a slight twitch in his eye. Our whole crew is just a bundle of neuroses, isn't it? But there are neurotics, so it all balances out, Nami pointed out with a dry chuckle. Anyway, let's start walking. By the time we get over there, they should have finished and reached the front doors, I chuckle, taking my own advice and striding up to the massive structure. And indeed, the time that we arrived at the doors, carefully picking our way around piles of downed Marines stacked like cordwood, was the same time that the rest of our crewmates reached it. Of course, the first to greet us was a certain hurricane of love spinning up to grab our navigator's hands. Nami Swan. Sanji cheered exuberantly. I'm so glad to see that you were victorious in your battles. And might I just say that your clouds make you look as truly angelic as dear Canis hers. Whap. Oh. Sanji flinched before rubbing the back of his head with a sheepish chuckle. Ah, sorry, Nami Swan, I was just so happy to see you again, and Sanji cut himself off and stared down in confusion at the arm like bands of cloud wrapped around him. Gargagijich, stupid damn. Nami hissed in an embarrassed tone as she all but strangled her wrist. Pf. Heh. I snickered behind my fist. I take back what I said before. No need to bother yourself with getting therapy. This is just too much fun. Whap. Oh. I flinched and chuckled anew as I rubbed the spot where the cloud had clocked me over the head. Though admittedly, I'll have to watch what I say around you, but small price to pay. Whap whap. The pair of blows, organic and meteorological alike, only made me laugh harder. Soundbite, meanwhile, shot a cheeky grin at his fellow shoulder rider. How'd the head count contest turn out? Alas. Sue put the back of her paw to her forehead with an exaggerated sigh. Alas, my dear companion put up an effort most valiant, but she lost by a matter of dozens. I'm afraid that she'll be swatting poop deck for the foreseeable future. And I'll be using your stupid fluffy tail to do every inch of it. Canis growled vehemently, strangling the air as she glared bloody murder at her companion. You'll have to catch me if I tell the Earth, Sue sang as she swished her tail back and forth. Good luck hiding with me on the case. Soundbite leered mockingly. Oh, I imagine that my task will be much easier once I have myself a little slimy snack. The Cloud Fox emphasized her point with a snap of her fangs. The boisterous gastropod responded with his own chomp. Bring it on. Oh, you know why. Unless the peanut gallery has anything meaningful to add, Zoro thankfully interrupted, causing the animals to flinch and grin self-consciously. Let's move on before the damn bastards who have been trailing us in the shadows catch up to us. Agreed. There was a moment of muttered agreements from us all. Good. Leo, you want in on this? A chance to deface yet more government property. Leo grinned eagerly as he spun his katana into a ready position. Hell yes. Hey, hold on a second. You guys, I said hastily, jotting up beside them. Go ahead and through the doors if you must, but leave the pieces in place, all right? I need a second to tell everyone what's up next. The human and Dugong glanced at one another in confusion for a moment before shrugging indifferently. They then proceeded to move, and while the door looked like it was intact, I could definitely feel a stiff breeze flowing through it. All right, then, everyone gather up. I raised my voice, drawing the attention of pirate, shipwright, king bull, and the like. Phase 1, the approach is complete, I announced calmly. Phase 2, commencing ingress, proceeds as follows. With the straw hats head inside and towards the roof, where Luffy should be waiting for us. And the rest of you work on pulling the levers located in the towers of the courthouse, in order to lower the drawbridge while keeping as many mucks as you can from following us, and making sure that they don't stop the bridge from lowering. Though don't sweat it if you can't, I grinned maliciously. Will Zil have a way in even if the bridge gets stopped? Everyone clear on the plan. Once more, everyone nodded in agreement. Glad to hear it. Now then, I gestured at Lasso, prompting him to pat over me and leap into the air, allowing me to catch him and point his cannon form at the door. If you'll pardon me, I'm going to take this opportunity to say number 9 on my list of things I want to say at least once in the right context trademark, which I composed after saying number 1 a while back. And yes, I tilted my head with a grin as I narrowed my eye and steadied Lasso. You did hear a trademark in that. Fire. Kaboom. I strode through the gaping hole in the courthouse's doors as the smoke and rubble settled. Lasso balanced on my shoulder and a shit-eating grin on my face. Order in the court, I announced confidently. Oy vey, I heard Nami groan behind me. You Swiss cheesy motherfucker. Soundbite guffawed. Hey, it's a quote bucket list for a reason. I chuckled as I looked through the settling dust.
So
it took me a minute to get past the fact that there was a large group of monks looking at me, and the sheer scale of the courthouse. Seriously. I'd been in more than a few impressive churches in my time, and damn, but this place was on par with Notre Dame in sheer stature. Then I turned towards the three-headed judge who was standing nearest the front, debating the appropriate course of action with himself.
Cheese, milk, water,
then, questioning my sanity in every way possible, I proceeded to open my mouth. Oh, princess. I cried, pointing at the center head. Soundbite's expression promptly became fell into Polak's confusion. Oh, are you quite sane? Meanwhile, the central head gained a demure grin. How sweet of you to notice, he purred. The next instant, naturally, found the other two heads slamming into him. Don't encourage him, you rabble-rouser. They roared at me. Soundbite shifted his look to the Cerberus human. The hell? Oh, so that's why the central freeway is closed for repair, because you keep headbutting it, I called out in a tone of realization. Precisely, the center head said, only to be bashed again. Shut up. Two other heads growled before turning to me. And the same to you. My snail promptly awed in realization. Now I get it. They're all insane, aren't they? Exactly. Though the one in the middle is easily the worst. I wonder if I can mess with them a little. Whack. Oh, you're taking too long, Cross Zoro growled as I clutched the back of my skull in agony. You're the one who keeps telling us that time isn't on our side. Start taking your own advice. Spoil sport, I grumbled as I pinned him with a stink eye. Hey, we're coming up on a bit that's as serious as the grave, and I wanted to have a little more fun before we got into it. Sue me. Gladly, yelled Baskerville and several onlooking soldiers as they drew their weapons. My eye twitched in annoyance as I remembered where we were and stepped out of the way. On second thought, slice him up. And when it comes to the big boy, either aim horizontal or go straight down the middle. Right, Zoro grunted before adopting a familiar stance. Then the air began to ripple around him and his swords. Any other instance, I'd probably be wondering how the hell he managed to pull this move off. Free sword style. Charming demon sleepless nights. Aura's eyes flashed malevolently. Only Jiri, but right now, I was quite content to watch as the Marines felt like rain, Judge Baskerville included. Now Zoro grunted as he resheathed Wado Ikamanji. Let's get going. Lay on Macduff, I said, sweeping my arm forward before glancing over my shoulder at Nami. Or, well, Lady Macduff as it were. Not so fast, growled a trio of voices, and I turned with annoyance, but not much surprise to see the three-part giants pushing themselves back up. Their outfit had been reduced to tatters, but they seemed hardly worse for the wear judging by their glares and steady stances. Court is in session. We plead guilty and sentence ourselves to breaking out of Impel Down if we lose to CP9, and freedom if we don't, Sanji drawled. Court dismissed. Bring in the dancing lobsters. Soundbite cackled. It was a true testament to the trio's synchronicity that all three of their foreheads erupted with infuriated veins at once. You dare to pass judgment in our courtroom? Baz snarled. Such impudence. Kerville growled around grinding teeth. In this sacred house of justice, Princess rumbled murderously. In a flash of motion, the trio surged forwards at us, swinging their blade down like a guillotine. We are the law, they howled. I got ready to duck behind Zoro. Kaboom! But found the motion suddenly rendered moot on account of the judges whipping their blade up to block an incoming cannonball. Hey now. Attention shifted over to Zambai as he marched up to the judge with his still smoking bazooka perched on his shoulder, flanked by the Square Sisters on one side and Galley-less Foreman on the other. I realized that we might not be as photogenic as the Straw Hats. Zambai continued as he loaded a new shell in his cannon. But don't forget that we're in on this party too. We've got our own pride to think about, damn it. He shot a thumbs up at us with a smirk. You guys go on ahead and save your crewmate. Just leave this clown to us. And by the way here, Polly dug an envelope out of his jacket and tossed it to me. I'd love to stuff this down Lucci's throat myself, but I'm not that delusional. Just make sure that damn bastard gets the message. Clear. I grinned and gave the rope master a two-fingered salute. You got it. Give him hell, good sir. Do you really think we'll let you get past US? Baskerville roared as they swung their blade back. Playing. You don't get a say in the matter. The Square Sisters shot back as they blocked the swing in tandem. That's right. Tailstone bellowed as he pumped his fists in agreement. You think we can manage the tree nail lock here? Lulu asked, hammer and nails at the ready. It's sure worth a shot, Polly replied with a grin as the collective Baskerville dodged another bazooka blast from Zambai. Well, looks like they've got this handled, Nami announced with a confident nod. Come on, let's get moving. Right behind you, Nami Swan. Sanji spun after her eagerly, with the rest of us dead on her tail. With my eye on Zoro the whole time, we made it to the stairs easily enough. But unfortunately, as we neared the top, Guilty. Guilty. I tensed in terror as a fucking demented voice hit my ears and I put my head on a swivel. Shit, those crazy-ass jurymen. Soundbite, where are they? Soundbite spun his eye stalks around for a second. Guilty. Before snapping them upwards in horror. Above. I looked up along with him, and I very nearly lost my lunch when I caught sight of a huge-ass ball of metal falling towards us from the rafters. Might have David. Up until Mikey leapt at Leo, and spring-boarded off of his crossed blades in order to leap up into the air, gripping each of his nunchucks tightly in his flippers, and caught said ball of metal with the freaking chain. And he wasn't alone. While Mikey leapt at Leo, Donnie's spring boarded off of Raffi's side and rocketed up at an angle, shooting right past the ball. Herod's Wrath, at just the right angle to spin and slam his bow staff into the ball, sending both it and the vengeance-addled German attached to it plummeting into the courtroom below. Unfortunately, not only was the muzzle-bound prisoner swift to get back on his feet.
Flour.
Guilty. Guilty. He was swiftly joined by 10 others just like him. They're coming out of the damn woodwork. Raffi cursed vehemently. Leo ground his teeth for a second, as he observed the crowd of Praetorian-esque soldiers before suddenly leaping over the edge of the staircase. Tonight's Dugong warrior squad with me. Right. The rest of the adolescent Dugongs barked as they leapt after him. Wait, what the hell do you think you're doing? Boss roared after his students. We're holding the line. Leo shouted back as he and his teammates fell back to back, doing their best to keep all of their madly grinning opponents in sight. You guys go on ahead. We'll keep these psychos off your tails. Boss ground his teeth for a second before making the executive decision to snap his rope dart out at his pupils, albeit with the thermal option deactivated. The hell you bastards are. Mikey's response was to shoot the dart out of the air with a swiftly drawn pistol. The hell we aren't. He shouted back as he aimed his pistols about. This is our choice, boss. Somebody needs to watch your backs, and it might as well be US. You go on ahead and rescue Robin, we've got your 6. Donnie reassured us with a spin of his staff.
Alright, I need to pay my bills.
Raffi roared as she ground her side together in a flurry of sparks. We're the guard force of the Straw Hat Pirates. If we can't hold our own, no one can. And in the end, Leo tensed as he held his blades at the ready. There's one immutable fact that just can't be ignored. To hold the line in the face of adversity for the sake of one's comrades. Oh, here it comes. Nami groaned as she ground her palm into her forehead. Still, she was smiling just as wide as the rest of us. quartet of warriors proceeded to leap at the juryman. This is a man's duty. Boss ground his teeth furiously as he watched his students brawl against the behemoths. You little. If you boys die, I will punch the Reaper's lights out so that I can fish you out of hell and personally put you back there myself. Good luck, guys. Usopp waved eagerly. Don't fall before the boys do, Raffi. Girl power. Sue shouted. Go for the groin. Vivi encouraged. Every male in earshot paused long enough to shoot her a glare, the sole exception being Sanji, and even he didn't protest the many, many stink eyes. Anyway, come on. I waved for everyone to follow me as I continued up the stairs. They've got this, now it's time that we do our part.
Give me all your money,
and no cutting through the damn ceiling.
Please.
I shouted at Zoro.
I have bills
Siege.
to pay.
Why not? Why are we taking the long way to the roof? Soundbite asked. Because if my memory serves me right,
Oh, is the
I
bottled
glanced
water
upwards
too
warily.
expensive?
Odds are that Luffy is currently fighting Bluno, and we don't want to get in the middle of wait, what am I thinking? Can't you hear them? Soundbite visibly resisted the urge to somehow facepalm as he narrowed his eye stalks in concentration. I hear two guys up there besides the captain, and only one is conscious. Judging by the breath and
Girl,
heart
it
pattern,
was
Bluno
20
is Kyle.
cents
Currently,
exactly.
Luffy's fighting the other guy.
Fucking
Going by
weirdo.
the fur, it must be that wolf Zoan you mentioned. Jabra. I snapped my head around to stare at Soundbite in shock. Yeah, but he sounds almost scared. Oh, that'd do it.
Why you give me a
Soundbite suddenly
hundy for
cackled
$18?
Luffy's pissed.
You
He's about to
weirdo!
become doggy kibble. Wait,
I
the
hope
wolf
you
is mine,
trip.
right? Who am I going to fight now? Sanji grumbled. My suggestion. Torture Spandam for what he did to Robin, I deadpanned. Sanji promptly combusted. That'll work, he snarled in malevolent eagerness. Speaking of, I cast a sidelong glance at Soundbite. The gastropod's expression promptly soured. Yeah, I got them. Robin and Frankie are hurt. His scowl morphed into a grimace. And everything about the bastard gloating in front of them read scum of the earth. Yeah, well, whoa. I hissed in panic as I suddenly slammed myself back behind a corner I'd been about to round, narrowly missing a bullet aimed for my head. Yeah, well, take solace in the fact that we're going to make his life suck very soon. Can you tell me when he looks out his window in a panic? Oh yeah, easily. Good, I flicked my baton out as I got ready to head out. Then do that, and then we'll really be able to make that bastard squirm. For now, however, I joined my crewmates in charging the hapless defenders. Get them. Oh, we're a few nautical miles from our destination, Captain. Apis called down from the crow's nest. She then glanced up at the Seagull, wheeling away from them with a hesitant look before continuing. And can I just say that I really don't like this plan.
Ooh.
I've been talking to our guy, and according to him, this place's reputation undersells the reality. Birds don't even chance flying over it unless they can enter the stratosphere, and even then they consider it a gamble. Bartolomeo menacingly leered up at the Whisper Girl. So basically, what you're saying is that it's a hellish death trap that no sane entity, human or otherwise, would ever dare enter no matter what. Ibis hesitated slightly before exchanging uneasy looks with Lindy and then looking back down at their captain in dread. Yes. Bartolomeo's shark-like grin all but split his face. Perfect. The girl hung her head with a tearful sob. Why couldn't we have been saved by the Straw Hats? She moaned dismally. Lindy warbled thoughtfully. Apis' head promptly jerked as the point hit her dead on. Oh yeah, you're right. They would have been worse, wouldn't they? You got that damn right. Valentine and Five called up in acrid tones. Should I? Bardo barked at the top of his lungs before nodding at Apis and jabbing a thumb at the crew's newest transponder snail. All right, Brat, get this snail to call the biggest fish it knows and let's get this show on the road. Miss Goldenweek cocked an eyebrow in dull interest as she watched the other pre-adolescent on the crew converse with the snail. Biting into a rice cracker she was holding before angling her head towards Jin. Remind me why we're doing this again. Jin maintained his own neutral expression as he angled his head towards the painter. According to the boss, we're calling the Marines so that we can take credit for attacking the noble and draw whichever admiral they send after us on a wild goose chase. Which is why we're in these godforsaken waters in the first place. Goldenweek hummed noncommittally as she sank her teeth into the cracker. And in reality, Jin moaned wearily as he pinched the bridge of his nose. He wants to taunt the Marines for shits and giggles because he thinks it's fun as hell and because it's what he thinks the Straw Hats would do. Goldenweek's cracker snapped in half in her mouth. You ever wonder how the hell we got into this kind of a situation? Every single day. Jin held his pose for a second before allowing a minor smile to perk out from behind his
Thank you
hand.
for the exact
Mind you, that
change,
doesn't mean
sir,
there
not
weren't
like
anywhere else.
others!
Preach it, the diminutive artist drawled as she held up a fist, which Jin met halfway with his own. Everyone clamored. Bardo suddenly bellowed at the top of his lungs, causing his crew to fall silent as he jabbed a thumb at the vibrating snail resting on a nearby crate. It's ringing. We should get a connection any sec. He was promptly interrupted by the snail in question barking out Vicky lick, and snapping to attention. Bardo turned to face the snail with a grin that was equal parts shite-eating and bloodthirsty, his arms and fingers crossed in front of his chest. Hello, Marine Headquarters. This is Black Bart Bartolomeo calling to. We know exactly who you are, Black Bart, came a voice that was most decidedly not Fleet Admiral Sengoku or any Marine officer, for that matter. It was, however, powerful enough to freeze Bartolomeo in place. And we would like to know how you managed to get a hold of this number and why you are calling us. Bartolomeo hesitated for a moment before steeling his back and transitioning his leer into a scowl. I stole this snail off the ship of a world noble whose nose I personally, the hooligan-turned-pirate, shot a warning look at his first mate, cowing him into silence before continuing. Broke with my bare knuckles. I'm calling you bastards so that I can take credit for the public service I committed, and so that I can lay a message at the feet of the highest fucker on the food chain I can get my hands on. It was a credit to the speaker that he didn't even twitch an inch as he regarded Bartolomeo by proxy with an expression akin to boredom, and what you would like to share with us. It requested. Slam! The crew of the Campbell jumped in shock as Bartolomeo slammed his hands on both sides of the crate so that he could better loom over the snail. His visage absolutely beastly. Come and fucking get me, pigs, he spat venomously. There was a moment of silence, followed by the voice speaking up with only a trace of anger amidst the flat calm. Well, seeing as you managed to acquire one of the few transponder snails in the world with a direct line to we, the 5 Elder Stars, I suppose you may very well consider your message as having been received. Mr. 5 and Miss Valentine, along with several of their crewmates, promptly fainted, whereas Jin had to scramble to simultaneously catch and insensate Ipis before she could hit the deck and whack Miss Goldenweek on the back as she inhaled her rice cracker whole and started choking on it. Bartolomeo's smile, meanwhile, dropped into an expression of utmost horror that indicated that he was only a few seconds away from voiding his bowels. However, said expression remained in place for only 5 seconds before his grin returned, more bestial than human now. Well, while I still have your attention, he growled. Do your fucking worst. The transponder snail narrowed its eyes and leaned forward in turn. Admiral Icanu and 5 battleships will be with you shortly to do just that. Bartolomeo opened his mouth to say something else. Whoa shit. When a wave of pure presence suddenly swept over the deck. The barrier man only just managed to stay conscious and catch himself on the crate he was leaning over as the wave struck him like a sledgehammer. The rest of his crew, however, wasn't even remotely so lucky. Rather, about half of them collapsed on the spot with foam bubbling from their mouths. Not even the snail from which the wave originated was spared, and the connection was cut as it too sank into blissful unconsciousness. Bartolomeo took a few minutes to regain his senses, upon which he turned towards the only other person on the ship who was not out cold. I think we got their attention, he said in an attempt at bravado. No fucking shit. So, what are we going to do now, Captain? Jin whispered harshly. He had no idea what that was. But neither Krieg, nor Straw Hat, nor anything that he had experienced since he swore his loyalty to Bartolomeo had been remotely close to that level of intimidation. It was the final confirmation to him that he was insane if he was opposing anyone capable of doing that through a freaking transponder snail call. Now, Bartolomeo asked before adopting an ear-to-ear shark-tooth grin. Now we run. Jin swallowed heavily before nodding firmly. I never thought I'd say this about retreating, but that's what I was hoping you'd say. With that, he blew out a sharp whistle and swung his arm in order to garner his conscious crewmate's attention. All right, everyone hop to it. Drop the sails and get US moving now. It was slow going. Many of those on board were clearly in no hurry to wake up, and only the elapsed time in sailing managed to counterbalance that enough that they had enough people up and working to sail the cannibal. The fear of what was coming was a mixed motivator. Some of the crew were spurred on to avoid it, while others were too overwhelmed to stay conscious. Eventually, however, the moment that they were waiting for Reed, absolutely dreading, arrived. All at once, the wind ceased moving them forward, and the tide ceased swaying beneath them. So, Captain, Miss Goldenweek grit out nervously as she stared over the edge of the cannibal at the unnaturally placid waters they were floating in. I'll admit that the calm belt is probably the safest place in the world to hide from a small army after our hides.
Expensive products.
They may be able to somehow slip through with their ships, but that won't keep the Sea Kings from seeing them when they
the
surface
milk,
to get us.
and the orange juice.
But there's one thing that I and all of us for that matter want to know. She snapped a fearful look at her captain. How do you expect us to survive here long enough for Sengoku to get a leash back on the mad dog? Ha ha ha. Bartolomeo threw his head back and roared with laughter as he crossed his arms and fingers. It's simple, brat. Hell, it's so simple, it's pure brilliance. Sea Kings are just like dinosaurs, right? And the thing about dinosaurs is that they won't go after anything that's not moving. So long as we don't start paddling or rocking the cannibal too much and keep quiet for a few days until this whole mess blows over, then we'll be in the free and clear. Genius, huh? For how tense the atmosphere became, they may as well have been experiencing the air deficiency that came from the White Sea. And how exactly do you figure that that will work when literally nobody else has ever done that? Valentine whispered incredulously. Because they're always in such a hurry to get out of the calm belt, of course. They never stick around long enough to try it. Silence reigned anew for a moment until he hesitantly raised a hand. Captain W., where exactly did you learn about Sea Kings having dynamic vision? Bartolomeo blinked at the whisper girl in confusion. It's an old sea legend that's been floating around docks of Logtown for years. Why do you ask? There was a moment of utter, horrified silence as the entirety of the crew stared at Bartolomeo with a variety of emotions. Then, the silence was broken by a pop. In a moment, the crew of the cannibal was at the ship's railing and staring at the waters of the calm belt. Specifically, they were staring at a spot a few meters away from their ship where a trail of lone bubbles was slowly drifting to the surface and popping. One after another. Captain, permission to speak freely. Mr. 5 asked in a voice that might have been calm had it not been an octave higher than usual. Bartolomeo swallowed heavily as a sheen of cold sweat started to shine on his brow. You know I don't give two shits whether you do or don't. Then, in that case. Yet another bubble pop. Ed. And suddenly the ocean erupted with the bubbles of surfacing Sea Kings. You complete and utter fucking moron. Oh, gold with anger wasn't usually an appropriate description for describing unholy wrath. In fact, some might even consider such a description to be utterly ridiculous. And if anyone in Marineford had failed to see the logic in that phrase before that day, they had it thoroughly hammered home very hard as their highest superior fumed in response to the numerous status reports coming to him. It was hard to tell how much of it was due to the situation and how much of it was due to the fact that it was still, to reiterate, the middle of the night. Admiral Icanu has departed with 5 battleships by order of the 5 Elder Stars to apprehend Black Bart Bartolomeo for attacking a Celestial Dragon vessel. Vice Admiral Mazambi reported grimly. Admirals Kazaru and Aokiji, however, remain at the ready. As ready as they ever are anyways, Sengoku grumbled darkly as he shuffled some papers about. Unfortunately, that's not the only crisis we have on our hands. The Emperor Red-Haired Shanks has somehow been goaded into a rampage, Vice Admiral Stainless added with a grimace. Most of our men on the other side of the red line capable of getting here in a timely manner are no longer capable. and unfortunately, those that were still available are now tied up in an entirely new fiasco. Vice Admiral Tsuru sighed wearily as she leaned on her cane. Apparently, the damn up-and-comer pretty boy Cavendish decided to refresh the world's memory of himself. Where does his bounty sit at? The Fleet Admiral growled. Tsuru shook her head with a sigh. I'm afraid that in truth, he himself isn't the issue, but rather the consequences of his actions. She gave her old friend a solemn look. He raided a tribute ship headed for Totland right as Big Mom got a craving for precisely what it was carrying. We suspect he might have contracted some form of clairvoyance to help him achieve her current reaction. Sengoku's shine amped up a few notches. Said reaction being full on rampage, and not only is Cavendish managing to keep ahead of her, but he seems to be headed for Wano of all places. Doflamingo and Jimbo are trying to intercept her, but I think that it would be prudent to also deploy Kuma just in case, as well as some of Vegapunk's prototypes. As for the rest of those damn dogs, Garp growled as he rubbed the bandage wrapped around his face. Mihawk is incommunicado as usual, Hancock is ignoring us as usual, and according to Moria's subordinates, he has Thriller Bark set on chasing that damn razor-toothed brat Drake and another big-shot rookie named Hawkins around the triangle, which they are somehow managing to navigate. So unless you're willing to spring Crocodile for round 2, I'm not. Then yeah, we're shit out of luck where the mutts are concerned. Garp shook his head with a grimace.
Ooh,
and that's not
soda
all.
went up.
Apparently Hawkins, Drake, and Barty aren't the only rookies active. Unless I miss my guess, the Straw Hats' actions have incited something of a pissing match amongst all of this generation's up-and-comers. Who's on first? Yeah, I got one, let me see. The perpetually grinning Vice Admiral Yamakaji grunted as he flipped through a report. Alright, here we are. Well, for starters, we have Jeremiah Cross's rival, Roar of the Seas Apu. He's leading the on-air pirates and some other crew to attack Task Force Cerberus for some ungodly reason. Commodore Blakely's fighting the good fight, sure, but last reports say that her ships were capsized, so he shrugged helplessly. Next up, we have the fire tank pirates led by Capone Gang Bijah, Vice Admiral Strawberry drawled. I'm afraid that there's no good way to put this, so I'll come right out with it. An hour ago, the fire tank pirates managed to successfully infiltrate and raid Fort Lumos. They got away with every buoy and every ingot held within. Sengoku's eye twitched furiously for a moment before he slowly leaned forward to dig his fingers into the much-abused edge of the conference table. Fort Lumos, he grit out, is the repository for all of the Navy's funding in paradise. You mean to say they made a clean getaway with a quarter of our liquid assets? Strawberry nodded his head solemnly, causing several of his comrades to hastily duck in order to avoid being brained. I'm afraid so, sir. Besides that, Vice Admiral Mamonga hummed indifferently as he took the time to polish his Josho Kuryu. Captain Kidd and his men are attempting to make a bloodbath out of Black Arm Island. Attempting being the operative word here, the instructors are putting up a hell of a fight. Though, he scowled grimly. Honestly, that's not that much of a good thing, seeing as how it's just making the conflict draw out even longer. And of course, to cap it all off, Vice Admiral Anagumo snarled around his cigar in disgust. I'm sure we're all quite aware of what Mad Monkey Rouge did on Kuka Island. The assembled officers all shuddered as one. What had happened on that island was just wrong. Their revulsion was then swept aside and replaced with existential terror when the room lit up like the new dawn. Is there any good news? Sengoku bit out viciously, sounding about 10 seconds away from trying to punch someone. And going by how the Vice Admirals were edging away from Garp, they all knew who his most likely target was. You other hero shed buckets of sweat as he furiously racked his brains before grinning desperately. Still no word on the glutton or the surgeon. No news is good news, right? Sengoku snorted heavily through his nose, his mouth opening for a blistering tirade, until the thonking of a cane garnered his attention. Calm down, Sengoku, Vice Admiral Tsuru prompted in a bored yet stern tone. Remember, none of us are as young as we used to be. The Buddha man clenched and unclenched his fists for a moment before
Okay, I
forcing
need
himself
the
to relax,
milk, I need
puffing
more
out a weary sigh that
coffee
was
and
filled with his
tea
tension.
and the
Yes,
pasta
Evening Solomon.
and...
Yes, no news is very much good news.
Okay.
Ah, F Fleet Admiral. W, we have an incoming D-distress call from G-76. Then Chief Petty Officer Helmepo poked an arm holding a tray carrying a transponder snail into the room. And suddenly all that tension was right back where it started. And it then proceeded to grow as a very cocky and very undistressed voice came through the connection. Oh, hello, Fleet Admiral Sengoku. A certain pink-haired pirate purred around the half-dozen Pocky sticks she was chowing down on. Jewelry Bonnie here, giving you my fondest of hellos, Tilda.
No!
The incandescently glowering gastropod snarled out viciously. You may not know this, but my patience has been systematically worn down to nothing over the past 2 hours. So unless you're calling to tell me that you are doing the right and smart thing and surrendering yourself to our authority, I suggest that you... Honestly, I could care less about what you have to suggest, you old fart, Bonnie interrupted with a cackle, spraying crumbs all over the snail in the process. I just wanted to call you to let you know that my men and I have she paused to snicker, spraying more crumbs, invited ourselves into good old G76 and are liberally helping ourselves to their larder. Oh, and another snicker, this time accompanied by a wave of her hand.
Bitch!
And more crumbs, naturally. Just so you know, we opened our doors to the island's public, so they're in here too eating the base's food, along with taking whatever isn't nailed down, and they're bringing in crowbars for whatever actually is. Oh. She snapped her fingers in faux realization, finally swallowing. And I saw a few guys in cloaks rummaging through these real important filing cabinets, just thought you'd want to know. Anyways. Bonnie stretched her arms above her head as she leaned back in her seat. I just wanted to call you up, let you know that we're having a little shindig here. So if you and your shiny brass boys want to come down here and share a few drinks, we're all ready in. Rather than the typical gay lick associated with hanging up a snail, the connection dropped in what sounded very much like a muffled explosion, which was then followed up by a gay lick, as well as Bonnie's practically hysterical cackling. Oh man, that was awesome. The glutton wheezed
That
ecstatically.
the milk
I wanted to tell the
is
golden bastard to fuck off for ye
this
ERs. Ha ha ha.
one.
The only way that could have been better, the only way would have been if that damn volcanic mud had been there too. Because then my year would be utterly made. I've got to save some of this grub for the straw hats. Because I owe them the mother of all gift baskets for giving me the inspiration to pull this off. Ha ha da. Yeah, whatever you
Okay,
say.
I need
you
to
damn
buy
bottomless pit.
cheese.
A youthful yet perpetually tired-looking man who
water,
was lounging in a
and
seat next to
milk.
Bonnie drawled, his hands moving in
No, I have
well-practiced
milk.
motions, though
So
touching
it's
nothing.
cheese
And just for the record,
and
because I think that rum I
water.
picked up from the base commander's office is starting to hit me, remind me why I agreed to this brief alliance again. Bonnie's cackling cut off as she sent a sidelong glance at her partner in crime before sinking back into her seat, a bone that she'd already picked clean finding itself crushed between her jaws. Because, she drawled, both of us needed some way to prove that the Straw Hats aren't the only contenders in the competition for Roger's throne. And I wanted to distract the Marines long enough that the Straw Hats aren't overwhelmed at a
Oh,
knives.
I need rice.
And I needed you and your crew's help to pull this little stunt off. Bonnie then
Coffee and
adopted a cocky
tea.
smirk as she drained the marrow from the splintered bone. Besides, Surgeon of Death, are you saying that you aren't having fun? Trafalgar didn't fight the smirk that came over his face as he rested his hands, contemplating his handiwork with slightly drunk awe. Absolutely not. It's been a long time since I played Jenga, so why would I turn down a friendly game? You first, by the way. Why, thank you very much, Bonnie purred as she gave the surgeon a mock bow. She then stood up and climbed one of the surgically assembled staircases surrounding a tower of precariously stacked and futilely struggling soldiers with mismatched bodies. Upon reaching her desired piece, she reeled her leg back, tenderized her, and whipped her foot into the Marine's skull, sending him rocketing out of his place and ricocheting off of the storage room's far wall, following which he flipped through the air and landed quite precariously on top of the pile. Bonnie pumped her fist with a cheer. Oh yeah, beat that beanpole. Law barely moved from where he was lounging as he grinned in reply,
Beanpole.
waving his sword through the air like a conductor's baton as he slowly pushed another of the Marines out of the pile and floated him up to the top. Even as he worked, the usually stoic pirate smirk grew to match Bonnie's own grin. I'll have to thank the Straw Hats when we meet in person, he silently reflected. They might be a bunch of juvenile nuthouses even by pirate standards, but I sure as hell can't deny that I haven't had this much fun in years. Oh, incredible, isn't it, Funk Freed? Spandam crooned to his elephant sore, his finger hovering dangerously close to the trigger mechanism that would herald the demise of a nice lobby. One press of a button, and a whole island disappears. The director of CP9 snickered as he held the golden transponder snail in the palm of his hand, watching the reactions of the prisoners chained to the wall of the room. Honestly, it was hard to tell what was giving him a bigger rush as he toyed with the snail, the sheer power floating just inches below his fingertips, or the expression of deliciously agonizing terror Nico Robin wore whenever he brought the snail out to begin with, much less whenever he threatened to actually activate it. Sadly for him, Spandam's fun came to an end when one of CP9's newest Devil Fruit users entered the room with controlled haste. Spandam looked up, surprised but not startled, as a grim-faced Cuckoo stalked over to him, an ordinary if awake and glowering transponder snail on a tray in his hands. Chief, sorry to barge in like this, but to get to the point, your snail is off the hook again and we've received an urgent call from Marineford. The Straw Hats have crossed into an unprecedented level of insanity. Spandam responded with an expression of pure incredulity. Yeah, I already knew about that. I got a report about Straw Hat attacking earlier. He only managed to take down 5 guards, what of? 5. Are you out of your mind, you pathetic rat? Jaya. Spandam leapt out of his seat in terror when the transponder snail Cuckoo was carrying suddenly roared and flashed gold. The assassin's grip on the tray was firm, but sweat was glistening on his hands, clearly betraying his tense nerves. Well, that in a way that his superior was desperately flailing to catch the impassive and truly golden snail he'd flung into the air in his terror. Thankfully enough, Spandam managed to grab the golden snail without touching the doomsday button on top of its shell. After sighing in relief and stowing the snail safely in his jacket, the director promptly snapped into a shaky salute. FF Fleet Admiral Sengoku, sir? He yelped in an equally panicked and respectful tone. WW, what are you calling us F for? I already sent you my report over an hour ago.
Alright.
While we unfortunately
Water
lost the blueprints for the
and
Pluton, he took a second to shoot a murderous glare at Cuddy Flam,
And
who responded by snapping his teeth and growling. We still managed to
juice.
capture Nico Robin, so the mission went off without a hitch. Without a. Sengoku started to bellow before cutting himself with a sidelong
water,
glance.
cheese.
He then sighed out a puff of infuriated breath as he lost his golden sheen, though much of his prior fury remained. Without a hitch. Damn it,
apple
Spandam.
juice.
Do you have a brick between your ears?
And this
Haven't you gotten
one.
any reports from the main island? Haven't you been listening to the SBS like I'm sure the whole world is doing right at this instant? Spandam hedged uneasily as he glanced at the drowsy, half-awake snail on his desk. F Fleet Admiral, sir? Cuckoo hedged uncomfortably as he mentally kicked himself for speaking up. Chief Spandam put the Tower of Justice on lockdown shortly after we returned with Nico Robin, as a security precaution. The drawbridge is raised and there are no communications in or out as a result, so if there are any ongoing situations on the island, all actions are being run through Judge Baskerville. There was a moment of silence before Sengoku sighed angrily. I suppose I can't fault you for that, he grumbled to himself. Handam and Cuckoo promptly sighed in relief. Though the assassin was swift to free one of his hands and move it through the air in a precise series of motions, I want to raise. Handam rolled his eye with a scowl as he signed back. The monkey prunes on the roof at midnight. Cuckoo's eyebrows shot up to the brim of his hat in a mix of shock and incredulity. Handam then frowned as he glanced down at his hands in confusion. Wait a minute, he muttered. You don't have even a second, Director Spandam. Sengoku barked. And that still doesn't account for the SBS. Eep. Handam flinched back in terror before shooting a look at his desk. I don't know what you're talking about, Fleet Admiral. Everyone in the Tower of Justice has a transponder snail, and nobody has reported so much as a ring of the SBS.
Whatever.
But that's... Sengoku started to yell before cutting off into a snarl. Damn it, of all the times for that loudmouth son of a bitch to figure out how to use the damn thing's interdiction field, Jeremiah Cross has been preventing the SBS from being broadcast to any snails near him. He's been on the air for the past 2 hours. Spandam froze, his mouth slightly open and snot starting to slide out of his nose as the implications hit him like a sledgehammer upside the head. However, even as Cuddy Flam started to cackle and Nico, Robin groaned in exasperated despair, the director of CP9 was swift to rally in an attempt to salvage what little if any dignity he still had remaining. Please, Fleet Admiral, he pleaded desperately. Even if it is the Straw Hats, T, there's still just a one pirate crew. T, the last message I received about Straw Hats said that H, he'd only managed to take out 5 of our men. H, how much damage could they have possibly caused in measly 2 hours?
You
Kaku
could have
paled in
gave
horror
me
as the
10
snail
bucks.
he was holding started to
Why
shine,
you give me
and
a
the number of veins
50?
started bulging in a very unhealthy manner. Fleet Admiral, before you proceed to rip my superior a new one executive permission to speak freely, make it fast. Thank you, sir. And with that, Koku gave his commander a flat look. You had to say it, you absolute fucking idiot. Spandam sputtered indignantly. You complete and utter failure of a human being. Up until Sengoku started bellowing loudly enough to cause the window panes to vibrate.
Dude, are you gonna
Koku
make
wisely set the snail down and backed
cheesy
away to what he
toast?
judged to be a safe distance. How much damage could they have caused in 2
grilled
hours?
cheese?
To start,
Give
Jeremiah
me
Cross averted
give
Ormo
me
and
a
Kashi
grilled
and had them break down the
cheese,
gatehouse.
please.
The Straw Hats and the small army of allies they brought with them, 60 in all, then proceeded to run roughshod over the regular soldiers. As for the elites that thrice damned snail-leashed the watchdogs, Baskerville's been cut down, and the jurymen aren't even slowing them down. Pandem's mind managed to peg onto at least one aspect of the rant. Wait, Basker. Why you mean? They're in the damn courthouse. Sengoku barked. And if all of that isn't enough, the entire shitshow has been broadcast on the damned SBS. Not only are we looking every bit like the incompetent fools that Cross described us as, he's inspired all 10 of the other big-shot rookies in Paradise to follow the Straw Hats' lead. Phantom looked like nothing so much as a goldfish that had been ripped out of the water and left on the pier. In summary, this is the single most humiliating moment in the history of the Navy and world government put together since Roger's damned execution. You incompetent moron. Sengoku huffed and snarled viciously for a moment before puffing out an irritated breath. Oh, but don't just take
Thanks
my
for
word
the
for it.
exact
If you don't
change,
believe me, try looking out your damn window. I'm certain that you'll be able to see the smoke from the island burning beneath your feet from there. Shocked into motion by the sudden spike in volume, the chief of CP9 scrambled to the window of his office, where he pressed his face to the glass and just stared. Stared at the rampant fires blazing across the island. Stared at the utter swath of destruction carved through the center of a nice lobby.
Hey,
And most
Key,
important
what's
of all, he stared
up?
at the
How
roof
you
of the
doing?
courthouse so far below. That's Jebra, Spandam breathed numbly. And Bluno. Let me be clear, Spandam, Sengoku growled behind the leather-faced man, his voice having undergone an unsettling shift from berserk to far too calm. This is already nothing short of a disaster. So, rather than a warning or orders, I'm presenting you with an ultimatum. If the SBS is still running and confirming that the Straw Hats are currently in Anai's lobby at the first light of dawn, I will be setting sail for the Judicial Island myself along with every Marine that I can muster. Let me be clear, Director Spandam. If the situation is not under control by the time I arrive, there will be consequences. The room suddenly pulsed with a wave of presence, and it took every last one of Spandam's mental faculties to keep from voiding his bowels. Don't disappoint me further. The connection dropped, and Spandam collapsed to his knees as he desperately clutched the sill of his window. His mental gears slowly began grinding again, processing the nightmarish amount of information he had just heard. Okay, so the Straw Hats were advancing at an alarming rate. But surely they wouldn't be able to get past CP9. He called to mind that his entire goal was to end the so-called Great Pirate Era. In the end, no amount of bad publicity would be able to cause a permanent mark on him, so long as he was the one responsible for bringing the last key to the ancient weapons left in existence under the control of the world government. All he needed to do was order CP9 to subdue the Straw Hats and escort Nico Robin safely to the gates of justice. Yes, once the demon was on her way to Marineford, his future was secure. Lulled into a semblance of calm with his reasoning, Spandam clawed his way back to his feet, turned back towards his subordinate, and opened his mouth to give his orders. Ooh, Spandam. Said orders died when Kaku and Spandam both froze as the unhooked transponder snail on Spandam's desk suddenly adopted a sickeningly familiar leer and started speaking in an even more familiar voice. Shit, Koku summarized weakly. Cross. Robin gasped out. With all due respect, Robin. Cross interrupted, directing a flat stare her way. Cram it. You've had your say, this is ours. And as for you, Snail turned its attention back to Spandam. I'm just curious, why are you acting so surprised, Spandam? I mean, shouldn't you have seen this coming? Cross bared his teeth in a vicious parody of a smile. After all, you stole a demon from a pack of devils. Did you honestly think that we wouldn't bring hell itself to storm the very gates of heaven to get her back? Why you? Pandem bit out indignantly. Allow me to demonstrate. Cross continued before adopting a scowl. Attention, all mortar teams. He barked, not in his voice, but rather in Spandam's. The genuine article blinked in confusion. What the? Aim all cannons at the predetermined target immediately. Spandam ordered. On my mark, fire. Blood drained from Spandam's face as he connected the dots. You did, he whispered numbly as he slowly turned on his heel to stare out the window in horror. His pallor quintupled when he caught sight of well over a dozen mortar shells rocketing straight at him. You want to know the best part of this little scheme? Cross stated as if he was discussing what he'd had for lunch. I didn't even need your voice to set it up. I just had to make myself sound like the most worthless, arrogant, self-entitled piece of primordial ooze on the face of the planet. And your men just ate. It. Up. How crazy is that, eh? Hannah didn't have remotely close to enough presence of mind to react to the insult. In fact, despite the incoming flight of death, he found himself
Giving
unable
your
to do more than
OJ
stare in
again,
horror, his
Mr.
metal
Jones.
gears utterly locked up. Oh, for Pete's sake. Up until Kaku grabbed the back of his collar, tossed him farther back into his office. Tempest kick, and lashed his leg out at the window, sending a wave of razor-sharp wind barreling out of the office's window and slamming into the shells in mid-air. Kaboom! Which naturally caused them to explode, and a resulting shockwave blew out the office's wall. Koku guarded his face for a second with a wince as shrapnel bounced off of him before shooting a scowl at the grinning snail on Spandam's desk. You do realize that your comrades were in here too, correct? And you do realize that I knew that there was no chance in hell of Spandam not having a Cypher Paul operative guarding him at all times, right? Cross shot back tauntingly. Anyway, we're almost to the top of the courthouse, and Luffy should be done neutering him out any second now. See you soon.
Oh, there's no more
Cross's
cheese.
smile widened demonically. Long neck. The connection shut off just as the blood drained from Kaku's face. How the hell? I haven't even known for more than an hour. Known what? Califa asked the shaded arrest of Cypher Pole.
What's up?
9 shaved into the decimated
How you
room.
doing?
Koku shot a panicked look at his fellow agent, at which point his terror suddenly intensified. Cross just called me long neck. Ah, and you. Be bubbly. Califa instantly paled as well, the implications hitting her like a sledgehammer. But he. How? I don't know, Lucci interrupted his fellow agents, his voice as
Not
firm as steel and his
much.
expression
Just
10 times
here,
harder. And I don't
running my
care. Either way,
stove.
it won't matter once he and all of his crewmates are dead, and unless you two shape
Listening
up right
to a
now, you will be
fanfic.
joining them. Is that clear? Koku and Califa stared at him in naked terror for an instant before straightening their stances and nodding firmly.
How
Yes,
you doing
Lucci, they
today?
Good.
Or tonight?
Now, Lucci turned a predatory glare at the gaping hole in the wall. Where are they? Hem. Lucci blinked and spared a glance at the pigeon on his shoulder, who was cocking his head in contemplation. Check. Well now, Hattori nodded definitively. It would appear that they have approached close enough for us to be within range of the snail. Unless I miss my guess, perhaps he is performing this feat subconsciously. Right. Koku slapped his hand to his forehead. Sorry, forgot in all the excitement. They're in the courthouse. It's how Cross knew when to order the mortar teams to fire on us for maximum effect. Apparently they've managed to fight their way past the entire island. Lucci shot Koku a warning glare before marching over to the room's impromptu balcony and glancing downwards. He then froze the blood of his comrades in their veins when he bared his teeth in a snarl. What? He bit out furiously. The blue hell does Jibber think he's doing? Well, he's a carnivorous zone as well, just without as much discipline as you. I would assume he let his bloodlust for fighting Straw Hat get the better of him, Hattori mused. I think I could get used to you being able to talk, Lucci stated neutrally as the rest of CP9 joined him in observing the fight below. Well, Califa stated frigidly as she adjusted her glasses. There's only one way to describe this particular stunt. Sexual harassment, chapapa. Fukuro deadpan.
The
Suicidal stupidity. Right.
person reading
He's
it's
fighting
it's
you, bro.
a
That's nothing to worry
AI.
about. Spandam sputtered with growing
It's a
confidence.
TTS.
Apparently not hearing Califa as he turned his head.
The good
Unchain the
one.
prisoners and bring
I
them
have
over
a
here.
word limit,
I want them to observe the exact
and then I'll
moment when
switch
Straw
to
Hat's
like
life
the
is ended.
shitty one
The
later.
agents of CP9 exchanged uneasy glances, but a subtle jerk of Lucci's head prompted Kimadori to march back into the office and drag Frankie and Robin back with him by their chains. You do realize that you are in way over your head, right, Spanda? Frankie sneered at the chief of CP9. Said smile was then wiped off when Kimadori backhanded him with his fist, prompting him to snap his jaws at the
Well, I
pink-haired
am
man.
just hearing your
Silence, the
fanfic.
disrespectful curse Spandam ordered in a
being
tone
read.
that
I
from anyone
did
else
say
would have been more
that.
than halfway menacing. Let this serve
With
as a
the
reminder
olive
to you of the
oil
true might of the
went
world
down.
government. No matter how strong you think Straw Hat may be, an Eye's lobby has stood as a stronghold for centuries. And I'll be damned if a rubber-brained rookie annihilates the reputation in a single night. Frankie snarled at Kimadori for a second longer before smirking menacingly. Well, you're right about that at least. A flag of fear drove into Spandam's mind for a moment as he pictured what would happen if, by some
weird.
miracle, Straw Hat actually won.
It glitched.
The next instant, however, he banished the thought from his mind as he looked over the edge and called down to the wolf Zoan. Finish him, Jebra. Show that worthless pirate the true might of Cypher Paul 9. Oh? Jebra's ear flicked slightly as he felt a sudden spike in his ever-present urge to rip Spandam's head from his shoulders. Under normal circumstances, the Zone user's enhanced senses would have most likely picked up Spandam's words of encouragement with ease. Normal circumstances, however, did not entail Jebra's skull ringing like a church bell on Sunday morning on account of repeated blows to the head that a thoroughly infuriated ballistic rubber man continued to inflict. His iron body Kenpo had offered him some relief, but Straw Hat's bottomless well of willpower had rendered that obsolete 2 minutes in. And to make matters even worse, the so-called Gear 2nd technique that he was employing had not only amplified his speed to the point where he was shaving like he'd been doing it all his life, but it had also amplified his strength tenfold to the point where he was all but straight up ignoring the agent's iron body. Damn it all, I wanted to fight with Straw Hat Luffy, not a freaking massacre like this, he thought. Panting and sweating like a dog as he kept his head on a swivel, trying and failing to keep an accurate beat on the Sonic Pirate. But indeed, a massacre was what the conflict boiled down to. For every bit that Jebra was fast, Luffy was faster. For every bit that he was tough, the pirate was tougher. And for every bit that he was strong, well, a flash of movement to the side granted Jebra enough for warning to spin on his heels and cross his arms defensively as he tensed every muscle of his body. Jet rifle. Gog. Jibber coughed up a mouthful of blood as the grinding blow blasted him off his feet and slammed him into one of the few parapets that had not yet been demolished. No comment. The wolf Zoan peeled himself out of his dent in the stone with a pained groan, stumbling forward slightly in a desperate effort to regain his balance. No. He spat viciously. I refuse, I refuse. Without warning, the wolf surged forward, charging at Luffy on all fours as he howled at the top of his lungs. I refuse to lose to someone like you. He slipped both of his claws down at Luffy's exact position. Wolf hunt high-speed scratch. Luffy glared bloody murder at the wolf as the attack came down on him up until the last moment, when he suddenly disappeared and the claws passed through the space he'd occupied moments before without resistance. Jibber stumbled as he tried to regain his balance and glanced around in concussion-enhanced confusion. W-wah. Where? Gum gum. Jibber's head snapped up just in time to catch sight of Luffy spinning on an axis in midair. Dead home run. Crack! And then his vision was filled with nothing but pipe, followed up in short order by stone. Jibber groaned into the stonework of the much-abused roof as he tried to kickstart his mind back into at least a semblance of working condition. When he finally got his mind back in something resembling order, he slowly worked his claws beneath his torso and pushed himself into a kneeling position, allowing him to cough up yet another mouthful of blood, along with more than a few fragments of broken teeth. Damn it, Jibber wheezed painfully as he forced his head up. You little fucky. The wolf man's words died in his muzzle as he managed to catch sight of Luffy. It was the eyes that did it. Oh sure, his concussion was influencing him a bit, but from that day forward Jabra would forevermore swear up and down that it was the eyes that did the trick. It was Straw Hat Luffy's eyes that hit him the hardest. It was his stance, his gaze, however real or imagined. It was how every inch of Jibber knew in that instant, just knew that there wasn't one person standing where Luffy was standing, but two. One was Straw Hat Luffy, sure, but the other, the strength that emanated despite its unassuming form, the impassive expression. The eyes that had stared at him every time, the only times he had ever been defeated. Eyes that made him feel tiny, no matter how loud he howled or how large he grew. Eyes filled with nothing but cold, bloody darkness where the soul was supposed to be. Don't look at me like that. Jibber breathed softly at first before baring his fangs as his rage started to cloud his mind.
Cereal,
don't look at me like that.
Milk,
don't look at me like I'm worthless. Don't look at me like I'm nothing. Don't look at me like you can beat me. Don't look at me like that. Jibber clawed his way to his paws, foam dribbling from his hackles as he snarled at the pirate. Don't you dare look at me like him. Luffy responded with a flat look before glancing to the side. My crewmates are going to be here soon, he stated firmly. And if they get here while you're still standing, then you'll hurt them. He pinned the wolfman with a glare. So I'm going to finish you off now. That statement was the final straw. That statement snapped what few vestiges of sanity Jibber had left in his mind. In an instant, his pupils shrank down to pinpricks. He threw his head back, and he roared not howled, roared his defiance to the heavens. Luffy knelt down in preparation, every fiber of his being taut and ready to move at the drop of a hat. With what few vestiges of mind he had left, Jibber dug deep into his subconscious, the deepest, darkest pits of his mind, and called forth a technique that was years in the making. A technique that he'd painstakingly developed alone and in secret, all for the express purpose of defeating one person. But if it meant that he wouldn't lose in this instance, then he was more than willing to use it right here, right now. Fang howling over Fang. Jibber roared out as he shot towards his opponent like a cannonball,
howling over Fang.
spinning into a virtual tornado of fangs and claws that was guaranteed to shred anything and everything that it touched for even a moment. He struck the parapet like a hurricane, grinding the stone into a fine powder and methodically eradicating it into less than absolutely nothing. But for all the damage he managed to cause, he still didn't hit Luffy. The technique soon spun itself out into nothing, leaving Jibber panting on his hands and knees as he fought to stay conscious in the face of his rapidly dwindling reserves of adrenaline. But, that's how. He wheezed breathlessly, snapping his head around in a vain effort to catch sight of Luffy, wherever he was, before ultimately freezing on the pipe that Straw Hat Luffy had been carrying when he'd arrived. Pipe that Straw Hat Luffy had been using to beat him senseless with throughout their fight. The pipe that was now planted in the very edge of the rooftop, with two hands firmly gripping it and arms stretching off too. Jibber pushed himself onto his shaky legs and staggered over to the pipe, following the arms back to their source. His gut dropped into the abyss below the island as he tried and failed to follow the arms down Main Street, where they disappeared beyond his field of vision, although that particular limit might have been yet another side effect of getting his skull deaded by a sonic pipe. You've got to be kidding me, the wolf whimpered. The universe then proceeded to prove to him that what he was experiencing was all too real. Goom goom. Another effect of his concussion was that Jibber's mind skipped a beat for a second.
That's so funny.
As such, while he did manage to cross his arms defensively once again, Ballista, Iron GRK, he was just a second too slow to properly reinforce his person when a pair of rocket-fast sandals slammed into his solar plexus. For the longest 2 seconds of his life, Jibber felt as though he were being split in half, his body bending around the point of impact. And then time resumed. Physics, cruel mistress that she is, took hold, and all of Luffy's kinetic energy slammed into him at once. Thus, while Luffy came to a dead halt, Jibber was launched backwards and at an angle at only a little under Luffy's own prior speed. Given his arc and velocity, the Wolfman would have most likely left a rather impressive dent in the center of the Gates of Justice, were it not for an obstacle standing directly in his flight path. Oh. For the second time that day, Spandam found himself face to face with certain death flying directly towards him, and too paralyzed with shock and horror to move enough to save his own life. Rolling his eyes, Lucci yanked the man out of the ballistic wolf missile's flight path, saving him by a matter of inches. Slam! Nothing, however, could save Jibber from impacting with the far wall of Spandam's office. ZD9 agents Winston guarded their faces with their arms in response to the impact, and then proceeded to gape in horror as they lowered them. Jibber was impressed into the far wall, cracks spreading out from beneath his spread-eagled body. However, as awe-inspiring as the display was, what truly garnered the agent's attention was the exact state of Jibber's body. His very human body. Frankie broke the silence with a roaring cackle. Haha, wow, you were right, Spanda. That was impressive. Seriously, I didn't know it was even possible to literally kick a bitch out of a zone like that.
I'm sorry.
You learn something new every day. Ha ha
The
ha.
story's going
He was
fine.
promptly
He's
cut off
reading
by
a
Califa,
One Piece
absent-mindedly
fanfic that I
elbowing him in the
really
side.
like.
Any further punishment was held off as Gibber slowly peeled off the wall before falling
Alright.
onto his
Oh,
feet.
I forgot the
He
cereal.
was swaying like a drunk sailor at 2 in the morning, and his still open eyes were staring at nothing, but he was on his feet. The wolfman slowly staggered forward, only just barely managing to keep his feet beneath himself.
I'm going pretty
Thankfully for
good.
him,
I'm making
his
a
journey
pretty
was
good
made short by the aim of his voyage
profit.
stepping up before him. Gibber slowly looked up and blearily looked Lucci in the eye. He held his gaze for a moment before slowly raising his finger and jabbing it in his chest. "Don't you dare," he rasped.
I can
"Look
get
at me,
this.
like," and with that, his eyes rolled up in his head and he collapsed to the ground. He moaned, the only sign that he was even alive. Lucci stared
I'll
at
do
Gibber's
that next
insensate
time
form
once
with
I
total
get a
stoic
little bit more
impassivity,
money.
as though his ally were nothing more than an insect. The rest of the agents were nowhere near as subdued. Few Kurokoku whispered numbly. "Gibber's power ranking. You're certain?" The rotund man swallowed heavily. "Actually, I used weak old power rankings for him, me and Kumadori. W were all a little bit stronger than what I said earlier." Califa slowly raised a trembling hand to try and hold her glasses steady. "Just what the hell did we get ourselves
How
into?"
you day been?
She asked no one in particular.
How you doing?
"Oi."
What
Cipher
you up
Paul
to?
no. 9 as a whole stiffened as an increasingly familiar voice filled the room. Just for the record, Cross drawled in an uncharacteristically grim tone.
Got a little
If the mood were a little lighter, I'd probably make a
Oh
warrior's
my
reference.
god, no.
As it is, though, it would just be in bad taste. Present yourselves, CP9. It's time we finish what you started. Hattori cocked an eyebrow at his owner. "Cocky little bastard, isn't he?" Lucci hissed as he spun on his heel and marched to the balcony. "They've earned it."
The
The
olive
leopard man stalked
oil.
past his dumpster comrades, but only made it a few feet before pausing. He then
Olive
cast a
oil
scowl over his shoulder.
fluids.
"Move." The rest of Cypher Pole 9 promptly shaved to his side, while Spandam unwillingly inched his way over to stare at the enemies below. And indeed, far below CP9, upon the rooftop of the courthouse of the World Government's Judicial Island. Every last parapet on the side of the building facing the Tower of Justice that remained intact now had a pair of pirates standing on it, staring up at them with grim-faced determination. By the SBS, their own observations and reports from every Marine who had previously encountered the crew. Every one of them was as recognizable to those who stared down at them as if they had already met them in person. Boss, the monstrous Kung Fu Dugong, Flipper resting on the rope dart coiled at his side and smoke chuffing like a sea train from his scowling maw, and Nefertari Vivi, twin-sized linked by chains in her hands and riding an armored supersonic duck, who still managed to look menacing despite his slightly comical form. A Yeti-like man that could only be Tony Chopper in his full human form. The pink hat and blue nose doing nothing to diminish the effect of his glower, and Sanji, sharp-dressed and blonde-haired. His eyes lowered for the moment as he lit a cigarette. Usopp, their long-nosed sniper, holding a slingshot that more resembled a polearm and staring at his crew's adversaries with only the slightest trace of fear in his eyes and the slightest shake in his knees. And the monstrous Monkey D. Luffy, whose form would be much less intimidating if they hadn't just seen him treat the third strongest of their number like a punching bag, with he himself looking none the worse for wear. Roronoa Zoro, green hair, 3 katanas at his waist and a scowl of determination on his face, and Nami,
Oh, my
orange
stock
hair
right
with
there.
an odd-looking
Bird.
blue staff in one hand, clouds spouting from it and surrounding her like
Oh, I
Laura,
forgot the
and what looked to be a
cereal.
folded scooter on her back. Conus the gunner, whose outfit made her look less like an angel and more like, well, like them, with more guns visible on her person than someone her size had any right to carry, and the Cloud Fox suit perched on her shoulder. And at the leftmost part of the rooftop from their perspective stood Jeremy Cross, the bazooka dog lasso snarling at his feet, and the snail sound bite on his shoulder. Of all the pirates on the roof, they were the only ones who were smiling in any way or form, but there was no humor in those looks. The hostages, the chief, and the 5 assassins all looked down at them, Robin's eyes beginning to overflow with tears. For what felt like an eternity, they only stared, the emotions between them palpable. Then, Yoya Kimadori mused contemplatively. "Do you think if I asked, Cross would give me an autograph?" There was a moment of silence as the assassins contemplated the statement. Chopper Kimadori, mind leaning down a bit. But of course. Why? So that I can do this. Solid beast. How? Yoi, oi. Oh. 6 months. It was kind of hell, I don't even know what it was. Awe-inspiring. Funny. Humbling. Any of them or none. Doesn't matter. 6 months ago, I was a normal guy. 6 months ago, I was your average everyday college student. Just another face in the crowd whose only real claim to fame was being a mildly successful
Fucking
fanfiction writer on a
weirdo.
few
Why you
sites
give
and
me
forums.
$100 for 30
6
bucks?
months ago, I was nobody. And then in an instant and in 6 months alike, all of that changed. Over the course of the past 6 months, I'd sailed up the side of a mountain. Over the past 6 months, I'd ridden a Tyrannosaurus Rex. I'd charged headfirst into a war zone. I defied the world. I'd sailed into the sky. I'd spit in the face of God himself. And now, I thought to myself as I glanced down into the roaring abyss below, now, I was at the edge of a nice lobby. Now I was standing side by side with my friends in one of the most iconic moments in the history of anime and manga. Now, I was ready to face the world head-on, to die facing the world, all for the sake of a friend. We've come a long way, huh, little
my
buddy?
eggs.
I whispered as I stared up at the Tower of Justice. Don't go getting all sappy on me yet, Soundbite chuckled. After all, we've still got so far to go. Damn straight, I nodded in agreement. Ruby in. We both promptly snapped our jaws shut when Luffy shouted up at our wayward crewmate, relying on his own volume and entirely unaided by Soundbite. If you really want to die for US. Our captain continued. Then say his to US here and now. Even from this distance, it was a simple task to catch sight of Robin hesitating where she stood, to see just how tightly she was biting her lip in a desperate attempt to stay silent. It was easy to see just how furiously she was fighting against herself. It was hard to know which part of her would win the fight. See, P9, but the world would never know. On account of Spandam cutting in at that moment in what was clearly a desperate attempt to regain control of the situation. As director of this unit, you have my full permission to take those pirates down, eliminate them utterly, but do it from here. From the Tower of Justice. After all, it's not like they have any way to get over here, he continued, reassuring himself as much as he was gloating. It must have worked, seeing as he grinned maniacally and stepped onto the balustrade a moment later.
Oh,
Wahaha.
shit.
Stupid pirates.
Thank you for the
No matter how strong you are,
contribution,
you'll never be able to win.
I mean, your purchases.
See, P9 still stands strong to stop you. The gates of justice are beyond any human's power to move. And most of all, he reached into his coat and produced that thing causing my hair to stand on end. I have the authority to use this golden transponder snail to unleash a buster call. A golden transponder snail. Soundbite yelped, shrinking back in terror. Soundbite. I glanced at him in confusion. What's wrong? The baby snail shivered as he half hid in his shell. I seriously hope you weren't banking on me blocking the
Yes,
cross.
I
Golden
do.
transponder
I
snails.
do not like
They're
the color.
practically
It looks
Blumen.
really
Creatures of
gross.
selective breeding whose connections with their silver counterparts are renowned for being sacrosanct. Their broadcast is utterly inviolable. That's right, Spandam gloated menacingly. Once I push this button, nothing you or anyone does will be able to stop the results. Just like it was 20 years ago, I will unleash the power that wiped out your homeland, Nico Robin. He spun around to laugh in Robin's face. Just like before,
I don't know,
when
looks
O'Hara was
gross.
utterly
I don't
wiped
like
from the
the
maps of
color.
the world. One snail caused
I
want to
change the
destruction.
flooring
Thomas
too,
breathed in horror.
but I'm
Quick
not
about
sure what
package sizes, but
color
this
I
doesn't seem like
should
the
do
right
it
time. Sue mused.
for.
That shitty leather face tormenting Robin to one like that, Sanji growled. You damn, Robin bit out painfully, fighting even harder against herself. Wahaha. Oh, look at that reaction. Spandam cackled malevolently. I could feel my blood freeze as the bastard's finger hovered above the button of the snail. Maybe I should do it now. Maybe I should call the full force of the world government. Do you even know what will happen if you press the button? Robin demanded desperately. Of course I do, Spandam purred. The chances of all of these pirates making it out of here alive will drop to
there's some more
zero.
pasta.
What? Did you have something else in mind? It's not that simple.
I need to get a
She
ugly
screamed
stalker
furiously.
boy.
Oh, Enum asked with a leer. You giving me orders? You're being rather cocky, aren't you? Boss all but bit through his cigar as he glared up at the enemy. Cross, when you talked about putting the hurt on this bastard, you were lowballing. What can I say? I ground out. Reality tends to exceed expectations. You said that O'Hara disappeared from the map, Robin stated desperately, sounding on the edge of tears.
I haven't
Can you see he was on
customized
the
the
map?
store name
No,
yet.
the only way you
I'm
can be so cruel is if you look at the world like that, like it was a
of
statistic. You can't use it. Not that
making
she
my
trailed off in a
store
fleeting
like
whisper as
a
she collapsed to her
nice-
knees. The ghost
like
of her past
a
obviously
nice
weighing her
green
down.
color,
One glance at Soundbite was all I needed to get my message across. Robin,
like
I
a
muttered.
soft
I
green
heard her
color.
pain gasp, and slowly but surely she climbed to her feet and looked down at me. I winced miserably at seeing her so broken, but nevertheless, I hovered my hand over my bag.
A
I could
soft
tell from
green
the way she
color
jerked that she'd
with,
processed the
I think
implication.
there's
If
marble
you're so sure that you're going to
flooring.
die anyway, I breathed desperately. Then at least die like a
I
straw
think that
hat.
would look really
At
nice.
least go down kicking and screaming the whole way, and give them nothing short of hell. Robin's hesitation slowly faded even as she warred with herself, until finally she looked at Spandam with a heart-wrenching combination of despair and determination. Let me tell you of the Buster Call. Let me tell you what the world government is capable of. And so, at long last, she told the story of O'Hara. Spandam made no attempt to stop her, apparently relishing in her agony as she recited the tale. See, P9, meanwhile, stood by impassively. Though if I wasn't hallucinating, some of them seemed visibly uncomfortable with what they were hearing.
All of
As
you
for
can
Frankie,
shop
he was
in the
clearly on the
dark.
verge of bawling his eyes out. But the sheer horror of what he heard was keeping that decidedly moment-killing reaction at bay. That, or Soundbite, had had the good sense to mute him. And it was clear that CP9 either hadn't found out about my little trick with the SBS, or they simply chose not to remind Spandam of it. But I knew, and so did Robin, and so did the rest of the crew, that the entire world was now
Ooh,
learning the
I'm
truth that the
running
world
low
government
on
had
a
tried
lot
so
of
hard to
stuff.
cover up. It was only the look on her face that kept me from grinning maliciously. I could only imagine how everyone outside of Anai's lobby was reacting. Oh, Mayor Iceberg, the ship is ready. Aw. The galley let employee stop moments after entering his foreman's office, dumbstruck by
Where
the scene
anybody
he
else
was met
comes
with.
in.
Understandable, since it wasn't every
I
day
made
that he
a
walked
good
in on the strongest man, and all
profit.
Water
How
7
much
leaning
did I
against his
make?
desk as he watched a small fire burn in his wastebasket. Of all places. Sir, what's going on? Iceberg glanced
bad.
at his employee with a vague amount of interest. You raw damn, I always forget your name.
Almost made
Everyone
$2
always
grand.
does, sir. I'm practically invisible. But I'm fine with everyone always calling me
Okay,
that one
so
Colts guy.
eggs and apple
You know,
juice
because
syrup.
of, he gestured at the blue horseshoe emblazoned on his baseball cap. Ah, right. Iceberg sighed as he looked back at the fire. Do you know why I allowed Galley-Lot and Water 7 as a whole to accept contracts from the world government? Oh, the Colts guy hesitated in confusion. I can't say that I do, sir. Iceberg hung his head with a sigh. Because back when I was still an apprentice, I experienced what could and would happen if Water 7 was an enemy of the world government when I witnessed Tom's fate. I established myself as a reasonable authority figure and aimed to endear our company and island to the world government, to ensure that we were never hurt again. His eyes and grip tightened grimly. But in recent days, I've been forced to reconsider that course of action. If the world government had no qualms about unleashing something like that on this island for the sake of their own agenda, if we're no safer as their allies, then I'm making a decision that I should have made upon the first SBS broadcast. The Colts guy took a second to process what he was hearing before sucking in a breath as he snapped his eyes to the wastebasket. More specifically to the papers burning within. Sir, he started uneasily. Are those documents what I think they are? Iceberg smirked slightly in response before pushing off from his desk and walking past the shipwright. I'm heading out. While I'm gone, spread the word to the rest of the companies on the island that as of this moment, all contracts between Galley-Lite and the world government have been rendered null and void, and that henceforth we will refuse service to all those affiliated with them, without exceptions. Do I make myself clear? The shipwright stared numbly at his boss for a second before grinning ecstatically and snapping out a salute. Sir, yes sir. That's what I like to hear. Oh, from the moment that Cross had announced who their mystery crewmate was, the Royal Throne Room's inhabitants had every aspect of their attention locked onto the SBS. King Cobra, Egaram, Chukka, Pel Koza, and the Supersonic Duck Squadron were all at a loss to why Luffy and his crew would have allowed Crocodile's right-hand woman on the same crew as Vivian Karu. It was only the events in the Royal Tomb that made Cobra restrain his comrades from calling into the SBS and demanding to know what they were thinking. They now had the answer to that question. All of those in the room knew Cross' secret, and so they knew that he had already known all of what Nico Robin was saying at the time she joined them. Cobra eventually broke the silence with a quiet statement. I believe that we have no reason to hold a grudge against Nico Robin, nor to protest or stay with the Straw Hat Pirates. The king cast a firm look around the room. Do any of you disagree? Everyone to a man and Duck shook their heads solemnly. Oh, half of the ships that half of them I-5 were half dead trying to clean were halfway done, while the other half were halfway back into the water. Half of the soldiers had stopped their work as the half-trembling voice of one of their half-allies.
No, they deserve to shop in the dark. Electricity expensive!
Smoker and Hina were steadily burning down their cancer sticks in grim silence, while lingering doubts in any of the minds of their gathered men withered away to nothing. For the longest time,
yeah,
none
I'm
of the
thinking
Marines
of
dared
going
even
like a
move.
really soft
Then a blue-haired
green
swordswoman leapt down from the scaffolding she'd been standing on and started stalking towards
and
the
marble
coastline,
flooring.
steadily stripping off her uniform as she went.
And if it has like
just where do
better
you think you're
lights,
going,
I'm
Officer
gonna add
Tashigi?
them because these
Smoker
lights
asked as
kind
he
of
noticed.
suck.
I'm going to swim out, find the biggest sea king I can possibly locate, and kill it dead, sir, she replied in a tone that was all but dead, save for the frigid fury it sported. Smoker and Hina glanced at one another in surprise before Hina slowly shifted her sunglasses onto her forehead. And, why are you looking to do that, Lieutenant? She asked hesitantly. Because I'm pissed at what I'm hearing, ma'am, Tashigi responded without pause. However, she then stopped dead a few feet later. I'm sorry, ma'am, that was a lie. That's not why I'm pissed. An uncomfortable silence hung in the air until Smoker cleared his throat. Care to elaborate, Lieutenant? Tashigi's hand slowly started to strangle Shigur's hilt. If I'd heard what I'm hearing now 4 months ago, I would have been horrified. I would have vomited or not believed it or something. I would have felt something. But now, after all I've learned, after all I've seen, hearing this, I'm not disgusted anymore. I don't have it in me to be disgusted anymore. I can't vomit in disgust, I can't reel in horror. Tashigi jerked her head to the side so that she could throw a scathing glare over her shoulder. I'm apoplectic because I can't feel anything else. The world government has successfully jaded me. Not even pirates or criminals, but the world government, who I swore to protect and serve with my life. And that Tashigi snapped her gaze forward again, but it was easy to see the spots of moisture starting to appear on the sand at her feet. That enrages me to the point where I need to physically hurt something, or else I think that I am going to literally lose my mind. Smoker was silent for a moment before nodding his head. Do what you feel you need to, Lieutenant. Tashigi bared her Shigur's blade in response. Thank you, sir. And with that, she strode into the surf and was soon out of sight. Hina blinked after her and dumbstruck off for a moment before coughing heavily. She then glanced to the side, where Smoker was literally fuming as he burned his cigars down to ashes. And just why are you so furious? She asked before pausing and jerking her head at the transponder snail between them. Besides the obvious reason, I mean. Smoker snarled viciously as he all but chewed clean through his cigars. She just disobeyed my orders, he ground out. Hina is confused. Do you mean the boat cleaning because Hina thinks that can be? The day she became my subordinate, Smoker interrupted with a low growl. She did something I'd never seen anyone do before. I'd had countless Marines join my division before her, but when she joined, she was the first to stand there, wearing her uniform and carrying everything she owned in the world on her back, and greet me with a smile. The Commodore took his cigars out of his mouth and huffed out more smoke than humanly possible. When I saw that smile, I gave her an order, one I'd hoped she would follow into her dying days. Hina eyed her comrade warily, and that order was... Smoker growled furiously as he ground his cigars down in the sand. To never let herself become like me. Oh, thought that she had gotten more exercise in the last 3 months than she had for any considerable amount of time in the decade prior to then was whispering in the corner of the old woman's mind as she purposefully strode through the halls of Marineford. However, the vast majority of her mind was focused on pure, incensed fury aimed at one very specific person, and as she finally broke out of her shaving, she found herself back in the devastated remains of the Fleet Admiral's office. Nobody present aside from the Fleet Admiral himself. Even Gruffy had relocated for his own good. The only other living being present was the snoozing transponder snail. Sengoku had ceased listening to the SBS after his call to disband him for the sake of his blood pressure, which was reaching dangerously high levels. Of course, the same could not be said for anyone else in Marineford, which brings us to the following interrogation. What is the meaning of this? Vice Admiral Tsuru demanded coldly. Rest assured I'll be on the warships once they're ready to depart, Sengoku said dismissively, not looking up from the paperwork he was filling out. I'm just taking the time to request that the materials for rebuilding the tower are stronger. Honestly, if today is any indication. Crack. The Fleet Admiral reeled back in shock when his desk was suddenly split by a cane ramming into its top. I couldn't be made to give a damn about your blasted paperwork at gunpoint, Sengoku, Tsuru spat acridly. No, what I'm asking, demanding, is that you tell me why. What are you? Sengoku started in confusion. Yes, BS, Sengoku. You should have kept listening. Nico Robin is currently in the middle of blowing the whistle on what happened 20 years ago for the entire world to hear. And though I'm seriously wondering why that subhuman degenerate Spandam hasn't been fired yet, there's one much more glaring question that I expect you to answer. Why the hell has that rabid mug you call an admiral managed to get away with exterminating an entire island's worth of civilians,
I thought I got
as well as several dozen innocent Marines, with absolutely no blowback for the last 20 years? Tsuru roared. And don't. She snapped a finger up when Sengoku started to open his mouth. You dare give me the tripe about archaeologists on board, because we both know that that is nothing short of a load of utter bilge. Sengoku tensed furiously as he processed her words. What did you just say? Tsuru scowled viciously as she withdrew a binder from her coat and waved it at him. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? I must say, the entire report on Operation Tabula Rasa is quite the read. You raided my personal quarters. Sengoku roared as he shot to his feet.
I got the stuff in the fridge done.
The whole truth, the honest truth, not that
I
redaction
need
mockery
oil,
of the
olive
call
oil.
report. Oh, sure, for years I've accepted Buster Call reports being redacted to the point of illegibility as a matter of fact. But now I'm fully aware that that was a gross mistake. She punctuated the point by slamming the binder on the desk. What the hell were you thinking, Sengoku? I've always known that Akanu has been a liability on the best of days. Several of our best are, but genocide. Before today, I'd never have thought there to be a grain of truth to cross words, but now... Enough. Tsuru choked fearfully, shrinking back as she was simultaneously assaulted by a wave of pure presence and blinded by a blast of golden light. I never expected such insolence from you of all people. But as it's come to this, allow me to make our positions clear, Sengoku steamed murderously. Over the years, I've had to make countless decisions of questionable morality, because as you have so clearly failed to notice, I am single-handedly leading the war against this era of piracy. Nobody aside from Commander-in-Chief Kong has any idea of the burden of this position. Not you, not the rest of the Navy, and certainly not the low-life, reckless, loudmouth pirate. Sengoku stabbed his finger at the snoozing snail on his desk. Fleet Admiral then leaned forward and loomed menacingly over his subordinate. I might despise him and his methods, but the fact remains that we need soldiers like Sakazuki to maintain any hope of keeping the world in balance and keeping the Marines stronger than the ever-increasing population of pirates. Justice cannot always be as simple as we wish it would be. If 100 must die in order to save 1,000, then I will kill those 100 myself, and I expect you to do the same without hesitation. As your superior officer, I expect nothing less than complete compliance and acceptance of what I deem best, and you will refrain from sharing your opinion unless I expressly request it. Do I make myself clear, Vice Admiral Tsuru? Tsuru cowered slightly beneath her superior's wrath for another moment. Then, slowly and with defiance beginning to emanate from her entire form, she straightened, and Aokiji himself could not have had a more frigid expression or tone than she did as she replied. Crystal, Fleet Admiral Sengoku. With that, the Fleet Admiral reverted to his normal state, an expression more of frustration than anything else on his face as he resumed his paperwork. Is there anything further? He snapped dismissively. Tsuru twitched visibly for a moment before snapping her head to the side with a snort. Oh, simply that I'm far from the only Marine on base that's agitated from recent revelations. Sengoku interrupted his writing by smashing his fist into his desk with a snarl. I could not be made to care about that at the moment, Vice Admiral, he bit out with a glare. Not 1 second later, the tower was shaken by a tremor. Sengoku twitched viciously again. I swear that I am going to rip Garps. Oh, that wasn't Garp, Tsuru corrected as she casually inspected her fingernails. Unless I miss my guess. Those were the other dissenters. That drew a look of honest surprise from the enlightened human. Wah! Honorless bastard! Wah! Crash! Sengoku spun around in his seat and stared out of where the wall to his office had been in confusion as a titanic roar of outrage shook the whole of Marineford. This confusion was only compounded when he caught sight of Vice Admiral John Giant being tackled on one of the raiding warships in Marineford's Bay by Vice Admiral Ron's of all people, followed by the helmeted giant proceeding to beat the ever-living shit out of his fellow Titan. And as if that weren't bad enough, the two were then followed by 15 other giant Marines following them, all brawling either with themselves or with a number of Vice Admirals who were trying to subdue them and all throwing the lovingly assembled warships into nothing short of utter disarray. What the hell is going on? Sengoku demanded in shock. In case you were unaware, Tsuru drawled as she continued to inspect her nails. Ex-Vice Admiral Jedward D. Saul was particularly popular with his fellow giants, and those that were once pirates were already agitated from learning what we told their old allies Oimo and Kashi. They might have managed to hold their tongues, had John Giant not decided to share his opinion on how Saul earned his fate due to being a traitor. That got him placed on a rather short list. She gave Sengoku a chilling look. Put simply, they formed a lynch mob. They want John Giant dead for his disrespect. They want Aokiji dead for freezing Saul. They want Akanu dead for bombarding him. They want you dead for being in charge. Basically, they want blood. You have got to be kidding me. Sengoku moaned as dragged a hand down his face. Hardly. And for the record this, she jerked her head at the brawl in the bay, is only the tip of the iceberg. All of the giants stationed on Marineford are either in the throes of mutiny or trying to suppress it, though the latter are, quite frankly, in the vast minority. Honestly, it's hard to say what has them more infuriated, that we killed Saul or that we've been hunting his ward, Nico Robin, for the past 20 years. In case you've forgotten, even those giants who weren't born and raised on Elbaf are rather big on honor. Her tone could not have been drier if Crocodile was holding her vocal cords. Sengoku was twitching enough that he may as well have been having a seizure. Tsuru waited for a moment more before speaking again, albeit grudgingly. Your orders, sir.
Can I?
Fleet Admiral glanced at her for a moment before turning a murderous glare on the brawl below. Inform Admiral Aokiji that he will not be joining us at Anais. Rather, he will be occupied with suppressing this mutiny effective immediately. Tsuru cocked an eyebrow in a decidedly unimpressed manner. So basically, your solution to solving a problem that began with a frozen giant is with more frozen giants. Yes, because that will go over splendidly. Sengoku shot
Hi,
an
Spidey
unreadable look at
boy,
his
what's
subordinate.
up?
You have your orders, Vice Admiral. Suru scowled as she snapped him a supremely stiff salute. At once,
Thanks
Fleet
for the
Admiral.
follow, I
And with that,
appreciate
Suru
it.
spun on her heel and marched out of the office, slamming what little of the door was
I
left
think
behind
that's
her.
the next thing we're
Unnoticed
gonna
by either of
get.
the
I
Marines,
need the
one of the last
storage.
surviving
That'll be
pictures
my
on the
next
office's
purchase.
wall was jarred loose by the impact and smashed to the ground. The picture held within depicted a trio of young Marines actually, not even proper Marines, but graduates celebrating and smiling joyously as they toasted their mugs with one another. A crack ran through the glass of the frame, cleanly separating the female of the trio from the afro-touting friend whose shoulders she'd slung her arm around.
How to
Oh,
release my
do you
hair.
understand now? Robin pleaded desperately as she finished. If you use a buster call, everything on this island will be destroyed. She stared down at us tearfully, including all of you. Her words were addressed as much to Spandam and CP9 as they were to us. Going by the despair in her voice, it was clear that she was pleading for us to run. She was begging for us to leave her to the wolves and save ourselves so that we wouldn't die in vain trying to save it, so that she wouldn't have to see us die. I ground my teeth furiously in an effort to keep silent, an entirely new kind of fire raging within my gut. We, however, officially did not give a fuck. To read about it and even see the cataclysm Robin had depicted was one thing. But to hear it, to hear the suffering and sorrow in the voice of one of my closest friends, of one of the strongest women, I knew to hear her tell of the death of an island, of a way of life. We officially could not walk away from this fight even if we'd wanted to with every fiber of our bodies, hearts, and souls. And I sure as hell wasn't the only one feeling this way either. That son of a bitch. Soundbite breathed numbly. There is no hell deep enough or vile enough in existence, Lassie growled through raised hackles.
I feel
An
like
entire island goddess whispered to herself, her expression
didn't
positively
fix
thunderous. In an instant,
this bullshit.
I was sorely mistaken. Boss grimaced ferociously as he ashed his cigar. She doesn't owe me a damn thing. She hasn't owed anyone anything for a long time. Vivi's face was motionless as she stared up at the tower, but the blood dripping from where she was gripping the chains of her weapons said all that needed to be said. So, this is the legacy my ancestors created, she whispered to herself before scowling in disgust. This is the legacy of the world.
Damn, girl.
That's nonsense.
Getting your
Spandam
apple juice.
proclaimed. There's no way that the Marines would kill their own men. We wouldn't take casualties from our allies. Asu cocked her head to the side uneasily. Wasn't he about to? His father, I growled venomously, was the one who called down that damn attack in the first place. Suffice to say that his perspective is somewhat compromised. Sue shivered heavily as she realized that, for the second time in her
Holy
life,
shit.
she was in the presence of a madman with the
Thank
ability and desire to kill us all at the
you.
drop of a hat. Noted. Meanwhile, Robin continued
Customer
on,
of the
obviously
month,
not caring about
baby
hearing
girl.
what Spandam was saying. Do you understand my fear now? She pleaded desperately. Do you understand why I'm still trying to save you? The world government is an absolute
Is
force of
the
authority
apple
and
juice
destruction.
price
No matter
right?
how strong you all may be, you can't fight against the
Yeah,
world
it
and all of
is.
its darkness. If it goes on like this someday, she shook her head miserably. Someday they will overwhelm you. Someday they'll crush you and you'll all die for my sake. And the idea of that happening, of the ones I've been searching for all of my life wasting their lives for my sake, nothing terrifies me more. So if I am destined to die anyway, then at least let me die here of my own volition, so that you all may live. Robin's words hit us like an iron rod, briefly managing to quell our rage. Robin, Nami softly breathed. Vivi shook her head with a grimace. Damn it, she's making it so hard to stay mad at her. She's been calling this for how long? Haru whispered. Too long, my friend, Boss grimly answered. Too long by half. Of course, just as soon as our rage was dampened down. Wahaha! Yes, that makes perfect sense. It was just as suddenly restoked to unparalleled levels. I'm going to eat him, Lassus stated in an unnaturally steady voice. I have never once in my existence eaten human flesh, but thankfully I'm certain that he doesn't even remotely count. Get in line, soundbite rumbled with honest-to-goodness murder in his voice. What a sorry case, Spandam gloated in Robin's face, even though she didn't so much as acknowledge him. Even if you make friends, all you can do is drag them through the muck with you. Wahaha! It's so perfect. Permission to shoot him. Usopp and Kanis snarled in unison as they grabbed their weapons. Give him a second, I warned them as I raised my hand placatingly, only barely managing to suppress the murder in my own voice. What? Kanis began to protest before Luffy silenced any objections. Do what Cross says, you guys, our captain stated in probably the calmest voice I'd ever heard from him. It was actually kind of scary. Behold, you scum of the seas! Spandam cackled as he jabbed his finger upwards, drawing our attention to an object whose form was very well known in both this world and mine, though for extremely different reasons. That flag bears the emblem of the world government. It signifies the united strength of over 170 nations across the world, across the 4 seas and the Grand Line. The symbol represents the world itself. Venom flung his arm out. Do you realize now the scale you're fighting on? Do you realize how pathetic your existence is? The power of this woman's enemy. Silence reigned supreme as every last one of us observed the flag, as we took in its form and everything that it implied. Until finally. Yeah, Luffy nodded solemnly. I understand exactly who Robin's enemy is. Luffy then lowered his head and glanced to his left, and then to his right. Everyone. I felt an unparalleled thrill
shit.
run through me as I snapped an ecstatic grin to Luffy.
Thought I had more.
Yes, Captain. I whispered reverently. Was he going to do it? Did he actually mean what I think he meant? Luffy looked back up at the flag without a trace of emotion. Shoot down that flag. Hallelujah. Fuck the hell yes. I cackled ecstatically as I grabbed Lasso and took a knee, aiming him straight at the symbol of our enemy. Can you blast? Yes, sir. Lasso barked with a salute before going full gun and clicking loudly. This is gonna be E till the PA till the C. Soundbite sang rapturously. Burn bazooka, Conus announced frigidly, swinging her own cannon off her back and aiming it upwards. Give him hell, girlfriend.
Wait.
She yelped as she glared up at the tower from Conus' shoulders. I've stood on the sidelines until now. Never again. Nami snarled as she spun her climb attack at her side, coalescing her clouds into a writhing, lightning-drowned tail. Lightning bolt tempo, three-sword
Let's
style.
go.
Zoro intoned
Thank
around
you
water
kindly,
Jumanji as he
sir.
tied his bandana around his head before drawing his secondary and tertiary blades and drawing them back into position. 108 caliber Phoenix. Behold the awesome power of the giant slingshot Kabuto. Usopp bellowed confidently as he drew said slingshot's pouch back. Special attack, Firebird Star. My first use of this technique, and it couldn't be a
wrong one.
momentous occasion. Sanji snarled as he hefted his leg up and drew it back. You'll pay 1,000 years of hell for every hair you heard on dear Robinson's head. The first course in your punishment, or a hash of your tempest kick. Aperitif. A moment such as this, Chopper rumbled as he withdrew a single vial of very mobile and highly volatile-looking liquid from his backpack. Deserves something special for it. Tremble before the might of my latest creation. Cherry Blossom Blast Blizzard. Vivi glanced at her cutters hesitantly for a moment before shooting a hopeful look at Karu. Any ideas? I'll go team. Karu answered, half-heartedly pumping a wing. Damn. Well, at least you know how I feel, right, boss? Half-shell style, boss intoned as he slammed his rope dart into the roof and withdrew it with a goodly chunk of stone attached to the end, which he then began spinning into a blur.
Business is
Flying
booming,
fish fastball
bruh.
Special. Oh, come on. Spandam blinked incoherently for a moment before his jaw dropped and every drop of blood escaped his face. Wait, what are you? No, no, don't even. Too late. There was no signal, no words, nothing. None were needed. As one we moved, rock bottom blaze of glory. And as one, we unloaded our attacks on the symbol of Robin's enemy. The symbol of our enemy. On that day, we the Straw Hat Pirates did not burn the flag of the world government. Rather, we disintegrated it completely and utterly. Oh, never before had the sum volume in the Revolutionary Central Command in Baltigo risen above a few scarce decibels at a time. Then again, never before had someone stuck it to the world government in such an utterly glorious manner that had Dragon out and out cackling. Shishi. Monkey D. Dragon led his comrades in revolution and
Oh
cheering.
my god,
Excellent,
not
Luffy.
the viewers.
Show the world your will. Show the world your determination. Prove your autonomy. Shishi. That's my brother, damn ye. Chief of Staff saw Baruch from atop the table he was perched on as he jabbed his finger at the only active snail in the room. That's my crazier than hell baby brother. Give him hell, Luffy. Give him hell. Cheers for the most earth-shaking crew since Roger. Gual laughed as she toasted a bottle of liquor she'd pulled from somewhere. To Monkey D. Luffy. To Jeremiah Cross, bastard that he is. To Nico Robin. To the Straw Hat Pirates. Kanpei. The facility bellowed as one. Oh, in complete and utter contrast, the throne room of Amazon Lily was silent as the grave. It was of almost every last person in the room touching the floor. Did that just happen? Marigold whispered in complete and utter disbelief. But they, how? Wah! Sandra Sonia stammered, her brain misfiring furiously. Through it all, Boa Hancock's newly acquired apprentice looked around in confusion. Oh, Elder Nyan. Marguerite leaned down to whisper to the old woman.
Oh shit.
I take it that what we just heard was significant. Elder Nyan swallowed heavily before shooting a wide-eyed look at the young woman. Try, she croaked. Utterly unprecedented. Nobody in recorded history has dared commit the act that these pirates just did. Only one thing's for certain now. Seneca. The elder was cut off by a loud snort rippling through the throne room, causing everyone to look around in confusion for the source. Seneca, at least until a second snort rang out, confirming the source of the world.
Why you give me a handy for 12 bucks?
Who was doubled over and shaking.
You could have given me a 20. You fucking weirdo.
Exchanged uneasy glances until Nyan jerked her head at the Empress, prompting the other two Gorgons in the room to speak up. Assist. Marigold started warily. Arsandra Sonia slowly inched forward. Are you all right? Sa-ha-ha. The room froze once anew, only this time it was on account of Boa Hancock flinging her head back and shrieking with laughter. Laughing and laughing harder and louder than any on Amazon Lily had ever heard her laugh before. Hell, it was the first time half the room's occupants had ever heard her laugh, full stop. After about a minute of the laughing, Nyan managed to gather the wits she needed to swallow heavily. Only one thing's for certain now, she repeated in a numb whisper.
No.
Nothing will ever be the same. If anything, those words only made Hancock howl louder. Oh, in twin flashes of underdeveloped but still passable shave, Master Chief Petty Officer Kobe and Chief Petty Officer Helmeppo appeared in the ruins of Fleet Admiral Sengoku's office, standing at attention. Fleet Admiral Sengoku, sir? Kobe led Helmeppo in snapping up salutes.
God damn it, I need
We are
to
here to
get
inform
my
you that the
hair
Vanguard
up.
is ready to move out. They only await you. President Scobie wound down uncomfortably, the steam leaving him as he processed the scene before him. Specifically, Fleet Admiral Sengoku staring at the transponder snail on his desk with rapidly mounting fury. Oh, what the hell did those idiots do now? Helmeppo whimpered miserably. I don't know, but we need to. Kobe started to order.
I need to
He was
get
too late,
my
however, as
hair
Sengoku
up.
erupted in a blaze of golden fury a second later.
'Cause
I'm going to crush those
it's
straw hats
fucking
like
long and
JRK.
it's
Without warning,
blowing
the
in
blaze
the
ended as
wind
abruptly
because
as
of
it
the
started,
thingy,
leaving
and
Sengoku standing in his normal form
Ugh.
with a pained expression on his face, and a hand clamped over his chest. A second later, he collapsed to the floor without so much as a sound.
Alright,
Kilo
good
ranked rookie
night.
escaped his
Sweet
prone body in
dreams.
shock.
I hope you have a
Did-
good day at work
Did that just
tomorrow.
happen? Kobe whispered incredulously. His words snapped sense back into Helmeppo, prompting him to dash out of the office, bellowing at the top of his lungs. Medic. Oh, that, I breathed euphorically as I stood back up and settled Lasso in his harness so that he could rest. Was even better than I could have ever, possibly, imagined. Damn Skippy. Sound, bite, breathe in awe. You're all going to die. Hannum roared incredulously. You can't seriously challenge the entire world and expect to win. Yeah, bring it to Luan. Luffy bellowed back, causing Spandam to recoil with a scream of fear. He then went on to glare at Robin herself, looking her dead in the eye.
Peanut butter, oil,
Ruby
and salt.
I still haven't heard you say it yet. He clenched his eyes shut as he roared. Tell me that you want to live. That snapped me back to the present, and I promptly snapped in Soundbite's face before pointing at our shell-shocked crewmate. Come on, Robin, come on. I whispered desperately into her ears, pumping as much emotion into my voice as I could. You just saw it, didn't you? You just saw the beast bleed. I know it's huge, and I know that it's scary. I shook my head desperately as I flung my arm out. But damn it, if it bleeds, then we can kill it. Together. Just don't be an idiot, damn it. I snapped my eyes to my shoulder in shock. Soundbite. The baby snail was panting heavily as it grit its teeth. That is not dead which can eternal lie, he recited fervently. And with strange eons even death may die. Lovecraft Robin. You know this. It takes time, longer than any of our lifetimes, but the fact is that the wheel will always turn. Nothing is forever. They are not forever. You know this to be a fact more so than anyone. You have to fight, damn it.
I know it's
Fight.
coming up.
Slowly but surely, Robin's tears fell. She bit her lip as she sobbed, as her
This part
emotions
always
raged within
makes
her.
me tear up.
And then suddenly, out of the blue, a staticky sound filled the air. I snapped a look at Soundbite, and only the glazed, unfocused look in his eyes and vacant expression made me refrain from glaring at him. Still, I opened my mouth to ask what was going on. The sea's a vast place. When my blood suddenly froze in my veins, I didn't even have to strain my ears to hear Robin's gasp, to hear everyone start in shock, and the voice that suddenly filled the air. The sea's a vast place, the voice repeated, rumbling with utterly impossible emotions. So I guarantee, someday you'll find friends who won't ever leave you. No matter who you are, ain't no one born into this world to be alone. Impossible, I breathed in awe. Even by the standards of this world, that's. Your friends are right here waiting for you, Robin. All you gotta do is get back to them. Share your life with them, and never let them go. The very second the last word shook the world, Soundbite slumped forwards, wheezing in exhaustion. So loud, so strong, what kind of voice was that? He groaned. Robin was frozen in shock, tears flowing freely from her eyes, still locked onto Soundbite. And credit to my captain, he knew an opportunity when it smacked him in the face. Robin! Luffy roared again. Say you want to live. And just like that, at long last, the dam broke and Robin broke down with it into full and joyful sobbing. It was messy, loud, and ugly. And it was also absolutely beautiful in its complete and undeniable sincerity. Yes, she screamed back. I want to live. I shot my fists into the air and roared joyously in response, a sentiment that every last one of my crewmates echoed in some way or another. Take me with you. Robin jerked forwards, her voice hoarse as she screamed at the top of her lungs. Take me away from here. You fuckers just lost. I cackled triumphantly as I jabbed my finger at the cipher Paul and the world government as a whole. As if in response to it all, the massive drawbridge below us suddenly roared to life and started lowering, spanning the last possible barrier between her and us. That's my boys. Boss cackled as he pumped his fists in the air. With Frankie sobbed messily, his expression way less appealing than Robin's. You crazy guys. I love you all so damn muyuach. Finally, Nami nodded firmly with an impatient grin. Hang tight, Robin, Vivi whispered. We're coming. We're coming for her and for you son of a bitch. Sue called up as she jabbed her paw at Spandam. Spandam, of course, shrieked and reeled back in response. Don't come over here. Unfortunately, the universe chose that exact moment to actually listen to the bastard, as at that moment, twin explosions struck the sides of the drawbridge and caused it to freeze at an elevated angle halfway down. Boss froze in his pose, twitching incredulously for a moment before proceeding to shake his fists at the courthouse's towers. You incompetent brats. You had one job to do, damme. One. You better pray the Marines kill you first, or else I'll damn well make you wish they did. I winced sympathetically at my crewmate's plight before chuckling grimly as I crossed my arms behind my head. Well, that root's blown. Guess we're doing this the hard way. That got everyone leaning forward for a chance to stare at me in confusion. The hard way. They chorused incredulously. My grin was Luffy-worthy as I raised my voice. Ooh, yeah. Woot. The hard way. Soundbite became snow white as he slowly rotated his eye stalks downward. Oh, hell no. Going by how Lassie was suddenly scrambling on my back, he'd gotten the idea too. Piru ga goga. Pinky cackled in Kokora's voice as I dug him out of my jacket. Hope you kids are ready for the ride of your lives. This is the final voyage of the Rocket Man, eldest child of Tom's workers, and I intend to make it a good one. Nagagoga. Ooh, no, the smarter members of our crew all whispered in horrified realization. He's not serious. Sue shrank back in naked terror. Someone tell me that he's not serious. Even by my standards, this is totally insane. Boss shook his head in frantic denial. Ha ha ha! Frankie bellowed as he stamped his feet ecstatically. Here they come, Spanda. They're coming and you can't stop them. Spandam froze mid-panic and snapped a look filled with a whole cornucopia of emotions at the cyborg. Frankie, of course, noticed said look and leered malevolently in his tormentor's face. What are you gonna do, huh? Hit me. He jutted his chin out temptingly. Please do it, I'm begging you. Give me another reason to laugh in your ugly pan of face. That might have been a bit too far. You know those stories about adrenaline letting people lift cars? Well, in this case, it let a spandam lift a cyborg and fling him into the void. He's got the right idea. I crowed as I pointed at Frankie's falling form before sticking my arm out towards
No,
Luffy.
I don't
Come on,
have
Captain.
Discord.
Let's do it. Right.
My main Discord that I
catching
had
the rest of our very unwilling crewmates in his grasp.
for
His left tangled itself around
specifically
Boss,
for my
who wasn't
Twitch
able to free himself no matter
got
how hard he
fucked
struggled.
over.
While I caught his right and firmly wounded around my own arm.
It literally,
I
I don't
grinned
know
with a stare into the
why.
In the
It
words of the
something
great
happened
Turner,
that it just
over
got
the
taken
edge.
down. It
No,
got
no,
like
no.
suspended for
Soundbite
some
shrieked
reason.
desperately. Let's go. Luffy laughed as he jumped into the abyss. Over again.
Yeah, I can't
rolled back as
access
I
it
jumped
though.
along
It
with
got
him, helping him
suspended
drag our crewmates with us.
because I wanted to
Soundbite shrieked
join
around the mouthful of my jacket.
a
He bit into.
server,
You two are dead
but
if we live
something
through
was
this, you
wrong
hear
with
me.
the
Sue
link,
screamed as she clutched Connor's
and
jacket.
it got suspended. I
Get in
don't
line.
know
Cars squawked,
exactly
hanging
why
onto
it got
Luffy's arm for
suspended, but
dear
it got
life.
suspended.
The fall lasted for an eternity. Woo what? And ended in an instant as the rocket
Okay,
man
I
met us
need
halfway,
orange juice,
whiplashing us into its body and carrying us over the
cola,
void. As we flew
eggs.
towards the gates of the Tower of Justice, I could think of only one appropriate response. I laughed at the top of my lungs. Ready or not? Here. We. Come. An instant later, I received a slight damper to my joy in the form of us hitting a yard-thick wall of stone head on at what felt like 1,000,000 miles an hour. Still, in the long run, totally worth it. Zamiakin. A year. Not exact, no, but 12 months is 12 months. A full. Damn. Year. 1 year since V and I started this story. 1 year since Cross woke up on his little island in the middle of nowhere. 1 year since we started a story that should, by all rights, have died in its cradle. And look where we are now. Just look. There are just no words. It's been a long road. It's been worth it. And you better damn well believe that it's nowhere near finished. Patient and half a year since I was invited to take part in this masterpiece. It's an honor to be a part of something like this. Hornet and, sadly, since these assholes already took all the good news, I have to deliver the bad. Namely, that while we will strive to maintain our once every 2 weeks update schedule, do not expect a consistent time per day of updates. And don't be surprised if a chapter takes longer. TPO and Zom are back in school, and I'm now working a full-time job. As much as we'd like otherwise, real life shit takes precedence. Oh, and another reason. 5 days until the NFL season starts. Woo. Up, arrow top. Left arrow previous chapter. Next chapter right arrow. Edit bookmark. Comments 49.
Oh,
Cat Cuddler 1. 120 Lols. Mile 16. Juval. Eventu 190. Verse Book of Cactus. Esteriferous. Time Sulfi. Ovis. Bantan Karatsan. Clem of 12 Azro. Align Soli.
stop! Next chapter.
This bites. Zamiak. Chapter 43. Chapter 40. Blackest Secrets Revealed. A true god of noise is born. Zamiakin. I am writing this in the morning after the posting of Chapter 39, quite simply because I have no other choice but to. The sheer amount of praise we are receiving for Chapter 39 is nothing short of awe-inspiring. I can literally feel tears in my eyes as I read what everyone has to say. The sheer amount of love and support you are showing for our story, for us, is, I just don't think there are the words. They're just straight up
I
aren't.
can buy this.
So forgive me for using inadequate vocabulary, but thank you. Thank you from the very bottom of my heart. I wish I could say more, I really do. Patient and a thank you from me to all of you, both for the joy you've given my co-author and the support you've shown to me by proxy. I don't believe I ever had enough self-confidence to consider myself a good writer before I joined the Cross Brain. Now I can say it happily, after finding the way out of the depression that consumed my heart 13 years ago. This is the second best thing that's ever happened to me. Thanks to all of you. Every positive review and comment is reinforcement that I'm part of something good. Hornet and we would be remiss if we didn't finish this off by saying thank you to all of you who gave constructive criticism on the story. I'm good, but I can't catch every problem, and I can't think through every implication and consequence, and neither can Patient and Zomniac. That it's been almost always well thought out and accompanied by every sign that you like the story in spite of its flaws only helps.
Damn it.
You have made the story better by speaking up, and I'd especially like to make a shout out to Yogg. Your criticism is the most detailed of all, and I'll admit some of our plot points were cribbed entirely from your posts. Cross-Brainin. From we three to all of you who are fans of our work, from the bottom of our hearts, thank you. I don't know if it was a credit to half a year of hellish training or my own blood-boiling adrenaline that I managed to struggle out of the rubble that the rocket made out of the Tower of Justice's front. It was made particularly hard to tell considering that immediately before I broke out, I heard my captain let out a triumphant roar. And as I pushed the scattered, jagged stones off of me, well, you can guess by now how I reacted. BFF, ha-ha, woo. I cheered as I shot out of the wreckage and pumped my fist jubilantly. That was nothing short of utterly kick-ass. And fun. I half-dashed, half-staggered over to my captain and clapped a hand on his shoulder. Right, Luffy. The rubber man turned to look at me, and after a moment of his adrenaline and serious self clashing with his humorous sigh, he began laughing too. Shishishi.
Sugar,
Yeah, that was totally
peanut
awesome.
butter,
First we were. Yeah, and then everyone was like. I picked up eagerly. But then we hit it like. The wall was just. Exactly. Eesh, I vaguely heard Frankie muttering behind us. I think I owe Mazu an apology. I guess that folly, a duck's thing, or whatever isn't just a name for something dirty after all. Though now I wonder how the hell I'm gonna knock these two out of it. Oh, don't worry. Without warning, my headphones were suddenly yanked off of my neck, prompting me to twist around. My protest died in my throat when I caught sight of not only Nami holding my headphones, but the rest of our crewmates glowering behind her. I was a bit confused as to why they all had their fingers in their ears at least, until I noticed Soundbite's equally infuriated expression from where he was perched on our navigator's shoulder. I have an idea, Nami bit out acridly. She then directed a malevolent grin at my snail. Oh, Soundbite. Yes, my good friend. Soundbite sneered back. I paled in horror and quickly lurched at Nami, scrambling to wrench my earphones back. But she responded by casually holding me at bay with one hand and holding my headgear out of reach with the other. I know that you don't normally take orders from me, but I'd like to request a Gastra amp to 11. It would be my honor. I paled as the air suddenly vibrated with an electric whine. Don't suppose I could get away with an I'm sorry. I squeaked pitifully. The demonic glint in Nama's eyes said it all. Oh, Luffy whimpered as he and I both shrank back fearfully. And with that, Nami proceeded to suck in a deep, deep breath in. Oh, you think they're alright after that? Zambai wondered aloud, continuing to bash Marine after Agent with his bazooka. Its ammo exhausted, and its effectiveness reduced to that of a club. Raffi shrugged casually as she flipped her way over a German's chain and used his head as a springboard with which to spin through the air. Odds are that they'll get a little hurt one way or another. That's just the life we live, and probably more than a little angrier. They'll get angrier, she swiftly corrected when her fellow students shot her a trio of incredulous looks. But seriously, I don't think it'll be anything significant for them. After all, these that stole our comrade. She leered viciously, steamrolling them completely and utterly. Please. That's the predetermined outcome, no two ways about it. You pirates can't be serious. A world government agent who was hiding behind a nearby pillar sneered. You really think that they could have survived plowing into the Tower of Justice at a speed like? Suddenly, acting on a combination of reflex and pure animal instinct, Reffy, the other dugongs, Yokozuna, and the watchdogs that had made it to the courthouse all slapped their flippers or paws over their ears. The savvier members of the Frankie family and the Galila foreman had the sense to stall their fighting long enough to follow their example. And not a split second too soon.
Okay, I need
you
oil,
stupid, idiotic, moronic, inconsiderate numbskulls of brain-dead Nimrods nearly killed you us all. And you have the fucking audacity to laugh about it. I hope that when you died you get tenderized, chopped up, dried out, boiled, eaten alive and shat out before you cap it. You all off by ending up frozen in hell's basement and shattering. You 7 times damned adrenaline-huffing suicidal bastards. The unholy roar was loud enough that the whole of the Nye's lobby was thrown off balance. Or perhaps that was the island actually shaking. Hard to tell on account of how many were still shivering in terror. Mikey waited a second as he remained tensed up before glancing nervously in the direction of the tower. Nama's pissed, he whimpered. Raffi swallowed heavily as she tugged at the bandana covering her mouth. Leo, she mumbled. If I ever give you shit about you being our leader again, remind me about the moment you saved us from that. Leo nodded numbly in agreement. All right, with that little assault on our ears out of the way, where were we? Polly asked, forcing his eyes open out of the wince he'd adopted when the yelling started. The sight that met his eyes was nearly every Marine agent and German still struggling to recover, and the nearest Marine to him massaging his temples and looking at him through squinted eyes. Erg, any chance that we can take a quick break? He asked, regretting raising his voice immediately, judging by how his rubbing intensified. Oh yeah, now I remember. Sorry, but that's a no. Whack. The Marine had just enough time to blink in confusion before Polly slammed his fist into his face.
I'll be fine for
just
now.
Like that, the brawl was back on.
Oh.
Wow, that was really loud, Granny. Jimmy said as she removed her hands from her ears. Nagagagagaga. Kokoro cackled, taking a swig from her bottle. Ah, brings back memories of some of the boys' more harebrained stunts. The Straw Hats have a good disciplinarian to produce something like that. Mop, mop, mop. Kokoro glanced down at their pet rabbit, who was sprawled out on the ground, clutching his ears. Jimmy, be a dear and carry Gom for a bit, okay? The ice-fish mermaid said, before continuing down the sub-basement corridor they were in. We're almost there. The young girl nodded, scooped up her rabbit, and followed after her grandmother. Soon Kokoro came to a stop in front of a nondescript door, and gave it a hearty shove. It swung open, revealing a room filled with shelf upon shelf of alcohol. Bottles upon bottles of wine, sake, whiskey, and gin, all of it high quality.
I need to expand
Jackpot, Kokoro
again.
whispered rapturously. Oh, mop, 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 I mumbled blearily as I clutched at my ears. Were they bleeding? I think they were bleeding, or was that brain matter? My head shaking, Luffy slurred miserably as he lay on his back, his eyes spinning into spirals. I don't feel so good. Soundbite groaned, his tongue hanging out uselessly as he panted in agony. I outdid Numb his best, but I think that attack needs to be an absolute last resort. As much as that hurt, I like the results Zoro ground out as he stood over us. We're sorry, the rubber man and I moaned in sync. Don't let it happen again, Nami said with exponentially less venom. In fact, she looked positively lighthearted. But on the other hand, I feel like I should thank you for that. That was a few months' worth of repressed anger. Smash! I squeaked in nervousness as an Eisen fist suddenly shot at me, barely missing my crotch and instead striking the floor. And that's out of 8 years. Nami shrugged as she spun her staff and reeled the cloud back in, forcing it into submission with relative ease. I think that between this thing doing all the anger for me and turning that secretary into a lightning rod, I should be good for a long time. Anyway, Sue spoke up, patting over to look down at me. What are we going to do now? Taking down those assassins and torturing that polished mass of primordial ooze is all well and good. But are we going to do that before or after we save Robin? Chapapa came a somewhat strained voice from nearby. Allow me to answer that. Luffy and I promptly shot to our feet and Suzette back upon us as we all snapped our attention to an upper corner of the room, where Fukuro was digging a finger in whatever ears he had, his forewarning apparently having done him little good against Nama's blaring wrath. You know, I'm really happy that my only role in this whole mess is going to be stopping you from rescuing Nico, Robin. Because that probably means that you hate me a lot less than the chief and the ones who actually kidnapped her, Kapapa, he grumbled acridly. I took a second to suppress my desire to snort at his voice, because holy shit was it hilarious before re-upping my serious expression. Soundbite. This is not the time for playing around, Zoro snarled. This is my natural voice, chop off, Yukiro deadpanned. We're so sorry, chorused most of the crew, bowing their heads. Why do I feel like not all of you are apologizing for being rude? He muttered, rolling his eyes. Yeah, we're awkward like that, I said, waving the matter aside before stepping forward and addressing the rotund man. Close enough. Anyway, Fukuro correct. The gossip-loving silent owl. To his credit, the assassin didn't even blink. Tapapapa. You never fail to amaze and terrify Cross. I blinked in surprise at his nonchalance before recalling exactly what he was like in the story. Now that I thought about it, he was a pretty cool customer, wasn't he? He only lost his composure after going a few rounds with Frankie after all. So then maybe yep, and proud of it too. Anyway, again, I very casually crossed my arms behind my head. Seeing as you're a damn well-informed guy, I imagine that you already know that our modus operandi is that we never start a fight. Unless, of course, we're going up against someone who started it first. As you noted earlier, you had jack all to do with Robin's kidnapping, and currently you're only here at the behest of your subhuman director. As such, I'm prepared to cut a deal with you using what authority I have on the crew. If you step aside now, we won't fight you, plain and simple. Given the circumstances, I think it's a pretty reasonable offer. You saw what happened to Jibra, and you're not even half as strong as he is. So why interfere with us at all? Several of the crew exchanged looks of unease and contemplation, but before any of them could speak up, Fukuro answered. Because you've severely misjudged the situation, he explained flatly. Do you really think we're here because of what that weakling says, when obviously the logical answer is to run? No, Fukuro shook his head sadly. The only reason I'm not flying away from here as fast as I can moonwalk is that while you might terrify me, and your crew as a whole might scare the hell out of me, and just like that, a sheen of cold sweat and a terrified grimace came over his face.
Bitch.
Lucci scares me straight up shitless, and he told us that if any of us contemplate running for even a second, he'll personally rip us in half. He explained. Given the fact that I've worked with him from the day I joined CP9 and the fact that he's currently the strongest human being I know, I am completely and utterly inclined to believe him. Yeah, alright, that's a fair point. I winced as I scratched the back of my head. Well then, no hard feelings for doing what has to be done. At least we can give you a swift defeat, right? Indeed, Fukuro started to nod in agreement before freezing as my words caught up to him. Wait, wah. Luffy, if you wouldn't mind. A wave of steam suddenly swept over me. Gear second. Credit to Fukuro where it was due, he didn't even wait a second to turn into a blur, albeit while abandoning his moniker in his panic. Chapapapapapa. It was no use, however. The instant he moved, Luffy moved as well and appeared before him, fist stretched behind him. Jet pistol. Boom. And just like that, we had a Fukuro-shaped crater in the middle of the floor of the Tower of Law, reminiscent both of Jibra's defeat and Bellamy's. Another one bites the dust. Soundbite proclaimed with a cackle. Damn straight he does. I nodded proudly as I snatched Soundbite back from Nami and replaced him on my shoulder. Cross, can I please go and kick that stupid pigeon guy's ass now? Luffy growled as he fell back to the ground, steam dissipating from him as he seamlessly hauled himself back a bit. Wait just a minute, Luffy, while I explain the situation, I pleaded before turning to face the crew as a whole. Look, if it were as simple as just getting Robin back with us, don't you think she'd already have used her powers to at least try and get away from CP9 by now? Problem here is that she's a captive of the world government, and there's one world government protocol concerning devil fruit users that's almost immutable. Vivi slapped a hand to her face with a groan. Of course, she's wearing sea prism stone handcuffs. Every one of the crew that had been trapped in Crocodile's cage immediately growled in frustration. I'm starting to get damn sick of that mineral always showing up to bite us in the ass, Zoro practically snarled. Yumi, and every last pirate on the line without access to it makes 3 million, I grumbled in agreement. Any odds are that a government base like this is going to have access to multiple pairs of handcuffs. And given what Fukuro was most likely going to say before we knocked him out, they probably decided to try stalling us while they take Robin to the gates of justice. In order to do that, I'm going to hypothesize that they took every key to the handcuffs that they had in this tower and divided them among the agents here. Probably in an attempt to slow us down by forcing us to gather all the keys before going after Robin. But really, they want to have the best chance of keeping the key from us, they give it to the strongest they could have. Which means... Luffy jerked forwards eagerly. But, I cut him off with a raised finger. They'd also need the key in here to keep us stalled here in the tower. And there's no way in hell's Spandam is letting Rob Lucci more than a few feet away from him. Logically, this means that they gave the key to the second strongest fighter CP9 has, who is currently in this building. Now, let's see. I started knocking my fist against my head. Fukuro came right to us and admitted to being weak, so there's no need to search him. Jibra and Bluno most likely weren't around long enough to pick up a key, so they're moot too. Of the 3 remaining, we have Koku, Califa, and Kumadori. So many jokes about white hoods and burning crosses to be made, Soundbite sighed wistfully. In so little time, I shot back without breaking my pose. Anyway, considering the importance of the acquisition of Pluton's blueprints, I think that the second strongest was in the team sent to Water 7. So that rules out Kumadori. I snapped my fingers victoriously. But if it were Khalifa, then Nami would never have been able to block her attack back on Water 7, so by process of elimination. It's Kaku who holds the key! Several of the crew were giving me quizzical looks, as they knew that I already knew where the key was. Rolling my eyes, I pointed to the bag hanging at my side, within which was held the means through which I was still broadcasting everything we were saying and doing to the entire world. And their looks faded into understanding. Sound logic, Cross, Frankie said, giving a firm nod. But if there are only 3 agents here and Luffy's going to be fighting Lucci, what do you expect the rest of us to do? I smirked cockily. What else? Some of us will fight the agents so that we don't get jumped from behind, and some of us will follow Luffy to retrieve Robin. And the rest of us...
Sorry!
I slammed my fist into my palm. We're
It's
going to act
only
like
one
the godforsaken
me.
pirates this world's decided to paint us as and tear this tower apart from top to bottom, looking for and subsequently taking anything of value. I don't know if soundbite provided the effect or not, but I distinctly heard a CIA chain from Nama's general direction. Right. So I clapped my hands together and looked at my shoulder. Before we moved to the division of responsibilities, soundbite confirmed positions of the enemy. Roger, Roger, the snail replied, concentrating briefly. 30 stories above ground, 10 stories below. They didn't spare any expenses. Koku's on the 15th floor, Califa's on the 26th, and Kimadori he's shaving like mad, but he's somewhere in the TOP5 basement.
Damn.
And Robin. Luffy pressed eagerly.
Showing
yeah,
all
but
that
me just what the
boob.
fuck? I jumped in shock at the sudden bout of swearing. What? What is
You're
it?
still gonna pay full
What's
price
wrong?
though.
Soundbite's eye stalks were darting around in infuriated confusion. I don't. 1 second I managed to find her, the next she was gone. He shook his head with a scowl. Also, she was underwater and at the edge of my range. This doesn't make any sense. Some of it does, I growled, grinding the heel of my palm into my forehead as I put the pieces together. There's no visible path from here to the gates of justice. And sailing there is impossible thanks to the whirlpools formed by the gates interfering with the local currents. So underwater is the only place where the passageway between here and
Hola,
there can be.
Yami,
But
¿cómo
the only way they'd be able to
estás?
get there so fast is if the pigeon bastard was carrying them while shaving, Luffy deduced grimly. But why? I froze as a terrifying thought hit me. Luffy, did Jibber happen to say why
Orange
he decided to break
juice,
ranks and come after
cola,
you? Luffy's already
and
grim
olive oil
expression
goes
became even
down.
grimmer than before. Before he beat up the bull guy, he said something about how he'd been wanting to fight me for a while. Something about the back fight too. I wasn't really listening though, I was too pissed. Yeah, that about figures. I groaned, shaking my head. Lucci may be the most composed out of all of CP9, but he and Jibber have the same kind of power. They're carnivorous zoans, meaning that their predatory instincts run on overdrive and their bloodlust is through the roof. Jibber just rushed at you because he had less discipline, but Lucci's keeping his head while working towards the same end game. Odds are that he raced ahead as fast as he could just so he could get to the ideal battleground for fighting you. And in the process, I scowled grimly. He's already cut our time down to a fraction by escorting Robin straight to the doorsteps of the gate, so we can't waste any more time. Luffy, head straight for the docks and soundbite will guide you to the secret passage that'll lead you down to the tunnel. From there, it's a straight shot to Lucci. Meanwhile, Vivikan is Frankie. Actually, Frankie cut him with a raised hand. I used a draining move back on the puffing Tom, so I need to find this place's kitchen and recharge. And also, he tapped a finger to his forearm. I need to find some tools. I've been working on a combat upgrade for a while now, and it's almost done. I want to finish it up before I charge into a big-ass fight. I frowned thoughtfully at the cyborg. This upgrade any good? Frankie gave a cocky smirk as he shot out a thumbs up. Super good, I guarantee it. I mulled it over for a moment before nodding. Yeah, alright, fine. Best you get going now. Soundbite, make sure he stays away from Kimadori, alright. He's fast, but he's also got the voice of a Jumbotron. Shouldn't be too tough. Thanks a lot. See you guys later. Frankie nodded before running off. Now, as I was saying, Vivicanis Karu Su, you follow Luffy and pass by to Robin. Give him a few minutes lead to get Lucci properly occupied before continuing after him. And to that, I add the following. Chop chop. I jabbed my finger in the general direction of Anai's lobby's rear dock, and Luffy took that for the starting signal that it was and charged off with a war cry. Vivi and Canis hastily boarded Karu, who sped ahead to catch up to him. I observed the dust trail for a moment before looking back at the crew. Zoro, Nami, Chopper, you know your opponents. Get going and regroup here when you're done. Right, they intoned together and sped off. Usopp, I'll be climbing the tower alongside you, but you'll be heading to the roof. In the likely event that Spandam gets to that bridge before we do, it'll be up to you to make sure Robin stays safe until reinforcements arrive. Your Kabuto is the only weapon on the island capable of reaching its target from that distance. Take full advantage of that and give them hell. Usopp's grin was even wider than when Oimo and Kashi had joined our side as he stamped his Kabuto into the ground and struck what I'm sure he thought was a cool pose. Fear not, for mask or no, I am the king of the snipers. They'll barely know what hit them. Perfect. I grinned hesitantly. My reluctance was on account of the flashes of smiling ghosts flitting through my mind, but I dismissed those worries for the future, when we weren't at war with the world. Anyway, Senji boss, you're with us. This is still a government facility, and there's no telling who else is in this damn place. Kokoro, get Jimmy and gone too. I fell silent, blinking stupidly as I realized that the trio were nowhere to be seen. For a moment, I wondered where they'd gone and how they'd done that, but, you know what? I said, throwing my hands up in the air. Forget it, I'm not even going to try dealing with their particular brand of madness. With any luck, they'll be where we need them when we need them. For now, everyone else. Just straight up raise hell. Now, I slammed my fist into my palm. Let's do this. And with that, I and almost everyone else made a beeline for the nearest staircase. Noting Nami taking the waiver off of her back and boarding it before she followed. Chopper split off at the start, heading down instead of up, and Nami zoomed ahead of us on her waiver shortly after we got up the first staircase. And Zoro. Who knows where he went after we took our eyes off of him. I trusted he'd find his way to Koku soon enough, but still. ... Wow, again at a time like this. Soundbite remarked, drawing me out of my thoughts as we reached the third staircase.
Cheese?
Should we? Don't see why not.
Apple juice.
Give me a sec. I dug through my bag and tapped the appropriate button.
Cola.
Okay, your lave and gastro blurred done. He added in response to the tapping on the other end. Hi there. It's great that I finally managed to call in. Anyway, I have a question. You keep mentioning shaving. What are you talking about? I mean, oh, where are you, Asa? You give that snail back right now. The young oracle Asa winced and hastily clammed up as the voice of her pseudo-big sister echoed through the forest. washing over her hiding place in the burrow of one of the higher trees of upper yard. Ever since the Straw Hats had left, she had wanted to call in to talk with them, primarily to give Cross an earful for ruining her chance to join them, but only now had she gotten an opportunity, far away from anyone who could stop her, namely Lackey, who had been particularly adamant about the fact that she would only ever be becoming a pirate over her KO. Diaz provided that Asa was the one to actually do the deed, which was to say, not even close to soon. Still, for now she managed to snatch a stray transponder snail while someone wasn't looking and hide herself away in a spot she knew was often patrolled, and thus the last place Lackey would look or send someone to look, which led to her current situation. And in a desire to not push her luck, she had elected to remain anonymous on the call for now. Sorry, issues on my end, Asa whispered after she was certain Lackey had passed. Anyway, I was gonna ask, are all of those assassin people zones or something? Almost instantly, the air was filled with raucous, multi-tonal laughter, and more than a little normal snickering to boot. PFF, haha man, now that is a hilarious way of thinking about it. Cross chuckled. But no, it's nothing like that. It's part of these special martial arts they specialize in using. The shave technique is a way of moving so fast that you seem to have disappeared. It's practically teleportation. Asa leaned forward in eager interest. Really? Wow, that sounds so cool. And you said that it's just one, right? What about the rest? Cross started to say before cutting himself off and shaking his head. Yes, sorry, loyal viewer, but I don't think it would be a good idea to hand ready-made weapons to the entire world. Secrets are one thing, but this requires more, shall we say, consideration. After all, Cross then regained his usual smirk. If I was able to figure out the basics and get my crew on the way to learning them just by hearing about them, then anyone could. Asa pouted for a moment, unable to argue with that point, but quickly brightened when the meaning of the word sunk in. Yeah, that's fair. And you guys are actually learning how to use them. You're damn right we are. In fact, Sanji's already got one of them, and Usopp is well on his way to figuring out shave. Really, Tengu knows. That's awesome, Asa said, rocking back and forth in her sitting position. Hey, yeah, well, I don't have it quite figured out yet, so... Wait a second, Usopp's brow furrowed in confusion. The last person to call me that was. Wait, are you? Look out! Soundbite suddenly hollered. Wog! What the Usopp? Asa jumped and her eyes widened in response to the sudden smash that erupted on the other end of the line, as well as the following cacophony. She then began shaking the now nervous snail. What's going on, you guys? What's happening? What's Ro? Her words then died a very painful death as a strong, familiar hand gripped her skull, a matching hand moving forward and severing the connection to the SBS a moment later. You should be more concerned about yourself, Asa, Lackey crooned, her tone reminiscent of poison honey. Meep. Oh. Usopp, are you alright? I called out through the dust. Damn it, he'd been walking right in front of us and had thus been exactly underneath the... whatever it was that had smashed into the floor before us. Why, yeah, I think so. I even have some GG good news. Usopp's voice sounded out behind us. I turned around and was treated to the sight of Usopp trembling fearfully in Boss's arms, Scooby-Doo style. I finally got the hang of this shave, he chattered in terror. Boss regarded Usopp flatly for a moment before snapping his arms away and letting the sniper drop on his ass. That's great, Usopp, the dugong growled in a tone that was half annoyed, half sincere as he uncoiled his rope dart and started to spin it. But what the heck was that? We all stood at ready as the dust cloud settled, before tensing in shock and horror as we caught sight of what, or rather who had come calling. I think I'm flashing back to Krieg's invasion, Sanyu whispered as his cigarette slipped out of his slack jaws. I inched back nervously as I stared up and up and up at the fucking impossible opponent standing before us. You mean the part where he got up in a berserker rage after Luffy had already won the fight and knocked the living daylights out of him? Sanji nodded numbly in agreement. That's the one. Jubber chose the moment to throw his head back and howl his fury to the heavens. For a moment, as I backed away from the thoroughly tenderized wolf man looking over us, I wondered how the hell someone who'd gone up against a legitimately ticked-off Luffy could have possibly still been standing. Then I noticed that his eyes were blank and bloodshot, he distinctly lacked any semblance of balance, and he was emitting very inhuman and very faint groans from his jowls. Alright, so Jubber was barely conscious, if at all, but the fact remained that he was here and demonstrating the legitimately stupid amounts of resilience to punishment that Zoans were capable of. Sanji, I muttered out of the corner of my mouth. If he were actually conscious, I'd say that this would be easy. Right now, however, he's running on rage, adrenaline, and instinct, meaning that he is quite possibly feral and most likely more dangerous than he has ever been in his entire life. Do you think you can take him down in a single shot before he can start reacting? Sanji bit down into a new cigarette and lit it, steadying himself with a deep breath. I think I can damn well try. Good. Jabber suddenly fell onto all fours and shot at us like a bullet. Because here he comes. I called back as Usopp and I ran to get the hell out of range. Sanji promptly spun on his heel, not igniting it but undoubtedly heating it, and shot forward to meet the wolf. They were 30 feet apart, 20-10-5. Slam! Arug. And Sanji skidded to a halt as a door of pure stone opened out of nowhere, slamming hard into Jubber's chops. We had barely a second to stare before the origin of the door stepped out of it, and scowled down at the now actually unconscious wolf man. I never expected to see you as such a pathetic weakling, Bluno growled as he slammed the wall shut behind him. All that effort, all the shame you bring on the world government, and you don't even have the decency to make it close. He shook his head solemnly as he turned to face us. You're a disgrace to Cypher, Pol No. 9. I stared in amusement for a moment as I processed the situation. Before anyone who's actually against him makes a move, a comrade that he had previously betrayed and condemned to death knocks him back out. I muttered to myself before tilting my head curiously. Eesh, this isn't just similar, this is a downright cut and paste of Krieg. No kidding, Sanji shot over his shoulder before turning his attention back to the bullhorn man. Still, even with that kind of grudge against him, I'm sort of surprised that you did that instead of letting him try to wear us down some. Beach. Luno cracked his neck coolly. In retrospect, perhaps I should have. Even so, getting my revenge was my only reason for stopping here. In the end, he stuck his arm out and pushed an air door open. I am, above all else, a professional. I felt my blood freeze for an instant as I stared into the off-color dimension that lay on the other side of the impossible portal before managing to get my voice working again. Stop him. Sanji didn't need any more warning than that. Before Blue Note could move so much as an inch, he sprinted forward and leapt into the portal. I'm sorry, Sanji sneered right in Blue Note's face. This establishment is closed for business. And with that, he grabbed the door with his own hand and slammed it in the assassin's face. For a few seconds, nobody moved as we processed the situation. He does realize that I'm the only person with access to that dimension, yes. Blue Note finally spoke up as he directed his flat expression at me. I gave him an equally neutral look as I crossed my arms. You do realize that you are going to have to fight your way past him to enter that place, yes? There was the panic. It was only for a moment before he schooled himself, but damn if it didn't feel good. That good feeling then went away real quick, like when he squared his shoulders and directed a scathing glare at us. Well, that is a problem I will have to contemplate how to deal with. And while I'm no match for your captain, he scowled irritably as he cracked his knuckles. At least I can certainly deal with you two pests before you cause any more problems for us. Usopp and I tensed in terror as we realized that we were essentially alone against a very ticked-off assassin. Clang! And then jumped as a superheated hook slammed into the stonework at Blue Note's feet. Careful now, bull boy, Boss growled as he snapped his hook back and started swinging it at his side, the air shimmering both from the heat and the sheer speed of the spin. I've been looking forward to a good one-on-one brawl for a while now. The last thing you want to do, he suddenly grabbed the base of his dart and snapped the cable taut. This threatened me with a good time. Blue Note's eyes narrowed. As formidable as you are, surely you can't expect a mere animal to stand up to. Boss whipped his rope dart to the side and smashed a sizable hole in the wall. I spar with the top 3 members of our crew on a regular basis, he stated firmly. Try me. Blue Note remained mostly expressionless, but a slight twitch and a sheen of sweat betrayed how nervous he was. Finally, he shook his head with a sigh. Your crew truly is the most outrageous of this generation, for being less than human to be capable of fighting against one of us. Nevertheless, while I don't doubt that I can easily defeat you should I so wish. Denial ain't just a river in Egypt, I mused, but before I could voice that thought, Blue Note vanished without warning, and the slipstream of wind following him caused us all to turn and face where he was standing at the head of the staircase leading down. In the end, he continued casually. The mission takes priority, so I suggest that you all enjoy what few moments you have left alive while I rendezvous with my superior. He then glanced upwards with a long-suffering look, for however much longer he remains our superior at any rate. And with that, he vanished again, soliciting a growl from Boss as he rewound his weapon. I really need to get the hang of that technique, he muttered vehemently. Still, I'm guessing we have to leave that fight to Sanji. Pretty much, yeah, I confirmed. Shouldn't be too much of a problem for him, though. After all, Blue Note doesn't have any choice but to give him a literal opening if he wants to have any chance of getting control of his hidey hole back. And giving Sandy an opening, especially when there's a lady's well-being at stake, and said lady is part of our crew. Rocky Mountain oysters. Soundbite leered. Bingo, I chuckled grimly. Are you sure, Cross? Usopp muttered warily. I mean, I'm sure that in a straight-up fight, Sandy would wipe the floor with him, but he's locked himself in another dimension. This is as far from an even fight as possible. Don't worry about a thing, Usopp. I waved him off casually as I started marching forward again. If you have any doubts, all you have to do is remember the 2 most integral parts of our crew. Usopp along with Boss and Soundbite blinked in confusion, prompting me to spin on my heel and shoot them a grin. Our crewmates, my smile took on a menacing overtone. And the reality-breaking levels of bullsh it we are capable of. Oh, this, Sanji bit out tiredly as he pumped his legs in an effort to keep pace with his opponent, was not my smartest of plans. The Straw Hat's cook was currently in the process of rushing after the assassin, chasing his silhouette through the rippling green expanse of his dimension. Thoughts of Robin kept adrenaline flowing through his bloodstream, ensuring that he didn't grow tired. But at the same time, he couldn't shake a growing queasiness in his gut. It had taken him a minute to realize that it was because of how still the air was. No doubt on account of how there wasn't even a trace of wind blowing in the off-color realm to recirculate it. His nausea barely registered in his mind, however, as he saw Blue Note moving at a much more leisurely pace, heading straight towards a wide window. Sanji's mind instantly reached the correct conclusion. Moonwalk, damn it! He cursed as he accelerated his pace. It was a diabolical plan. Ingenious in its simplicity. The bull probably thought that if he managed to leap outside and start moonwalking all the way to the bridge, then he would be able to lose Sanji and leave him high and dry in the twisted dimension he was hiding in. And the worst part of it all was that he was right. Of the 3 leg-based techniques Cross had informed the crew of, moonwalk was the one he dedicated the least amount of time to. Unless Sanji could stop Blue Note from getting outside and away, then not only would he be left stranded for all eternity, but worse yet, he wouldn't make it in time to save Robin Suen. Gritting his teeth, Sanji leapt forward. Collier, shoot! His aim was true, but he simply soared through, crack, and slammed into the solid stone wall adjacent to the window before falling onto his back with a pained grimace. Damn it, since when the hell are walls that tough? Sanji bit out as he got back to his feet and rubbed his throbbing leg. He then turned to look at Blue Note, who was looking in his direction with a smirk. He'd felt that, but it was completely useless. Egg! The chef roared in frustration, turning back with every intention of venting his frustration on the impervious wall he impacted, before freezing an inch from the stonework on account of a very specific detail having caught his eye. Sanji leaned in for a closer look, and then adopted a truly devilish grin. Cross is right, he chuckled. Applied bullsh, it is our area of expertise. Oh, Bluno directed a smug smirk at where the rush of wind he assumed to be the pirate cook had most likely ended up. It had been a slight detriment to the door fruit's usefulness in assassinations to learn that even superhuman force on that side was only capable of creating a breeze against any organic matter. But for once, that was working in his favor. He maintained his smirk as he turned back towards the window and tensed his legs, preparing to leave his annoyance behind. Whack! And promptly had his concentration shattered by a hard impact to the back of his head. The attack itself didn't seriously hurt him in spite of the lack of iron body, but it still triggered a flinch of pain. Bluno stood, his head on a swivel as he looked back and forth in confusion. What on earth? The assassin cut his own question off when he located the answer. Leaning down, he picked up the slightly bloodied rock that had hit him, looking it over in confusion. What the... Crack! Bluno's head snapped around to the window that was to be his point of egress and gaped in shock at the impossible sight before him. Namely, the sight of a chunk of stone that had been broken off from the window still floating in midair, wavering up and down as though someone were balancing it on. There. It can't be, Bluno thought numbly, his mind refusing to accept the sight before him. I have tried affecting inorganic matter in that dimension countless times in the past, all of us have. Oh, only Luchikoku and Jibber made any progress. Because it requires 10 times the normal amount of force to do anything in order to affect this side from that one. That's just not. Whack! Bluno was forced to cut his internal rant short when the chunk of stone suddenly whipped forward and forced him to dodge. The stone harmlessly smashed against the wall behind him, but he still stared at its fragments in horror. Then, without even a moment's pause, the assassin blurred towards the window. Need to get out, he thought in a panic as his composure shattered. Need to get away fast before. Bluno had barely even taken a step when he found another chunk of stone speeding towards his
olive
face.
oil,
Iron body, strength. He thought desperately as he initiated the technique. For a moment, he felt what he always felt when he used his ultimate variation on iron body. He felt relief. He felt reassured. He felt safe. He felt invincible. Then a chunk of stone barely bigger than his fist caved his face in, swiftly followed by his body smashing into and through the wall behind him. Bluno lay stunned for a moment, spitting and groaning miserably as his mind processed what the hell had just happened. His ultimate iron body was broken. He himself punted through a wall, and his entire body in nothing short of a legitimate asload of pain. T the stone, he thought numbly as he forced his body to stand. Instead of throwing it, he used the stone to transfer his kick across the D-dimensional barrier. And getting back up, what he saw next made whatever blood was left in his face evacuate it. Half a dozen fist-sized stones moved around in thin air, juggled by an unseen pair of feet. As Bluno took in the sight, he voiced his thoughts in a tone filled with nothing short of utter horror. What the hell kind of monsters are you people? At that point, stones started shooting towards him like cannonballs, and he did the only thing he could. He turned tail and ran. Oh. Califa reclined in the straight-back chair she'd positioned in the center of her room, reading a good book that she had borrowed from Kaku. She gave no indication that she was paying attention to any of her surroundings. At least, not until she suddenly snapped up her arm, which was clad in a black opera glove, causing a metal orb attached to a long pole to bounce off with an audible clang. In spite of her sudden movement and the impact striking her arm, however, she didn't look away from her book. A moment later, the smell of ozone reached her nostrils. I'm afraid that won't do you any good, Califa said casually. These gloves I'm wearing are well insulated, as are my boots. I'm not so foolish as to fall for the same ploy twice in a row, I'll have you know. Tess came the disembodied huff of the Straw Hat's navigator. I wouldn't be too sure of that. The only insulator that can't be overcome with a strong enough charge is my captain. And that's only because his skull is as thick as iron plating. I believe that, Califa drawled before shifting slightly in her chair. But I dare say that the same can't be said for you. She suddenly twisted about in her seat, lashing out her leg in an impressive display of acrobatics. Tempest kick. Nami swiftly threw herself backwards in response. Rolling out from under the pocket of reflective air, she directed and popping up into a ready stance as she glared cold fronts at her opponent. Miss me, she taunted in a somewhat forced catty tone. Indeed, Califa mused as she marked her page and set her book aside before standing up, primly adjusting her glasses in the process. I suppose I'll just have to try harder then, won't I?
Do
The
I need to
assassin blurred from sight without any
get...
warning, causing Nami to jerk in shock at the lack of verbal warning for the technique. Then, without conscious decision, Nami's fingers flew over the controls of her climb attack and iron cloud surged from the butt of her staff, forming a wall behind her just in time to halt Califa's index finger, causing the assassin to leap back, scowling as she clutched her slightly bent digit. No words were shared between the opponents. Nami merely spun around and swung her climb attack out, crackling with electricity. Paper art, her opponent whispered, bending a full 90 degrees at the waist to go under the swing, before bending even further onto her hands and kicking her feet off the ground. Tempest kick, double, she called out, her legs lashing out a double-sized helping of the razor-sharp wind. As the assassin completed the flip and landed back on her feet, she was disappointed to see the attack break against the wall of iron cloud like a wave over a rock. There was no time for anger, though, as a crackle of light drew her attention up into the black cloud above her head crackling with electricity, as well as the fact that Nami had her staff raised high. Lightning tempo, she cried out and swung the staff down. Shave! Califa cried out, zipping away from the almost formed lightning bolt. The two fighters eyed each other warily as the assassin came out of her shave, the lightning burning a hole in the increasingly abused floor. After a moment, Califa blurred into another wordless shave, Nami swinging her clouds around behind her again. As expected, this left them in perfect position to intercept Ain, normal kick. The navigator blinked in surprise, then in panic
my
as her
stuff!
opponent used the clouds to launch a shave up and over, before her clouds could react appropriately, be it consciously or otherwise. Tempest kick, Califa announced with a smirk, and Nami was forced to dive to the side and roll, and even then the razor wind nicked her side. She then shoved her staff up as Califa pounced, lashing out with a full spread of side kicks. Heeled shoes met the metal staff. A finger pistol was avoided by
Thank
the
you,
slimmest of
miss.
margins, and then a knee strike was
You
stopped
and
with
your
her staff.
leathery
Moonwalk,
ass
Califa
face.
intoned, the leg locked in the knee strike pushing off the air, allowing her other leg to slam into Nami's side and send her tumbling. A valiant attempt, the assassin gloated as she casually strolled over to where Nami was clutching her side and wheezing. That cloud defense was formidable, but without it you don't have anything. Thwack! Suddenly, the staff became a blur of blue and she felt one of the metal balls bounce off her forehead before she could re-establish the iron body she let slip, triggering a reflexive shave backwards. She fingered the nascent goose egg with a pained hiss before freezing as a grim chuckle hit her ears, and she snapped a scathing glare where the navigator was starting to work her way to her feet. Why you think that hurt? Nami smirked, her expression the height of smugness in spite of the hand clutching the spot where Califa had hit her. Please, I've run into sharks that hit harder than you. Califa scowled darkly, but before she could respond. Key rash. Both she and Nami jumped in shock and looked downwards in confusion when the Tower of Justice was suddenly rocked by a massive impact. What the hell was that? An earthquake. Nami demanded. An I's lobby doesn't get earthquakes, Califa responded sourly, but with no less curiosity. Seriously? They received the answer to their question a moment later, as Cross' furious voice filled the air. All right, who laughed at the giraffe? Cross demanded. Who the hell is responsible for making me utter the phrase who laughed at the giraffe in complete and utter seriousness and context? Sorry, that was my bad. Boss promptly apologized. Zoro and Kaku almost landed on top of me while I was checking out this garden room of theirs, and well, he trailed off into helpless snickers. I got one look at the guy's face at W when he started talking about the destructive powers of giraffes. I just couldn't stop myself. I get soon after though, don't worry, I won't get in Zoro's way. Well, now he's gone and cut the whole freaking Tower of Justice in half, and I'm in the loose half. I hope you're proud of yourself. Little bit, honestly, yeah. For you see, I don't give a shit if it's a man's romance or a manatee's. I'm still freaking pissed. I hope you're happy with whatever the hell it is that you managed to grab, because you're going to get the hell up here right now. Yeah, I got it. Damn slave-driven Sanova. What does it say about my sanity that I'm not even remotely fazed by any of this? Nami groaned miserably. You! Nami blinked and glanced at Califa in confusion. Did you just say, snick? Her question died in her throat when an impossibly fast blade of wind passed mere millimeters from her face, liberating a few stray strands of hair and a trail of blood. You damn pirates, Califa hissed as she slammed her raised leg back to the ground, her eye twitching furiously. Do you not understand what kind of a situation this is? Do you not comprehend the sheer implications? This is life and death, the harshest kind of conflict in existence, and yet you are making light of it. How dare you be so blasé? How dare you mock my profession, my life? Nami recoiled slightly at the uncharacteristic rage the assassin was exhibiting, her mind fumbling to come up with a response. I don't know what to tell you, she hedged. We're not mocking you or anything, we're not joking around. This is just, she spread her arms helplessly. This is just how we are. Going by how something seemed to snap behind Califa's eyes, that was not the right response. Bubble Master, she shouted, sliding her hands down her arms and flushing out a flood of suds that surged and gushed around her and filled her half of the room. The mass of bubbles roiled wildly, shapes similar to ram horns bucking and rearing throughout the froth. Soap Shepherd. Nami swallowed heavily as she took a hesitant step backwards. However, even as she started spinning up her staff and pumping up her eyes and cloud behind her to match the most threatening bubbles she'd ever seen in her life, a thought came unbidden to her mind. What was it that Sused Cross said back on Scipia? Anger leads to distraction, and distraction leads to Nami hesitated slightly before adopting a somewhat mad grin. Oh, what the hell, she's already ticked. Might as well see how far I can take it. Maybe Connus misinformed me, Nami called out in a taunting tone. But I thought you said that you'd sooner kiss Cross than take his advice. Because from my point of view, Nami kicked her grin up a few molars, her eyes in cloud looming around her. You're looking really bubbly right now. If Nami's comment about the way they were had made Califa snap, that taunt made her straight up shatter. Bubble Master, Soap Stampede. Califa roared as she shoved her arms forwards and sent her bubbles charging ahead, roiling over and over one another. Eyes in tempo. Nami bellowed back, swinging her staff down and letting the iron clouds behind her cascade out to meet the soapy charge head-on. The two primal forces of white smashed together in the middle of the room, and the fight kicked itself right into high gear. Oh, you sure you'll be alright, Cross? Usopp asked in equal parts nervousness and concern as we stood before a notably ornate door. Don't worry about me, Usopp, I said dismissively without taking my eyes off the door. If worst comes to worst, lasso, soundbite, and my armor should be enough to fend off anyone weaker than CP9. And none of them are standing guard here. I then paused and glanced over at Soundbite. They aren't right. Nope, Soundbite shook his head confidently. The trio of the... If you say anything about hoods, nooses, or crosses, I will slap the insensitive out of you, I promise solemnly. The snail bit his tongue with a reluctant grimace. Anyway, they're all where they should be. Chopper started fighting the big mouth a while back, they're about neck and neck. He adopted an impressed look. The pipsqueak might not down rumble balls often, but when he does, damn. Usopp hesitated for a few more seconds before nodding. Well, alright, if you say so. Good luck, guys. Like I don't already have all of it, I chuckled back. With a final shaky grin, Usopp vanished. Squinting, I was able to keep track of him for a second as he sped up the stairs before he was out of sight. Geez, I'd known he could probably learn how to shave, but to master it this fast. Well, then again, I was only half joking back when I was recommending who learn what. Shaking those thoughts off, I looked back at the massive double doors leading to Spandam's office. Soundbite, am I clear? I asked quietly. I don't hear anyone, the snail replied. I nodded firmly, pushed open one of the doors. Soundbite. Yeah. I hate you. I'm starting to agree with you. Quiet pirate scum. And found myself staring down the barrel of a flintlock pistol held by a government agent. I tilted my head to the side so as to better shoot a dumbfounded look at my assailant. How even? I requested. I'm honestly curious here. He has a devil fruit. That shouldn't even be possible. The suit-clad agent smirked menacingly at me. We agents of the world government aren't like your average Marines pirate. We're highly trained in all manners of skill, stealth included. You'd be surprised at just how quiet somebody can be when they put their mind to it. Now then, he drew out his other hand and spun a pair of handcuffs around his finger. You're under arrest. I swallowed heavily as I slowly slid my foot back, furiously trying to figure out how the hell I was going to get out of this mess. I knew we should have taken that left turn on the 10th floor, but why? You said to go left. The agent and I snapped our attentions and weapon in the agent's case to Soundbite, who'd spoken up in a very familiar. Soundbite angled his ice talk in such a way so as to subtly wink at me. Oh, that crazy mucus-covered son of a bitch, this could actually work. Are you kidding? I spluttered indignantly, drawing the agent's gun back in my direction. That is a complete and utter lie. You told me that this was the safest route to go. No, I didn't, you did. Another shift with the agent starting to look confused. What? I angled myself slightly so that I could get a better look at the snail. I didn't say that, it was you. Right. I jerked my shoulder holding Soundbite forward, emphasizing his own bark. You said to go right. I just said it wasn't me. I slid my foot forwards. And I'm not saying it was you. I said it was you. That doesn't make any sense. I abruptly cut myself off as I jerked across the last of the distance separating me from the agent. Jerked my taser baton from my pocket and slammed it into the agent's gut, laying him out with a single zeh. For a moment, I just stared at his unconscious form in awe. We just managed to weaponize Abbott and Costello, I breathed numbly. We're awesome. Soundbite whooped. Who are Abbott and Costello? Lasso spoke up. I froze for a moment before rolling my eyes and starting to scan around. Right, that tears it. Soundbite, while I search this place for something useful, do the world a favor and broadcast the Who's On First sketch. It's a crime that they've never had the chance to hear such classic genius. With pleasure.
Oh shit!
The snail
My
cheered.
bad.
Ladies and gentlemen, we present an intermission in the Strawberry Pirates invasion of an ice lobby for the first ever this comedy corner. Snickering as I imagined how many people all over the world would be rolling on the ground laughing. I moved past the insensate agent, though I took the time to lock his own handcuffs on him and kick the gun to the other side of the hall and into the office proper. It looked vaguely familiar, how could it not? Half gaudy and half utilitarian, and half gone thanks to my earlier efforts with the mortar cannons. All right, I mused under my breath as I rubbed my hands together. It had started. Oh,
shit.
I will not laugh, Buddy repeated in his mind. I will not laugh. No matter how flashy or how humorous, I refuse on my pride as a pirate to let that crew, any member of that crew, bring me to laughter. And yet, the fact that several of his own men were already cracking up, along with the straight-up hilarity of the broadcast's opening, was swiftly eroding his endurance. What's the fella's name on third base? What's the fella's name on second
Yogurt
base?
went down.
I won't. I'm not asking you who's on second. Who's on first? I can't. I don't know. Third base. I can't, Buggy snorted. I can't. Hold it in. B. Why ha ha ha. Oh. The left fielder's name. Why? I don't know. I just thought I'd ask ya. Well, I just thought I'd tell ya. How did we never hear such an incredible baseball joke? Miss Merry Christmas cackled. Hi ha ha. Mr. Force started rocking back and forth in his seat as he clapped his hands and laughed. Paula shot a dubious glance at him. You actually understand their jokes. Yes. Mr. Four nodded as tears started to slide from the corners of his eyes. The voyage, who is who and fierce. Yo are yo's. Paula and Christmas promptly exchanged flat looks. I'm not explaining second through center field, Christmas grunted. I'll second that. Oh, tell me the pitcher's name. Tomorrow. What time? What time what? What time tomorrow are you going to tell me who's pitching? Now hold on, who is not pitching? I'll break your arm if you say who's on first. Okay, hey, okay, hey. Okay, hey, he. The sadist in a child's body looked over the top of her book with a flatly cocked eyebrow, observing her sister's laughter slowly growing into a belly-jiggling guffaw. Really now? She asked flatly. You read Vonnegut, and this is what you consider humorous. Yuki he, Monet laughed around the hands she had clasped over her mouth, tears of laughter flowing ceaselessly. H he asked. And he said, T tomorrow ho 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 I can't breathe. Hey. Sugar's eyebrow raised up a bit when Monet suddenly overbalanced and tumbled out of her seat. And then her expression fell flat when her sister's laughter intensified, if anything. She returned her attention to her book with a weary sigh. One of the greatest infiltrators of our generation, folks, she muttered to herself. Oh, you throw the ball to first base. And who gets it? Naturally. Who gets it? Naturally. Okay, so I throw the ball to first base and naturally gets it. The volume of laughter on the back of the giant elephant suddenly crescendoed. The vast majority of the mink tribe familiar with baseball due to outsiders' information, and subsequently seeing every bit of the humor in the current is BS. He throws the ball to naturally Gornanyanya. Nekamamashi roared. I'm getting the plays on words, but what's baseball? Carrot gasped through her giggles. Ahaha, allow me to explain. Carrot, Inuyarashi proposed around his own laughter. Fair warning, this'll take a minute. 1 minute later. And that's the game. The large dog concluded with a firm nod. Wow, that sounds like fun. The rabbit mink nodded her head eagerly as she directed a grin at her superior. Maybe we could all play together sometime. The laughter of the two Dukes of Zoo suddenly stopped, thoughtful looks on their faces. After a moment of contemplation, wide, toothy grins spread across their faces. I think Igarashi rumbled as he tossed a too-wide leer at his nocturnal counterpart. That is a very good idea. As do I, Nekomamushi concurred, a glint in his eye.
More water.
Rana's heart sank as she observed the way the rival rulers were eyeing one another. But she ultimately dismissed it and deferred to her duke's superior judgment. In the following weeks, that day would be marked as the day that the rulers they had known as Wanda vowed that by hook or by crook, she would have her revenge on Jeremiah Cross. Oh, why? I don't know. He's on third, and I don't give a darn. What was that? I said I don't give a darn. Oh, he's our shortstop. And that's the gag. Soundbite concluded with a smirk. Lasso guffawed on my back. Man, that's nothing short of comedy gold. Yep, I muttered acridly as I finished patting down the bottom of yet another shelf and slammed it shut. Pure genius right there, damn it all. I would have been in a better mood had things been going my way no matter how many times I heard that sketch. It never stopped being funny, but the fact was that I was a little grumpy at the moment considering that the last 8 minutes of combing every part of the office, starting with the desk, had yielded nothing but a goose egg. And a rotten one at that. Seriously, how the hell did you get an egg stuck down? I didn't even want to know. Ho. Lasso came down from his laughter and glanced curiously over my shoulder. What the heck have you been looking for anyway? I don't know anything. I threw my hands up in exasperation. We're in the middle of the headquarters of the chief of CP9, who just so happens to have been all but born a corrupt
I'm
ass.
gonna leave it here for
I was
now.
sure that there would be something I could find in this office and
I'm
broadcast
tired.
that was at worst. Utterly ruined spandom beyond what we already have, but at best,
And I want to get a couple
grinned
hours of
euphorically.
sleep.
At
It's
best, here's
5.
something that would make Dragon the Revolutionary feel like his birthday came early. And to think that what we've done so far hasn't done that. He's probably laughing his head off less than yours. Man, I waved my hand casually.
Alright, thank you guys so much for watching.
Achiever if you must, but I snapped a finger.
I appreciate it. But I'll see you guys later. I'm gonna try to get some sleep. See you guys later. Bye. Good night. I love you guys. Bye. I don't know.